Chapter 1. Survival through transmigration. A sudden voice reverberated in his mind like a thunderclap, jolting Luo He from the stupor of a 12-hour work shift. The voice, indiscernible in its gender, carried an indifferent authority that pierced through his fatigue-laden consciousness. The world was commencing another round of selection. Humanity was to undergo a survival assessment. Semi-digitized personal profiles, randomly allocated supply chests, and unpredictable teleportation points. The cold, mechanical tone echoed relentlessly in his brain. Luo He abruptly opened his eyes, and instead of the yellowed ceiling light of his rented apartment, he was met with layers of decayed, blackened leaves. The scent of damp, rich earth lingered at his nostrils, mingled with a hint of the metallic tang of vegetation. Towering trees surrounded him, their rugged trunks reaching towards the heavens, branches intertwining to obscure the sun, allowing only scattered patches of light to filter through. He lay amid a slope covered in a pile of rotting leaves, his back drenched in moisture, the fabric of his shirt clinging coldly to his skin. Survival in a treehouse. Luo He was momentarily bewildered, his muddled thoughts spinning until he recalled the instant noodles he had yet to finish after work yesterday, along with a sausage and an egg. How had he awakened in a different locale? Was this a universal transmigration? Fragments of information swiftly coalesced in his mind. Universal transmigration, semi-digitized bodies, randomly allocated supply chests, and unpredictable teleportation points. Yet, he felt little panic. The life of a worker often entailed changing workplaces. Previously, he had toiled under the watchful eye of a boss. Now he was working for survival under the capricious gaze of fate. At least this time, the reward for his labor was merely to continue living, far more reliable than the empty promises of performance metrics. He steadied himself, his thoughts coalescing, and a translucent, pale blue panel materialized before him. Personal data: name, Luo He, mortal, status, normal strength, 5, normal, constitution, 4, below average, agility, 4, below average, mentality, 95, slightly startled excited, talent, unawakened extraordinary, none indeed. Years of sedentary office work had taken their toll on his body. Luo He sheepishly scratched his head, his fingertips brushing against the dust-laden strands of hair. However, he had no time to dwell on the resilience of the working class. He needed to address the immediate predicament first. He leaned against a tree trunk to rise, and just as the dizziness subsided, his gaze was caught by a glimmer of dark red light at the bottom of the slope. The glow was striking against the dim canopy, clearly not a natural phenomenon. A supply chest? Luo He felt a spark of curiosity and picked up a fist-sized stone, gripping it tightly as he crouched low and stealthily approached. The distance of a dozen meters took him 5 minutes to traverse, and as he drew near, he discerned a blood-red chest, half a foot square, emanating a faint glow, adorned with twisted, ancient totems. After confirming there were no traps, he reached for the lid. His fingertips barely grazed the chest when the indifferent voice resonated once more. Bestowal of the talent awakening stone, accompanied by basic treehouse seeds. Shelter is the foundation of survival. Luo He raised an eyebrow and looked down to find nestled within the chest a milky white crystal the size of a pigeon's egg, alongside a vibrant green seed for a treehouse. He first grasped the talent awakening stone, and a warm, gentle energy flowed through his palm and permeated his entire being. The fatigue from his late-night endeavors dissipated in an instant, his mind sharpened several-fold, and even his vision became markedly clearer. Talent awakening successful. Super recovery note. Doubled recovery rate for both body and spirit. Healing of physical wounds accelerated by 50. Regular labor consumption can be completely reset through sleep. The vitality he had once possessed as a child, climbing trees and catching fish, had finally returned. Luo He reflected, clenching his fist, feeling a faint but palpable strength within him. Although his physical constitution and agility were lacking, his endurance had significantly increased, an invaluable asset in a perilous world. He stowed the awakening stone and picked up the seed for the treehouse, glancing back at the gentle slope behind him, only to furrow his brow. Standing water and potential landslides made this location utterly unsuitable for a shelter. Remembering the expanse of flat land below the slope, Luo He pocketed the seed and descended. Midway down, he caught sight of several jujube trees, their ripe fruit hanging heavily from the branches. He gathered a generous handful, the sweet and tangy flesh perfectly quenching his thirst. After a brief walk, he reached the flat ground and found a soft patch of earth to plant the treehouse seed. Just as he covered it with soil, the ground beneath him trembled unexpectedly. Lush green shoots burst forth, rapidly growing into saplings half his height, far from the treehouse he had envisioned. Shelter tree, level 0, status, growing, protection range, 10 meters. Traits, defends against level 0 spiritual entities, limited, reducing their attack power and speed by 50. Weak protection against corporeal beings. Upgrade requirements. Beast Core 1, Beast Blood 5L. Could it be that not only beasts but also spiritual entities exist? Luo He's expression darkened. He had always harbored a fear of such ethereal beings. While he could contend with tangible beasts, how could he combat something invisible and intangible? Nevertheless, he quickly regained his composure. Adhering to the worker's principle of addressing what can be resolved first, he placed stone markers beside the shelter tree and carved the character for Luo into a large tree. With 3 stones as makeshift weapons, he ventured toward the grove that housed fruit trees. After 7 or 8 minutes of traversing through the underbrush, a gray-brown wooden box beneath an ancient tree came into view. Luo He tossed a stone to test for traps. Upon confirming safety, he opened the box, and a surge of joy filled his heart. 500 milliliters of mineral water, whole grain bread, a flint axe, and a folded piece of parchment. Unfolding the parchment, he heard the notification. Acquired building blueprint. Small cabin, first opening gift. The blueprint detailed the required materials, 10 wooden planks. Just 10 planks? This was hardly a cabin. It resembled a leaky tent. Luo He rolled his eyes but sighed in relief. At least he had a place to shield himself from the wind and rain. He collected the supplies and made his way back, the sun climbing higher and the shadows on the ground shortening. Estimating it was nearing noon, his stomach growled, and a clear plan began to take shape in his mind. Upon returning to the shelter tree, he raised the flint axe and struck down at a sapling the thickness of a bowl. With a sharp crack, the blade embedded itself into the trunk. Though his physicality was subpar, the super recovery talent allowed him to chop for several minutes without feeling overly fatigued. After felling the sapling, Luo He sat down, munching on wild jujubes while resting, his gaze shifting between the shelter tree and the axe in his hand, his resolve gradually solidifying. First, gather enough wooden planks to construct a small cabin, and then devise a means to hunt beasts to upgrade his shelter. He murmured to himself. In the lexicon of a laborer, the word give up does not exist. Even when confronted by specters and wild creatures, he must persist in surviving within this unfamiliar realm. After a brief respite, Luo He once again grasped the stone axe and proceeded towards another sapling. The sharp sound of the axe cleaving through the tree trunk resonated distinctly in the stillness of the forest, heralding the commencement of his struggle for survival in this strange world. Chapter 2. The fundamentals of botanical secrets. With only wild jujubes, bread, and half a bottle of water to stave off hunger, Luo He dared not linger and promptly seized his stone axe, venturing into the nearby woods. Although the axe appeared rudimentary, its flint head was keenly sharp, yet the handle lacked robustness. Weighing it in his hands, he felt uncertain. Felling a thick tree would surely be arduous, so he opted to seek out softer targets, beginning with the slender ones. After a brief exploration, he quickly identified several saplings, each about the width of a bowl, their slender trunks appearing easily severable. Lowering himself, he gathered a few thick leaves to cushion the axe's grip, mitigating the shock during his chopping. With a determined grip on the handle, he harnessed the strength of his core to deliver a powerful blow, the axe striking the trunk with a resounding crack, leaving a deep gash. 80, 80, he chanted, motivating himself as he relentlessly struck, beads of sweat cascading down his forehead, soaking the strands of hair at his brow, while his shirt clung uncomfortably to his back, drenched in perspiration. His physique was already somewhat frail, and after a series of strikes, his arms began to ache, growing weak, and his breath became labored. Fortunately, his remarkable recovery talent was quietly at work, gradually alleviating his fatigue, enabling him to persevere. After more than half an hour, the first sapling crashed to the ground, its severed end revealing fresh wood that exuded a subtle, fragrant aroma. Panting heavily, Luo He leaned against the fallen trunk for a moment's respite, his gaze fixated on the ground, but he suddenly froze. The trunk had not transformed into the log he had envisioned. Instead, it had disintegrated into 20 fist-sized blocks, each piece uniformly shaped and glimmering faintly. How did the log turn directly into blocks? And how do I craft planks? Luo He picked up one of the wooden blocks, and instantly, a corresponding attribute panel materialized in his mind. Wooden block, basic building material, acquisition method, obtained by felling trees. Purpose: 5 wooden blocks can be processed into 1 wooden plank, requiring a workbench or the consumption of 5 mental energy points for direct processing. Without a workbench, I must rely on mental energy to force it through? Luo He grimaced. This setup was both a strain on his physical and mental faculties. Yet, he quickly broke into a grin, patting his chest. Fortunately, I possess the super recovery talent, allowing for swift restoration of mental energy. This price is bearable. Life, after all, is like that. When one cannot resist, it is best to accept with a smile. The optimism of a laborer was vividly manifested at that moment. After a 10-minute break, regaining his strength, he grasped the stone axe once more and made his way towards the second sapling, having gained experience from his initial efforts. Luo He found himself felling trees with increased efficiency. Although each tree he cut down drained considerable stamina, his innate recovery abilities alleviated any fears of succumbing to exhaustion. Unbeknownst to him, the sun gradually descended in the sky, casting a dim light through the trees as a hint of coolness wafted through the air. Luo He had already felled 5 small trees, resulting in a pile of 100 wooden pieces resembling a small hill. He wiped the sweat from his brow, utterly fatigued, and sank onto the ground, gasping for breath, his throat parched. Alas, he had forgotten to bring water. Instinctively, he felt within his pocket, only to find a half-eaten piece of bread, a wave of frustration washing over him. However, he quickly shook his head and reassured himself, every bit saved counts. And with his talent for recovery, he could endure for a while longer. After resting for approximately 20 minutes, Luo He felt his strength returning, and his gaze fell once more upon the pile of wood. With so many pieces strewn about the forest, transporting them individually to the shelter tree would entail countless trips, and counting them accurately seemed impossible. It would be more efficient to attempt synthesizing planks using his mental energy, thus avoiding unnecessary exertion. Taking a deep breath, he concentrated, directing his thoughts toward the pile of wood. In the next moment, an invisible force enveloped the wooden pieces, lifting 50 of them into the air, where they coalesced into a luminous orb before him. A sudden, intense pain shot through his head, akin to being pricked by countless steel needles, causing him to grimace and momentarily lose his vision. He hastily halted the output of his mental energy, crouching down and cradling his head, taking some time to recover before lifting it again. With a flicker of thought, his personal interface reappeared, revealing that his mental energy had plummeted from 95 points to 45, a staggering reduction. Damn, that hurt. The depletion of mental energy was overwhelming. He needed to construct a workstation urgently, lest he be driven to the brink of collapse. Luo He lay on the ground, allowing his extraordinary recovery talent to take effect. The gentle breeze in the forest brought a refreshing coolness, alleviating some of his fatigue. He closed his eyes, losing track of time, until he sensed the pain in his head gradually dissipating, his mental energy rising back to around 70 points, and the weariness within his body vanished. This talent is indeed invaluable. Rising to his feet, he stretched his limbs, feeling invigorated, cautious not to synthesize too many planks at once. He opted to select only 15 pieces of wood each time, expending 15 points of mental energy to create 3 planks. Although this process was tedious, it spared him the excruciating pain associated with excessive mental energy consumption. After synthesizing 20 planks, Luo He ceased his operations, knowing that the construction of the small wooden shelter required only 10 planks, leaving the remainder as reserves. He gathered 3 planks and made his way toward the shelter tree. The planks were not overly heavy, but their size was considerable. Carrying 3 at once was his limit. Fortunately, the distance from the forest to the shelter tree was merely 100 meters, and after 7 trips, he finally transported all the planks to the shelter tree. I'm utterly exhausted. How I wish I had a backpack. Luo He leaned against the sheltering tree, panting heavily, murmuring to himself, "Oh, my dear backpack, where art thou? I cherish you." While he lamented, he understood that this was not the time for such thoughts. He quickly retrieved the blueprint for a small wooden cabin from his pocket and stood in the clearing beside the tree, whispering, "Commence construction." No sooner had he spoken than the blueprint transformed into a radiant beam of golden light, merging seamlessly with the earth. Subsequently, 10 wooden planks ascended into the air, guided by an arcane force, and began to assemble themselves autonomously. The planks fit together flawlessly, requiring neither nails nor ropes for stability, and within mere minutes, a humble wooden cabin materialized before him. Luo He approached to inspect it, his heart a tumult of emotions. The cabin resembled the blueprint precisely. It was triangular in shape, barely tall enough for an adult to stand upright. The walls and roof were merely assembled from planks, with noticeable gaps that allowed the outside light to filter through. The front featured a rudimentary wooden door that creaked upon opening, while a small window on the side lacked glass, only possessing a movable wooden shutter. When closed, the interior was enveloped in darkness, with not a single ray of sunlight penetrating. Alas, it is indeed as disappointing as I imagined, Luo He sighed. Yet he quickly found solace in the fact that having something was better than nothing. At least he wouldn't have to sleep under the open sky at night. It offered some protection from the wind and rain and could ward off pesky insects. Without delay, he turned and dashed into the woods to gather an abundance of dry leaves and withered grass. Upon returning to the cabin, he first cleared away the weeds and fallen leaves surrounding the entrance to prevent any lurking insects or snakes. He then laid down half of the leaves on the cabin floor, piling them thickly to create a makeshift bed, while the remaining leaves were stacked in the corner for future use. Having completed these tasks, Luo He kicked the wall of the cabin, producing a dull thud. Yet the structure remained steadfast. Constructed entirely of wood without a single nail, it surprisingly held firm. He was somewhat astonished, quickly realizing that it must be the system's mysterious power at work. Otherwise, such a rudimentary construction would have collapsed long ago. As evening approached, the sunset painted the sky in hues of crimson, and the sounds of the forest took on an eerie quality, punctuated occasionally by distant howls of unknown beasts that sent shivers down his spine. Luo He dared not venture outside any longer. He retreated into the cabin, shutting the door and window behind him, plunging the interior into darkness, with only a sliver of light seeping through the cracks. He sat on the leaf bed, taking out the remaining half of a loaf of bread and half a bottle of water, savoring each bite. The bread was somewhat dry, yet he relished it, chewing slowly in this perilous world where every morsel of food was invaluable. After finishing, he took a few sips of water, securely capped the bottle, and carefully tucked it into his clothing, his lifeline for the morrow. Now, he pondered how to utilize the remaining hours. Leaning against the wall, Luo He contemplated his situation. The sheltering tree required beast cores and vital essence for upgrades, and the wooden cabin was merely a makeshift refuge. Resources were still woefully scarce. Seizing the remaining daylight, Luo He decided to explore his surroundings, hoping to discern the environment and perhaps discover a cache of supplies or wild fruits. Otherwise, he would face hunger the following day. With this thought in mind, he pushed open the wooden door and stepped outside once more. This time, he chose not to retrace his previous steps, but ventured toward the opposite slope, intent on uncovering a new territory. He maintained a cautious demeanor, treading lightly, clutching 2 stones in his hands, and keeping his ears attuned to the sounds around him. He would halt at the slightest hint of disturbance. After approximately 10 minutes, the light filtering through the trees began to wane. Just as he contemplated returning, a flicker of movement caught his eye, several dozen meters away. A large tree swayed with the presence of a furry creature. He immediately froze, holding his breath to scrutinize the scene. It was a squirrel, its fur a mottled gray-brown, gnawing on a nut perched upon a branch. The tree itself was lush and verdant, adorned with clusters of green, oval-shaped fruits encased in a hard shell. Indeed, it was a walnut tree. What a delightful surprise. The discovery of a walnut tree filled Luo He with exhilaration. Walnuts are a treasure. Not only do they satiate hunger, but they are also rich in oils and nutrients. The elderly often claim that walnuts enhance brain function, potentially accelerating mental recovery. In a world where mental energy is frequently depleted, the value of walnuts is unmistakable. Suppressing his excitement, he cautiously approached the walnut tree. The squirrel seemed to sense the movement, warily lifting its head to glance at Luo He before swiftly darting to a higher branch, clutching its nut and watching him with vigilance. Ignoring the squirrel, Luo He directed his gaze to the walnuts, rising onto his toes to pluck the one closest to the ground. He skillfully pried open the green husk. The walnut shell was hard and rugged, heavy in his hand. Ah, here's one, and there's another. With a sense of enthusiasm, he began to gather more, swiftly depleting the lower walnuts. He then embraced the tree trunk, climbing with both hands and feet. Though his physique was not particularly robust, he had retained the skills from his childhood tree climbing days. Quickly reaching the midsection of the tree and grasping higher branches, the squirrel, startled, scurried to the top, chattering as if to protest. Unfazed, Luo He continued to harvest walnuts, tossing them to the ground until a small pile accumulated. Once he descended, he collected the walnuts, counting them to find 36, all plump and promising. He decided to leave the higher ones for another day when his supplies would dwindle. Luo He gathered the walnuts into his removed shirt, tying it into a makeshift bundle. Walnuts are durable and do not spoil easily, making them an excellent source of sustenance for storage. He marked the walnut tree conspicuously and glanced at the sky. Realizing he could no longer afford to linger, he needed to return swiftly, lest he lose his way in the darkening woods. As he had taken only a few steps, Luo He's gaze was suddenly captivated by a thicket not far away. Behind the bushes, there appeared to be a gray-brown object, rectangular in shape, resembling a box. Could it be another treasure trove of supplies? A flicker of excitement surged within him, prompting him to quicken his pace towards it. He parted the underbrush, revealing a wooden chest, standing at half his height, that was strikingly similar to the previous supply box he had discovered. Its surface bore signs of wear and tear, rendering it rather unremarkable. Luo He remained cautious. He picked up a stone and hurled it at the chest. With a thud, the stone ricocheted off without any peculiar occurrence. After waiting a few moments to ensure there were no hidden threats in the vicinity, he stepped forward and forcefully pried open the latch of the chest. What lay inside filled him with exuberance. 3 bottles of 500 milliliters of mineral water, a considerable increase compared to the previous single bottle, a well-packaged can of meat, adorned with inscrutable text, yet the aroma of the meat was already tantalizing. A slingshot, crafted from hardwood, exhibiting remarkable elasticity, and beyond that, a palm-sized stitched book. Its cover yellowed with age, devoid of any text save for a simplistic illustration of herbs. 3 bottles of water, and a can of meat. His worries about hydration were now alleviated. Luo He, exhilarated, seized a bottle, unscrewed the cap, and took a generous sip. The cool liquid soothing his parched throat and invigorating his entire being. The can of meat was an unexpected delight in this world of scarcity. A single can of meat was worth its weight in gold. He carefully stowed the water and the can into his clothing bundle before picking up the stitched book. As he opened it, a faint scent of ink wafted towards him, revealing pages adorned with illustrations of various plants, accompanied by succinct annotations detailing their names, characteristics, and uses. It was, quite remarkably, a rudimentary herbal compendium. Items acquired. Basic herbal compendium. Purpose: to document the morphology and efficacy of common herbs, wild vegetables, and fruits, aiding in the identification of resources and preventing the consumption of toxic plants. Note: entry-level compendium, documenting only basic varieties. Subsequent upgrades can be achieved through material collection. To his sheer delight, he had come across a herbal guide. Previously, he had been concerned about his inability to recognize herbs, fearing the dangers of consuming toxic plants. Now, he had received this timely compendium. He began to peruse it eagerly, which contained records of a dozen common plants. Ginseng, known for its sweet flavor, greatly replenishes vitality and quenches thirst, nourishing the body. Panax nodo ginseng, with a root resembling a conical shape and a slightly bitter taste, disperses blood stasis and reduces swelling, specifically treating injuries. Belladonna, with funnel-shaped flowers, is entirely toxic. While it possesses sedative and muscle-relaxing properties, improper dosage can be fatal. Additionally, it provided identification methods for edible wild vegetables such as shepherd's purse, dandelion, and plantain, along with wild fruits like lantern fruit, mulberries, and wild grapes. Each plant was depicted with exquisite detail, and the annotations were clear and concise, allowing even someone as inexperienced as him to identify them with ease. As Luo He gazed upon the map, a profound sense of joy enveloped him. Its worth surpassed even that of the 3 bottles of water and the can of beef. In this world, knowledge stands as the very currency of survival. The day was waning, and he hastened to return. Luo He stowed away the botanical compendium and hefted his heavy burden, striding purposefully towards the sheltering tree. With the guide and ample supplies at his disposal, he felt a comforting sense of security. His steps were light, the weariness and anxiety that had previously weighed upon him now softened by the elation of his discoveries. After a brief interval, Luo He arrived at the modest wooden cabin beside the sheltering tree. Night had fully descended, enveloping the forest in darkness, punctuated only by the distant howls of wild beasts, rendering the stillness of the night eerily unsettling. Upon entering the cabin, he closed the door and windows, plunging the interior into an impenetrable gloom. Groping in the dark, he placed his burden on the ground and laid down upon the bed of leaves. Though the foliage was somewhat uncomfortable, it was infinitely preferable to sleeping under the open sky. He did not succumb to slumber immediately. Instead, he shut his eyes and revisited the contents of the botanical compendium in his mind, diligently committing to memory the characteristics and uses of each plant. The more he memorized now, the less peril he would face in the future. The shoddy system offered no data detection, no backpack, and lacked even the basic time and weather displays. Truly abysmal. Luo He could not suppress a moment of derision, yet his heart was less burdened than before. At least he now had a wooden cabin, supplies, a herb guide, and a talent for recovery, significantly enhancing his hope of survival. His thoughts began to drift, contemplating the extraordinary nature of this world, the spectral creatures hinted at by the sheltering tree, and the overarching theme of survival that permeated society. He suddenly realized that the disparities of rank in ancient times stemmed not only from combat prowess, but, more crucially, from the monopoly on knowledge. In this world of collective survival, the value of knowledge was immeasurable. A single herbal compendium could enable him to sidestep numerous lethal dangers. He resolved to seek out and accumulate such knowledge, for it was the very foundation of existence. Yet, as he pondered the survival rules governing all, he wondered whether, should he encounter other human survivors, anyone would be willing to share such vital knowledge. Frowning slightly, he shook his head, dismissing these tumultuous thoughts. Such musings were merely a distraction. He would take one step at a time. For now, he must prioritize his own well-being. Survival was the utmost imperative. His mind began to wander, fatigue settling in. Luo He stifled a yawn, his eyelids growing heavier. In the simplicity yet safety of the wooden cabin, he finally relinquished all vigilance and gradually drifted into slumber. The sounds of the wind rustling through the trees and the distant roars of beasts became the backdrop to his dreams. Chapter 3. Communication channel as dawn broke. A thick mist lingered in the forest, the damp air enveloping him with the earthy aroma of grass and decaying soil. Awakened by an overwhelming urgency, Luo He rubbed his bleary eyes, feeling the exhaustion dissipate under the influence of his extraordinary recovery talent. This remarkable ability allowed for swift restoration from the strains of labor and injury, rendering him revitalized after a mere slumber. He pushed open the creaking wooden door and hastened deeper into the woods, distancing himself from the sheltering tree, pondering the precariousness of his surroundings. Cleanliness around the refuge was paramount to avoid attracting pests and wild beasts. Having satisfied his physiological needs, Luo He indulged in a grand stretch, his bones crackling pleasantly. Invigorated and mentally clear, far more refreshing than a full 8 hours in a cramped rental. This talent proved invaluable. Staying up late to work would no longer be a concern. Just as he prepared to return to his cabin to continue chopping wood, a chilling system notification echoed in his mind. System notification. Chat channel officially activated. The chat channel? Intrigued, Luo He focused his thoughts, and a translucent panel of pale blue materialized before him, brimming with a torrent of rapidly scrolling text that threatened to overwhelm his senses. Is anyone there? Help! I am surrounded by venomous insects. Li Yunqing, please respond. I am your son, Li Xingyun. Where are you? Is there any national leader to explain this sudden transference? Wu Hu, experience from novels tells me I should take flight. Is there a master to guide me? I am dying of thirst in the desert. Can anyone spare me some water? Brother, sister, I am Guo Yicheng. Please contact me if you receive this. Messages flooded in one after another, predominantly from those seeking family, lamenting their circumstances, or inquiring about the situation. Luo He skimmed through the messages, feeling a tumult of emotions rise within him. A collective transference had occurred, with billions of individuals randomly transported, some in forests, others in deserts, and yet more by the sea, each facing vastly different fates. Many families had been torn apart, parents and children, siblings separated, and the palpable despair was almost tangible through the screen. After only a few minutes, Luo He felt his mind buzzing from the sheer volume of information. As he explored the channel's features, he quickly discerned the distinctions between regional and local channels, alongside a temporarily inactive private chat channel. More critically, he noted the limitation on messages. Each individual was permitted only 3 free communications per day, with subsequent messages requiring the expenditure of 1 withered leaf coin, the method of which to acquire remained undisclosed. 3 free messages were indeed precious, especially with the unknown means of obtaining more coins. He understood the necessity of using them judiciously. Compelling himself to remain calm, he filtered through the irrelevant noise, focusing intently on valuable content. Soon, several key pieces of information caught his eye. Attention, everyone. A mental fortitude below 20 will result in fainting. Do not push yourselves. I have yet to complete my cabin, hiding in a tree hollow, and have heard strange sounds at night, terrifying. All refuge trees are of level 0, no exceptions. The requirements for upgrading are 1 beast core and 5 liters of beast blood. I was transported alone at 1,555 years. The elderly, children, and families are bound to the same region, with improvements noted in the elderly, though they have not reached middle age levels. My brother, in his relentless pursuit to swiftly synthesize wooden planks, exhausted his mental energy and tragically passed away. It seems profoundly unjust. He failed to uncover the hidden talents of the reverse, and one cannot dismiss the possibility that others may be concealing their true capabilities. A shiver ran through Luo He as he committed these insights to memory. It appears that, aside from variations in initial environments and innate gifts, everyone essentially starts from a similar baseline, requiring them to establish shelters and upgrade their sanctuary trees. Most individuals begin with a modest supply of food and water. However, some find themselves in extreme conditions, devoid of resources. More critically, many are unfamiliar with wild vegetables and fruits, hesitating to consume anything edible, thus underscoring the paramount importance of knowledge. Fortunately, I possess a tome of botanical secrets. Otherwise, I would be troubled by the sight of a treasure trove with no understanding of its value. Luo He silently expressed gratitude, further solidifying his resolve to safeguard his books and materials. This knowledge is a vital asset for survival and must not be carelessly divulged lest he finds himself at a disadvantage. He dismissed the chat channel and directed his gaze toward the modest wooden cabin before him. This decrepit structure measures a mere 5 square meters, barely accommodating its inhabitants. The gaps between the wooden planks are substantial, and after a light rain last night, it leaked in several places, leaving the floor damp. I must expedite the upgrade, otherwise, the next rainfall will bring discomfort. With a mere thought, Luo He summoned the upgrade panel for the cabin. Shelter, rudimentary wooden cabin, specifications, 5 square meters status, barely shields against wind and rain, prone to leaks. Weak defense, upgrade requirements. 50 wooden planks. Advanced planks may be added to unlock special effects. Notes: upgrading will expand the area and enhance defense. 50 planks do not seem excessive, but what constitutes advanced planks? Luo He pondered, currently aware only that wooden blocks can be processed into ordinary planks. While the acquisition and effects of advanced planks remain a mystery, setting aside these considerations for now, he resolved to gather ordinary planks first, taking it step by step. He devised a plan for the day, to fell trees and process planks in the morning and afternoon, and to explore the surrounding area for resource chests under the midday sun. The only inconvenience was the absence of weather forecasts or time displays, relying solely on the position of the sun for rough estimations, which was quite impractical. Luo He grasped his stone axe and ventured into the woods, chanting a rhythmic mantra as he vigorously chopped at the small trees. Drawing from yesterday's experience, his movements became more adept. However, after felling fewer than 5 trees, the flint edge of his axe dulled significantly, increasing the effort required to chop down a tree from a mere dozen strikes to 20 or 30. This stone axe is far too fragile. Luo He furrowed his brow, feeling a sense of frustration. At this rate, when would he gather enough planks? He decided to first sharpen the axe or seek out a better tool, ideally discovering a blueprint for a workbench, as processing materials with mental energy was grueling. Pausing his tree felling, he regarded the pile of wooden blocks on the ground. Since there was no immediate danger nearby, and the sanctuary tree offered its mysterious protection, he opted to focus on exploring the surroundings for treasure chests. With the stone axe secured at his waist, Luo He meticulously searched every nook and cranny, his eyes vigilantly scanning the underbrush, tree trunks, and behind rocks. After approximately 10 minutes of wandering, he suddenly spotted a flickering glimmer in the grass ahead, strikingly conspicuous amidst the dim forest. A treasure chest. A sense of joy surged within him as he hastened forward, carefully parting the grass to reveal a palm-sized silver chest lying quietly amidst the foliage. It shimmered with a soft silver glow, its surface adorned with simple patterns, distinctly different from the previous wooden chests. Maintaining his caution, Luo He first picked up a stone and tossed it towards the chest, confirming the absence of traps before crouching down to lift the lid. What lay inside filled him with elation. 2 whole wheat loaves, 2 500-milliliter bottles of mineral water, and a folded blueprint. He promptly stowed the food and water into his arms, recognizing their importance as vital provisions, and eagerly unfolded the blueprint. Blueprint acquired. Basic workbench. Can be directly manifested. Upgrades with the treehouse. Function 1. Basic processing. 5 wood planks, 3 stones. 1 stone brick. Function 2. Tool creation. Stone axe. 1 wood, 1 stone. Basic fishing rod. 3 wood, 2 vines. Campfire. 5 wood. Self-igniting. Function 3. Tool repair. Consumes a small amount of materials to repair damaged tools. Note: must be placed on flat ground after manifestation. Cannot be moved. To his astonishment, it was the basic workbench. Moreover, it could be directly manifested. Luo He was nearly elated to the point of jumping for joy. This was a boon indeed. With the workbench, he could process wood planks without expending mental energy, create new tools, repair old ones, and even ignite fires, significantly enhancing his survival capabilities. Furthermore, the bread and water in the chest alleviated his pressing hunger. After consuming the remnants of half a bottle of water and some bread the previous night, he had been relying on wild jujubes and walnuts to fill his stomach. While they sufficed, they could not compare to the convenience of bread and mineral water. The instinct of his compatriots was to stockpile provisions. With a smile, Luo He patted the food in his arms. In a phase devoid of weapons and strength, accumulating resources was paramount. Confronting beasts would have to wait until he was adequately equipped. He carefully tucked the blueprint away and swiftly returned to the small cabin. Whereupon, reaching the shelter beside the tree, he placed the bread and water in a corner of the cabin, covering them with leaves to protect against moisture. Before eagerly retrieving the blueprint and murmuring, "Manifest," the blueprint transformed into a beam of golden light, descending upon the clear ground before the cabin, and as the light dissipated, a simple workbench, half his height, materialized. Its surface was crafted from thick wooden planks, supported by 4 wooden legs, with simple grooves and patterns etched into the top, alongside a small stone chisel hanging nearby, rudimentary yet functional. Luo He ran his fingers over the workbench's surface, feeling its sturdy, smooth texture. He attempted to place a wooden block upon it, and immediately processing options appeared in his mind. Would you like to process the wooden block into a plank? 5 wood for 1 plank. How splendid. It truly works. Filled with vigor, Luo He seized the blunt stone axe from his waist. Though the edge was dull, it sufficed for tackling small trees. Energized, he shuttled between the woods and the small cabin, diligently chopping trees and transporting wood blocks. Despite the axe becoming increasingly blunt, his extraordinary recovery talent kept his stamina at its peak. leaving him feeling no fatigue whatsoever. Around midday, as the sun reached its zenith and the temperature in the forest rose, Luo He finally paused to rest. He took a few sips of water and consumed a loaf of bread to replenish his energy before immediately using the workbench to process wood planks. He stacked 50 wooden blocks beside the workbench, processing 5 at a time. The workbench sprang to life, and the stone chisel operated autonomously, producing a rhythmic clattering sound. In less than 2 minutes, a perfectly crafted wooden plank fell to the ground. Luo He did not pause. He continued to place wooden blocks onto the workbench, watching as the planks took shape, stacking higher and higher, bringing him closer to his goal of upgrading the small wooden cabin. Time flew by, and before he realized it, the sun began to set, casting shadows in the forest. He paused to wipe the sweat from his brow and counted the wooden planks on the ground. There were 64, far exceeding the 50 required for the upgrade. Task accomplished with a surplus. A satisfied smile spread across Luo He's face. The extra 14 planks were perfect for future use. He also utilized the workbench to repair his dull stone axe, consuming just 1 wooden block and 1 stone. The repaired axe was sharper than before, proving to be even more efficient. Luo He neatly stacked the surplus wooden planks and blocks beside the cabin, covering them with leaves to protect against rain. Then, he approached the small wooden cabin, summoned the upgrade panel, and clicked the upgrade button. Instantly, the 50 wooden planks ascended into the air, guided by a mysterious force, merging seamlessly with the cabin. The structure visibly expanded, gaps filled in, the roof reinforced, and a brand new wooden door along with a larger window was added, enhancing the overall appearance. A few minutes later, the upgrade was complete, and a new panel appeared. Shelter, simple wooden cabin, specifications, 10 square meters status, good, wind and rain resistant. Basic defense, unlockable features, 10 storage slots, for non-bound materials, remarks, further upgrades possible, unlocking additional functions. As Luo He stepped through the wooden door, he immediately felt the spaciousness of the 10 square meter area, ample enough for storage and rest. The walls and roof were secure, alleviating concerns of drafts and leaks. The 10 transparent storage slots in the corners were ideal for storing bread, water, walnuts, and herbal tomes, eliminating the need to pile them on the floor. At dusk, eerie howls from wild beasts echoed through the forest. Luo He secured the doors and windows and crafted a campfire at the workbench, assembling a simple fire pit in the corner of the cabin from 5 wooden blocks. With a soft puff, it ignited, casting a warm glow that illuminated the cabin and dispelled the chill of the dark forest. Sitting beside the campfire, feeling its warmth, he found a profound sense of tranquility. Gazing out at the darkening woods and then at the storage slots and upgraded cabin, Luo He's resolve solidified. It was time to upgrade the shelter tree. To obtain beast cores and beast blood, he would need to devise a strategy for hunting. Though hunting wild beasts was fraught with peril, it was a necessary path to survival and empowerment. Gripping the repaired stone axe beside him, Luo He began to formulate his hunting plan for the morrow. The chat channel buzzed with messages, some filled with joy and others with sorrow, but he understood that in this survival of the fittest world, only through relentless effort could one find a foothold. The hope of survival always rested firmly in one's own hands. Chapter 4. Special timber. Observing the wooden blocks lined up for processing, Luo He estimated that it would take some time. His stomach aptly grumbled in response. Taking advantage of the remaining daylight, he decided to fill his belly before wandering over the opposite slope, hoping to discover new materials and perhaps a treasure chest. With this thought in mind, Luo He stepped to the door of the wooden cabin, picked up the whole grain bread he had left there in the morning, tore open the packaging, and stuffed it into his mouth. One loaf down merely quelled his hunger momentarily. He then twisted open a bottle of purified water from his backpack and gulped down half of it, barely suppressing his appetite. This time, he chose a different direction, opting not to revisit the gentle slope, but instead to explore the forest across the way. Brushing crumbs off his hands, he mused that without a proper axe, it would be splendid to stumble upon another treasure chest. Otherwise, he would have to wait for the planks to be processed before crafting a new axe at the workbench. Steeling himself, he advanced towards the dense woods on the opposite slope, his eyes scanning the surroundings like searchlights, wary of missing any useful materials. As he walked, a sudden thought struck him. Didn't the system panel possess a recording feature? The information about herbs, fruit trees, and timber could be directly logged into the panel, rendering memorization unnecessary. Energized by this revelation, Luo He quickened his pace and turned back towards the cabin. He retrieved the fundamental compendium of plants and diligently recorded each detail into the panel. The growth habits of wild jujubes, the identification characteristics of shepherd's purse, and the fruiting cycles of walnut trees. After a considerable effort, he had logged all the plants he currently recognized. Gazing at the neatly organized records on the panel, Luo He exhaled in relief. Although he was familiar with a few common varieties, they were merely the basics. As an ordinary person, he was surrounded by countless unfamiliar species in the forest. With the system aiding in documentation, he would no longer fear misidentifying plants and inadvertently consuming toxins. Resuming his journey towards the opposite slope, Luo He felt a newfound lightness in his step and a sense of reassurance in his heart. He hummed a tuneless melody, meandering through the woods, when his peripheral vision caught a flicker of light amidst the nearby low shrubs. Another treasure chest? A jolt of excitement coursed through him, prompting him to halt abruptly. Maintaining his usual caution, he retrieved a stone and tossed it towards the source of the glimmer. The dull thud of stone meeting stone echoed reassuringly. After a few moments, with no stirring of wind or rustle of grass, Luo He felt at ease and hurried over to part the bushes. Indeed, nestled within was a grayish treasure chest, considerably sturdier than the previous wooden one, resembling an upgraded version. Eagerly, Luo He unlatched the clasp, and the system's notification reverberated in his mind. Congratulations! You have obtained 2 liters of purified water, 1 iron axe, 1 basic furnace, 1 basic backpack, first-time gift. Ecstatic, Luo He exclaimed aloud, his eyes sparkling like stars. He eagerly seized the basic backpack, only to see a prompt appear on the panel indicating it could be bound to the system's space. Such delightful fortune. Luo He swiftly murmured the binding incantation, and in an instant, his backpack transformed into a streak of shimmering light, merging seamlessly with the interface. Upon inspection, he discovered 10 storage slots, infinitely more reliable than the makeshift bundle he had fashioned from cloth. He picked up the furnace manual and glanced at it. Reading, specialized processing equipment for construction materials, capable of smelting stone and iron ore, manufacturing stone bricks, iron tools, and other advanced items. A wave of exhilaration washed over Luo He. With the furnace, he could craft axes and chisels himself, no longer reliant on a shabby stone axe. He stuffed water and the iron axe head into his backpack and was about to depart when his gaze fell upon the nearby thicket. A cluster of glistening purple berries dangled enticingly from the branches. Without hesitation, Luo He activated the system panel to scan them, and a line of text appeared. Blueberry, basic ingredient, acquisition method, widely distributed in forests and grassland thickets, densely growing in certain coastal areas, supports home cultivation. Additional uses can be processed into jam or dried fruit. Specific effects to be explored. What a treasure! Luo He was elated, reaching out to pluck a few and pop them into his mouth, the sweet tart juice bursting on his tongue, accompanied by a refreshing fruity aroma. He continued to gather and eat, spending a good 10 minutes collecting over 130 berries, filling 2 slots in his backpack. His belly was pleasantly full, still tinged with the faint acidity, yet he found himself craving more. While picking blueberries, he unexpectedly discovered 3 small seeds. Luo He carefully collected them, contemplating. Once he cultivated a vegetable patch, he could plant these seeds, perhaps with a flower pot. He could even attempt to grow them now. With 6 slots in his backpack filled, he gleefully hefted the iron axe, feeling its substantial weight and sharp edge, far superior to his previous flint axe. He had a weapon now, an iron one, no less. A foolish grin spread across Luo He's face as he thought, now I can confidently chop wood and hunt. With the iron axe slung over his shoulder, he continued deeper into the dense forest. After a few more minutes of walking, the trees around him began to change. The trunks were sturdier than those of the smaller trees, their bark tight and exuding a subtle fragrance. Luo He quickly activated the system panel to scan. Cypress, primary building material, distribution, grows in forests, mountains, suburban areas, and barren slopes, highly adaptable. Newcomers can fell them with an iron axe or better tools. Core advantages, resistant to water decay and insect infestation, naturally contains cypress oil that repels moisture. Ideal for constructing wooden houses and fences without additional treatment. Wood burns efficiently, with a pleasant aroma containing camphene and limonene, providing a slight insect-repelling buff to reduce mosquito interference. Evaluation, excellent basic building material. Perfect. Luo He slapped his thigh in delight, nearly jumping with joy. Wasn't this cypress wood tailor-made for his little wooden house? Its decay and insect resistance was a boon for any survivor. Gripping the iron axe tightly, he aimed for a cypress tree with a trunk the width of a bowl and swung down. A crisp sound echoed as the axe embedded deeply into the trunk. Wood shavings flying. Heave-ho! Heave-ho! With fervent shouts, Luo He wielded his iron axe, striking repeatedly with newfound vigor. It was far more effortless than before when he had been chopping small trees. After a series of vigorous blows, the cedar tree swayed precariously before finally tumbling down, releasing a faint, aromatic scent from its severed trunk. As he continued to chop with increasing enthusiasm, taking brief pauses here and there, he lost track of time until dusk descended and the light began to fade. His backpack was filled to the brim with cedar logs, with every remaining storage space occupied. Luo He pulled out a handful of blueberries, their juicy sweetness instantly dispelling his fatigue. Glancing at the darkening sky, he felt compelled to hasten his pace and set off towards the small cabin with his axe in hand. After a brisk 10-minute run, he finally arrived at the cabin. He tossed his backpack onto the ground, and his gaze fell upon the 30 neatly processed wooden planks he had crafted that morning. It seemed that without the axe, his efficiency had been significantly diminished. Muttering to himself, he promptly emptied the cedar logs from his backpack, stacking them beside the workbench before initiating the processing program. Just like the ordinary planks, 5 cedar logs could be transformed into 1 cedar plank. After processing a total of 500 logs, he successfully produced 100 cedar planks, sufficient not only for upgrading the cabin, but also leaving him with a surplus. How splendid, he mused, as these planks would be perfect for constructing a bed frame. With his thoughts brimming with delight, he continued his work, fixated on the progress bar on the interface. As the cedar planks neared completion, darkness enveloped the surroundings. Without hesitation, Luo He clicked to upgrade the cabin on the interface. 50 cedar planks ascended into the air, enveloped by a mysterious golden light, and seamlessly integrated into the small cabin. The once humble abode visibly transformed, expanding in size, its walls now adorned with tightly grained cedar, and every crevice meticulously filled. Even the roof was lined with cedar planks. Luo He approached and gently patted the newly installed cedar wall, feeling its warm texture beneath his fingertips, while the subtle fragrance of cedar lingered in the air. The bothersome mosquitoes that had plagued him during the day seemed to have diminished significantly. He gazed up at the upgraded cabin, and a system prompt materialized. Excellent level 1 cabin, cedar version, characteristics, water resistant, insect repellent, structurally stable. Imbued with a mild insect repelling buff unlocks. Built-in storage rack for small tools and ingredients. The last rays of sunlight filtered through the window, casting dappled shadows across the floor, and the air within the cabin grew refreshingly crisp. Luo He stretched his limbs, his joints cracking pleasantly, while the fatigue from his afternoon of tree cutting lingered in his muscles, causing a deep ache. Yet, upon witnessing the rejuvenated cabin, that weariness was swept away by an indescribable sense of exhilaration. He casually picked up a leftover cedar plank and brought it to his nose, inhaling its intensified fragrance. As he contemplated how to utilize the surplus planks to build a bed, his gaze fell upon a pile of dark brown blocks beside the furnace, resin that had dripped from the cedar tree during his afternoon chopping, sticky and carelessly wrapped in leaves. Luo He picked up a piece of the resin, feeling its viscous texture and inhaling the rich scent of cedar. He was momentarily uncertain of the purpose of this object, yet a subtle intuition suggested its significance. Perhaps it could serve to fill the gaps in the wooden planks, or even function as fuel. He murmured to himself as he carefully stowed the tar into his backpack, intending to examine it further the following day. As night deepened, the chirping of insects in the woods rose and fell, accompanied by the occasional distant howl of wild beasts, yet nothing could frighten Luo He anymore. Leaning against the cedar wall, he listened to the wind outside, gazing at the flickering campfire within, feeling an unprecedented sense of tranquility. Tomorrow, he would test the furnace to see if he could forge new tools and hunt a wild beast to gather the materials needed to upgrade his shelter tree. A smile crept across his lips as he contemplated these thoughts. Chapter 5. Various types of wood. He continued to admire the rejuvenated little cabin, which was spacious enough to accommodate 2 rooms. The floor was now laid with smooth cedar planks, a far cry from the previously damp earthen ground. The dry leaves he had spread the night before still lay piled in the corner, and 2 sturdy wooden railings stood against the wall, resembling the headboards of prison beds, barely suitable for securing items. The wooden windows and doors opened and closed with ease, allowing the gentle forest breeze to flow through, a marked improvement over the drafty, leaky hovel of before. Luo He's eyes brightened, and he dashed outside, panting as he brought in 2 hefty cedar planks, which he laid side by side with a satisfying thud. These would serve perfectly as bed slats. A grin spread across his face as he gathered the dry leaves from the corner, thickly layering them atop the planks, thus completing a makeshift bed. Next, Luo He began to organize the items within the cabin. The furnace and workbench were carefully arranged against the wall, neatly aligned. The 3 bottles of mineral water and the large container of water obtained from the treasure chest were grouped together, while walnuts and pieces of tar were placed in their respective spots. Finally, he unearthed the remaining loaf of whole wheat bread and displayed it prominently. These provisions, if rationed wisely, could sustain him for 2 or 3 days. Muttering to himself, he unconsciously stroked his stomach, his tongue instinctively licking his lips as a sudden pang of hunger struck him. Oh, how he wished for some meat. He picked up the bread and began to gnaw at it, washing it down with a bottle of mineral water, discarding the empty plastic bottle carelessly in the corner. After cracking a few walnuts and finishing off the leftover jujubes, he emitted a contented belch. Feeling satiated, Luo He suddenly smacked his forehead, remembering the sapling of the shelter tree he had neglected. He hurried out of the cabin and immediately spotted the drooping sapling. The system panel's alert glaring at him. Treehouse sapling. Growth status. Low water, lacking growth elements. Oh no. He had been so preoccupied with the house that he had forgotten about it. He quickly turned back into the cabin, retrieved 2 bottles of mineral water, and rushed to the sapling. Setting the water down, he knelt beside the sapling, loosening the hard soil around its base with his hands, and formed a shallow earthen circle around it. Only then did he twist off the bottle cap and slowly pour the water into the circle, allowing it to seep into the roots for the sapling to absorb gradually. After watering, Luo He furrowed his brow in contemplation. Merely watering was certainly insufficient. Some fertilizer was necessary. He racked his brain, suddenly recalling what the elders in his hometown had said during his childhood. Wood ash could serve as fertilizer and was quite potent. Why not give it a try? Desperate times call for desperate measures. With determination, Luo He turned and approached the furnace, selecting 5 unprocessed ordinary wooden blocks. He activated the furnace's processing function. Moments later, a warm object landed in his hand, accompanied by the system prompt. Campfire. You may add wooden blocks to maintain the fire, enhancing the ambient temperature in a limited area. Luo He gazed at the campfire in contemplation. Should he add wood to ignite it? However, there were not many ordinary wooden blocks left. These 5 had remained from the morning's processing due to their distance from the workbench. After a moment's hesitation, he ultimately shook his head. No. Better not to burn anything today. The wood might still prove useful. He transported the campfire to a clearing outside, as leaving it indoors with all the cedar planks could lead to disaster if it ignited. He added a wooden block to the fire as a test, and the flames surged upward, burning brightly. The panel indicated that a single ordinary wooden block could burn for 5 minutes. He wondered how long a cedar block would last. Ah well, he thought, tomorrow will suffice for that experiment. Once the wood had burned out completely, the campfire extinguished, leaving only a heap of warm ash on the ground. After waiting a while, estimating that the temperature had cooled sufficiently, he gently cradled the ash in both hands and carefully poured it into the soil circle surrounding the sapling. The earth within the circle was still damp, so he ran over to snap a twig, using it as a makeshift stick to mix the ash and soil thoroughly. Just as he completed this task, the system panel's notification changed. Treehouse seedling. Growing, absorption of moisture and nutrients in progress. Useful. Luo He's eyes sparkled. As a weight lifted from his heart, he looked at the sapling, and with a sudden mischievous grin, dashed behind a nearby thicket to relieve himself in the soil circle. Fertilizer should not flow to outsiders. This should provide ample nourishment. Having accomplished all this, the sky had completely darkened. A cool breeze rustled through the forest, causing Luo He to shiver. The day's labor left him aching all over. Well, after a day of toil, it was time to rest. He strolled back to the wooden cabin, lying down on the cedar plank bed strewn with dry leaves, and casually opened the chat channel. A flurry of messages flooded the screen, dazzling his eyes. Brothers, let me share some good news. My little cabin is finally built. Haha, Li Mingqing. It's your sister Li Minghua. Please reply. Is anyone in the desert? Help. I'm dying of thirst. As Luo He read through the mixed sentiments of joy and sorrow, he felt a surge of emotion. In this apocalyptic struggle for survival, everyone was fighting desperately. Some rejoiced while others lamented, and many more were lost in the vast forests and barren deserts, calling out for their loved ones. He recalled his own situation after his parents had passed. His relatives had long severed ties. He had purchased a small apartment in the city, living alone while managing the mortgage and daily meals, leading a monotonous life, but at least he could eat his fill without worrying for anyone else. Yet now, in this new world, that solitude had transformed into his source of resilience. Lost in thought, the channel suddenly erupted with a few eye-catching messages, swiftly overshadowing the cries for family reunion. Hey, brothers. Does anyone know about advanced building materials? My humble tent is due for an upgrade with superior materials, and I find myself curious about its appearance. My companion, in a playful tone, encouraged a response, and after a brief pause, he graciously revealed that trees are classified by grade. Following this, a detailed message emerged. Jujube wood, level 1 renowned for its hardness and density. With fine grain that resists deformation and insect infestation, it boasts durability comparable to cedar. However, it is marred by numerous gnarled knots and a low yield, making it suitable for crafting small furniture and artisan pieces. The channel erupted with excitement, filled with envious remarks. Soon after, another individual shared their discovery. Red ash wood, level 1 characterized by high density and hardness, it is resilient to moisture and deformation, with exceptional resistance to pests. Rivaling cedar, its intricate grain is visually appealing, displaying a deep reddish-brown hue, making it ideal for furniture production and architectural decoration. Gradually, more individuals contributed their finds of level 1 timber, igniting a wave of envy. The individual who had previously boasted about constructing a wooden house resurfaced, his tone dripping with jealousy. "Where on earth did you all find this?" I searched tirelessly and only unearthed a stone chest, finding merely an iron axe to chop down ordinary trees. Enough with the flaunting, it's quite infuriating. As I observe these exchanges, I mused to myself, I am not the only fortunate one. Each type of level 1 wood has its unique advantages. It appears that everyone's start is relatively favorable, at least enough for self-sufficiency. However, discordant messages soon surfaced, inciting collective ire. "Those of you with valuable resources, could you not share a little? We older folks are slower and struggling. How are we to survive? A little generosity would be greatly appreciated." This prompted an uproar within the channel, filled with indignation. How shameless. Even after crossing over, you wish to play this game? Have you no shame? In this society governed by the strong, do you still cling to the past? Depart. If you lack the ability, do not covet what others have. I shook my head in disapproval, a sardonic smile creeping upon my lips. Such individuals who yearn for unearned gains exist everywhere. Even in this grim survival world, they still harbor thoughts of exploiting others. Do they truly believe others are easy prey? In reality, one might not survive a confrontation with such individuals. I casually closed the chat channel, as the sounds of insects and distant beasts intertwined outside, rendering the interior unusually tranquil. I grasped the iron axe beneath my pillow, its cold metallic touch providing a sense of reassurance. Tomorrow, I would venture forth to hunt my first beast. Chapter 6. Flax at the break of dawn. I was roused by a pressing need, hastily exiting my makeshift camp while clutching my abdomen, grabbing a broad leaf for immediate relief. I took care to bury the evidence carefully, for even in the wilderness, caution is never excessive. Rubbing his empty belly, he relinquished the thought of utilizing his stored grain and decided to venture in a different direction for a stroke of luck. To the east lay the sloped land of walnut dates. To the west were the poplar trees and blueberries, but this time he would explore southward, armed with an iron axe and a slingshot. Luo He navigated through the low shrubs and ordinary trees, occasionally wielding the axe to clear obstructing branches. After approximately 10 minutes, a faint sound of water caught his attention, prompting him to quicken his pace. Before him, a tributary, 5 to 6 meters wide, revealed itself, its clear waters shimmering in the sunlight, merely a kilometer from the campsite. He crouched down, cupping the water in his hands, and drank deeply. The coolness spread down his throat, instantly dispelling the lingering drowsiness. Fish. Luo He's gaze suddenly fixated on the water's surface, where palm-sized fish swam leisurely, utterly oblivious to danger. Stealthily, he picked up a few suitable small stones, drew back his slingshot, and with a swift release, a stone struck a fish with precision. The fish flipped onto its back, carried away by the current, and he joyfully jumped into the thigh-deep water to retrieve his prize, far easier to catch than the cunning fish of modern rivers. Regrettably, he could not find any more fish, so he strung the catch onto a branch, then remembered his backpack and quickly stored the fish away securely. On the moist ground by the river, clusters of tender wild vegetables caught his eye, and the system promptly identified them. Duckfoot, duck celery, with edible tender stems and leaves that are fragrant. Luo He's eyes sparkled. Was this not a wild vegetable version of celery? Perfectly suited to accompany the fish. Yet he then slapped his forehead, realizing he lacked cooking tools and would have to settle for roasting them. He carefully gathered 10 stalks, thinking the campsite was not far from the river, and he could always return for more if needed. Loaded with fish and wild vegetables, he prepared to head back when a familiar cluster of plants at the riverbank halted his steps. This was the hemp he had been yearning for these past few days. Even more thrilling, hidden beneath the plants was a green treasure chest, emblazoned with the hemp insignia. At the moment of opening the chest, a system prompt sounded. Congratulations. You have obtained 5 sheets of coarse linen, 22, a simple loom, first acquisition guaranteed, and the basic skill of gathering, consumes mental energy. Overjoyed, Luo He stowed the items in his backpack and immediately activated the gathering skill. Gazing at the system's pop-up description of flax, an annual herb with upright, waxy stems and linear leaves, its capsule containing flattened oval seeds, he recalled previous readings about flax fibers being suitable for weaving, which would perfectly resolve his clothing odor dilemma and the lack of a change of garments. Focusing intently, he expended 20 points of mental energy and harvested 20 flax plants in one go, unexpectedly also acquiring 10 flax seeds, with the system noting, can be pressed for oil. The residue can serve as organic fertilizer or high-protein feed. Looking at the fish, wild vegetables, flax, and flax seeds in his backpack, Luo He strode briskly back to the campsite. Coarse linen, a simple loom, oil-extractable flax seeds, along with fresh fish and wild vegetables. The bounty from this southern expedition far exceeded his expectations. He contemplated. First, he would roast the fish and duck foot to satiate his hunger. Then study how to utilize the simple loom to weave a new garment from coarse linen, and as for the flax seeds, he would certainly attempt oil extraction when he found a suitable container. It seemed that his days of survival were gradually steering towards a more hopeful direction. Diving into the river, he immersed his body in the cool water. The gentle current caressed him, refreshing his head and body, and lightly rinsed his clothes and shoes. Thus, he made his way back, dampened. Upon returning to the campsite, it felt close to noon. Luo He sought out a dry patch of ground. Retrieving the fish and duck feet from his backpack, laying them out. The fish retained the river's cool moisture, while the tender leaves of the duck feet glistened with vibrant green. He patted his stomach, the pangs of hunger already stirred. Without a pot to cook, roasting was his only option. He chopped some dry wood with his axe, constructing a simple rack over the campfire. He added more wood to stoke the flames and found a sturdy branch to skewer the fish, which he slowly turned over the fire. The fish began to sizzle as the flames rendered its oils, releasing an intoxicating aroma that mingled with the sweetness of the flesh. Seizing the moment, Luo He plucked off the old leaves of the duck feet, retaining only the tender stems and leaves, which he also skewered and positioned near the fire to roast. The leaves quickly softened, exuding a delicate fragrance. With a satisfying crunch, he bit into a piece of the roasted fish, perfectly charred on the outside yet tender within, devoid of any unnecessary seasoning, yet bursting with pure flavor. Another bite of the slightly crisp duck feet followed, imbued with a hint of sweetness that instantly quelled his hunger. After feasting, Luo He patted his belly, his gaze falling upon the simple loom nestled in his backpack. He retrieved it and set it at the entrance. This wooden contraption, while simple in structure, was a marvel, accompanied by a brief guide. Simple loom, capable of turning hemp into coarse fabric, or utilizing coarse fabric and linen fibers to weave basic garments. Each piece requires 3 units of coarse fabric and consumes 10 points of mental energy. He promptly produced the 3 pieces of coarse fabric previously collected, following the instructions to lay them on the loom and commence weaving. The initially loose fabric gradually tightened. Before long, the system's notification chimed, consumed 3 pieces of coarse fabric and 10 points of mental energy, successfully woven 1 basic hemp shirt. Luo He picked up the freshly crafted shirt, its fabric a natural light beige, possessing the unique rough texture of linen yet thick enough for durability. Eagerly, he swapped out his sweat-soaked attire for the new hemp shirt, feeling a refreshing coolness against his skin. Finally, he had clean clothes. He stretched contentedly and proceeded to transform the freshly gathered linen into fabric for undergarments and trousers. The undergarments required 2 pieces, plus an additional 3 for the trousers, leaving him with 3 pieces of fabric as a reserve. In a short while, he successfully crafted them, tossing his old clothes and shoes onto a distant patch of grass, donning the newly made apparel, which felt remarkably pleasing. After tidying the loom and returning it indoors, Luo He recalled the 10 flax seeds. The system indicated they could be pressed for oil, with the residue serving as fertilizer. If he could cultivate more flax, not only could he weave additional garments, but he would also secure a stable source of energy. Oil, after all, is essential for sustenance. However, he currently lacked the tools for oil extraction, which he hoped to find in a treasure chest. He resolved to continue searching. Those flax seeds could also be sown to stabilize his harvest. As the current rudimentary loom necessitates iron blocks for its enhancement, the pursuit of iron ore must persist. Additionally, salt is another essential resource that warrants exploration. Chapter 7. Southeast Mining Area. The midday sun filtered through the gaps in the leaves, casting mottled shadows across the campsite. Luo He donned a fresh linen garment, the crisp fabric clinging to his skin, dispelling the weariness and sweat accumulated over several days. He patted his backpack, securely placing the 10 linen seeds inside the quaint wooden cabin. The immediate priority was to locate iron ore, upgrade the loom and workbench, and seek out salt mines along with the crucial food extractor, as salt is vital for survival. And the food extractor is the essential tool for extracting salt and efficiently pressing oil. Other ores could be of lesser concern for the time being. After a brief rest, Luo He shouldered his backpack, stowed his iron axe and slingshot, and set forth towards the hillside southeast of the shelter. The terrain undulated, with exposed rocks far more likely to appear than on flat ground, providing hope for discovering iron ore and perhaps even traces of salt mines and treasure chests. Before departing, he meticulously organized his backpack, ensuring that his tools were readily accessible, and stepped lightly into the forest. Vines entwined around towering trees, their branches and leaves creating a canopy overhead. Observing the robust vines, Luo He mused to himself, I had intended to use these for fishing rods, but now that I possess fabric, they are of no use. He swung his axe, cleaving through obstructing branches, advancing deeper into the hillside. The soil beneath his feet transitioned from soft humus to hard gravel, occasionally revealing stones with a bluish-gray or faint white hue, while the air grew infused with a damp, rocky scent. The iron ore must be nearby. His eyes sparkled with anticipation as he meticulously searched among the rocky debris. After approximately half an hour, a stone radiating a dark red sheen came into view, and the system promptly displayed a notification. Iron ore can be refined into iron blocks, an essential raw material for upgrading tools and crafting equipment. Overjoyed, Luo He tightened his grip on the axe, using the back of it to strike the ore, the resounding clang echoing through the forest as the sturdy stone shattered into smaller pieces. He carefully packed 6 pieces of iron ore into his backpack. Observing the exposed traces of the ore vein, he calculated, it appears this is an open pit mine. Using the axe as a hammer is quite wasteful. I shall return with appropriate tools for a thorough extraction. With that thought, he continued to search the vicinity for easily accessible stones, managing to extract an additional 10 pieces of iron ore before pausing to wipe the sweat from his brow. Just then, he caught sight of a nearby rock formation with a depression, where a treasure chest gleamed with a dark golden hue, quietly embedded within the cliffside, its surface intricately etched with mineral patterns. A surge of excitement coursed through Luo He as he hurried over, recognizing the markings of a hidden ore vein on the chest. He promptly leveraged his axe against the chest's seams. With a satisfying crack, the lid sprang open, and a series of notifications chimed. Congratulations, you have obtained 1 iron pickaxe, a book on basic ore knowledge and accompanying flora, 10 pieces of iron ore, 2 packs of compressed biscuits, and 2 cans of luncheon meat. My heavens, so many treasures. Luo He could hardly contain his elation. He hurriedly loaded the fundamental knowledge of ore and accompanying flora into the system, and the pages instantaneously transformed into a stream of data that flowed into his mind. The description of salt mines captured his attention. Salt deposits typically form in enclosed water body sedimentary zones, often accompanied by minerals such as gypsum and mirabolite. The surface frequently exhibits white salt frost or crystalline rocks, particularly in low-lying areas of arid slopes or near dried river valleys, where their presence is more likely. Armed with this knowledge, he set out to search for suitable locations to uncover salt mines or salt crystals. After half an hour of diligent searching, he finally stumbled upon a promising site beneath a cliff and rushed over. There, he noticed a stone treasure chest nestled at the base of the cliff, and he quickly opened it. Congratulations, you have obtained a food workshop capable of refining ingredients into edible basic tools, a bag of salt, 2 bottles of water, and a blueprint. With the food workshop in hand, he felt invigorated and eagerly examined the blueprint. Wooden barrel, an excellent tool for storing water. This discovery sparked his interest, and he promptly learned the blueprint. He then placed the items from the treasure chest into his backpack, now possessing salt. While the salt mine itself had lost significance, it was still essential to be aware of its location. Glancing around, he suddenly noticed a faint white crystalline surface on the cliff wall, approximately 2 years old. He dashed over and gently struck a small piece with his newly acquired iron pickaxe. The system immediately recognized it. Salt crystal contains natural salt content. Pure salt blocks can be extracted through the food workshop. At last, he had accomplished his goal. Exhilarated, he extracted 5 salt crystals and stowed them in his backpack, his hand trembling slightly as he gripped the pickaxe. The pickaxe proved far more efficient than the axe, allowing for swift and effortless ore extraction. He decided to return to the iron ore vein nearby to continue his search, working until noon, then taking a break. After resting, he collected an additional 54 pieces of iron ore, bringing his total to a perfect 80 pieces, completely satisfying his tool upgrade requirements. As the afternoon approached, the light in the forest began to shift, prompting him to cease his labors. With a fully laden backpack containing 80 pieces of iron ore, 5 salt crystals, an iron pickaxe, a food workshop, compressed biscuits, and luncheon meat, he set off on his return journey with light steps. Along the way, he thoughtfully marked the tree trunks to facilitate future mining expeditions for iron ore and salt crystals. Upon returning to the campsite, he wasted no time resting. He immediately lit a bonfire and eagerly took out the salt, scraping a little with his finger to taste its pure, salty flavor that burst on his tongue. He then opened the food workshop, added flax seeds, retrieved the mineral water bottle he had discarded in a corner yesterday, and began the extraction process. Soon, golden oil began to flow gradually, and he hastily captured it in a bottle, ultimately collecting a third of it. Overjoyed, he promptly opened a can of luncheon meat, cutting it into small pieces, and threaded the leftover celery onto a twig, sprinkling it with salt and drizzling a bit of the extracted flax oil before placing it over the bonfire to roast. Fortunately, the iron plate beneath the luncheon meat allowed for food processing. The combination of the salty luncheon meat and celery whetted his appetite, and despite burning his lips, he relished every bite. He then guzzled down an entire bottle of water and stuffed a handful of blueberries into his mouth. Sated and content, Luo He sat beside the campfire, reflecting on his bountiful harvest. 80 pieces of iron ore were sufficient to upgrade the workbench and loom. While the salt mine and food workshop had effectively resolved the challenges of salt and oil extraction, the iron pickaxe had doubled the efficiency of mining iron and stone, and he had emergency food supplies to bolster his reserves. As he gazed upon the territory he had claimed, his resolve grew ever stronger. Shortly, he would chop wood, upgrade the workbench, forge additional practical tools from iron, and thoroughly enhance his survival gear. The flickering flames of the campfire danced upon his face. At last, the days of survival had ushered in a turn towards stability. Food reserves: 30 walnuts, 2 compressed biscuits, 1 liter of water, 2 bottles of water, each 560 milliliters, 100 blueberries, 1 can of luncheon meat. Materials: 5 coarse burlap, 50 cedar planks, 50 tar, 30 ordinary wooden boards, 3 blueberry seeds, 80 iron ore. Skills: gathering skills. Basic identification book, 32, requires further unlocking. Chapter 8. Major upgrade. Luo He fixed his gaze upon the iron ore gradually glowing red in the furnace, his mind calculating. The processing would take a while, so in the meantime, he needed to clear the area surrounding the wooden cabin. He had long felt that the dense underbrush and shrubs around the house not only obstructed light and ventilation, but also harbored snakes and insects, potentially serving as cover for approaching beasts. He aimed to clear an open space the size of a basketball court, ensuring safety and providing a venue for future activities. Grasping his iron axe, Luo He began by sketching the perimeter on the ground with stones, centered on the cabin. He extended a rectangular area approximately 28 meters long and 15 meters wide, precisely the dimensions of a standard basketball court. The few crooked little trees at the edges became his primary targets. The thickest among them was no wider than a bowl and had not yet fully matured. Firmly grounding himself, he gripped the axe handle with both hands and aimed for the base of the trunk. Delivering a decisive strike, the axe head embedded into the wood with a dull thud, sending splinters flying. He continued to chop along the grain, exerting every ounce of effort, soon becoming drenched in sweat. Crack! With the final blow, the little tree swayed and toppled, its crown crashing to the ground with a rustling sound. Luo He took a deep breath. As he bent down to drag the trunk, his fingers inadvertently brushed against the fractured bark, revealing a layer of resilient white fibers that peeled away from the bark. He paused in surprise, tugging at it, and found the fibers remarkably long and resistant to breakage. At that moment, a virtual prompt suddenly appeared before his eyes. Acquired 10 fibrous bark, accompanied by a line of small text below. Can be processed into hemp rope. Burlap pieces, basic crafting materials. Luo He's pupils constricted, a mix of astonishment and joy flooding his heart. There was such a resource? In recent days, he had been preoccupied with clearing paths and felling trees, neglecting to notice that this useful material could be stripped from the underbrush. He had unwittingly missed a treasure trove. He hastily set down the trunk and crouched to examine the branches of the underbrush on the ground, carefully gripping the outer skin of a twig and gently tearing it. Indeed, he successfully peeled off another piece of bark rich in fibers, and the virtual prompt flickered again. Acquired 3 fibrous bark. How remarkably simple. Luo He felt invigorated. Deciding to slow his pace of felling, after toppling each thicket of shrubs or small tree, he would first crouch down to strip the bark and gather the fibers. As his fingertips danced across the screen, pale blue notifications emerged in succession, indicating a gradual increase in the quantity of bast fibers, which soon accumulated to over 15. He casually tucked the collected fibers into a storage basket nestled in the corner of the wooden cabin, contemplating that once he completed this task, he would first twist a few strands of hemp rope, which would prove useful for bundling timber and constructing various items. The sun began its slow descent to the west, and the temperature slightly dropped. Nonetheless, sweat had already soaked through his back, clinging uncomfortably to his clothing. He paused occasionally to sip water, his gaze fixed on the stone markers on the ground to ensure he remained within the designated clearing area. When he encountered vines entwined around tree trunks, he wielded his axe to sever them, simultaneously stripping the vines of their outer bark to gather more fibers. The dry branches and fallen leaves scattered on the ground were conveniently gathered aside to be used as firewood later. At this moment, he pondered the possibility that if shrubs could yield such fibers, surely trees could as well. Was it merely because he had been chopping directly without stripping the bark over the past few days? Lost in thought, he realized he still had much to learn and could not yet achieve his goal. Approaching an ancient tree on the eastern side, its trunk was as thick as a human body and composed of resilient wood. After delivering a dozen strikes, the axe blade began to dull. Yet a deep notch finally appeared in the trunk. He shifted his stance, first removing the lateral branches, and in doing so, gathered a considerable amount of bast fibers, alleviating the trunk's weight. He then concentrated his efforts on the notch, and after half an hour, with a resounding crash, the old tree fell towards the open space, sending dust swirling into the air. Indeed, trees could provide bast fibers, but only if the bark was first peeled away. As he progressed into the latter part of his task, he grew increasingly adept at chopping, stripping fibers, dragging, and organizing in one fluid motion. He bound the wooden blocks and bark together in a crisscross pattern, forming a rudimentary low fence along the edge of the clearing, while the dry leaves were separately stacked for fuel. When he severed the last branch obstructing the boundary and completed the final batch of bast fibers, the sun had already dipped near the horizon, casting golden rays across the clearing. Straightening his back, he patted his aching waist and arms. Stepping back to assess his work, what was once a chaotic woodland had transformed into a flat, open space, roughly the size of a basketball court. With the wooden cabin firmly positioned at its center and no significant obstructions around, allowing for a clearer view, the evening breeze brushed past him, revealing the contours of the distant wilderness, alleviating his concerns about sudden intrusions from the dense forest. At last, he felt a sense of security and had unexpectedly amassed a substantial amount of bast fibers. A smile spread across Luo He's face as his gaze swept over the fibers stored in the corner basket, then turned towards the furnace. Next, he would attempt to craft something practical with these fibers. Approaching the furnace, he found that the refining process had been completed, and he was quite pleased to behold 40 iron blocks. Placing them into his backpack, he then proceeded to the entrance, stowing away 30 wooden planks, for building with cedar, into his pack. Finally, he arrived at the workstation to upgrade it, and subsequently began to enhance both the furnace and the rudimentary loom, instantly depleting his wooden planks and reducing his iron ore by 15, yet remaining within acceptable limits. Gazing at the upgraded workshop, he discovered a selection of new recipes: iron axes, iron picks, fishing rods, iron hammers, iron swords, iron pots, and iron bows and arrows, an abundance of foundational iron goods. The simple loom has evolved, now boasting an array of new recipes: paper garments, lower attire, fishing line, and shoes, crafted similarly to grass sandals from fibers and wooden boards, along with fundamental products like straw mats and bamboo mats. A significant upgrade indeed. Upon glancing at the furnace, he noted the availability of essential building materials and weaponry components: stone bricks, glass, clay blocks, and arrowheads. Luo He gazed at these newly emerged recipes, excitement sparkling in his eyes. He resolved to create a batch of items for a substantial upgrade, particularly since his current iron axe was beginning to show signs of wear. Following the recipes, he retrieved iron ingots and some basic timber from his backpack and commenced his industrious efforts at the workbench. As he completed each step, a brand new iron axe materialized before him, its blade glimmering with a cold light, considerably sharper than the previous one. Without hesitation, he crafted an iron sword and an iron bow, then proceeded to create arrowheads and fishing hooks. Stepping outside, he stowed cedar planks in his backpack, preparing for the final phase of processing. Upon completion, the sight of the pristine tools invigorated Luo He. However, he lamented not finding any feathers. The tools he possessed included an iron axe, iron pickaxe, fishing rod, iron sword, iron bow, and 6 arrows, 1 iron ingot yielding 6 arrowheads, alongside 17 iron ingots and 25 tough fibers, 3 bowstrings, derived from shrubs and tree bark, minus 2 fishing lines, and 45 cedar planks, 1 plank yielding 3 arrow shafts. Chapter 9. Rest and recuperation. Gazing at his amassed items, Luo He felt a surge of satisfaction. Fortune smiled upon him. The surrounding environment was indeed bountiful, offering everything he needed, rendering him a rather formidable survivor. As night fell, he wasn't particularly weary yet, seizing the opportunity while the stars still twinkled. He hurriedly opened the window to let in a modicum of light, organizing his possessions. Taking advantage of the starlight, he cleared the leaves from his bed and discarded them outside. Returning to the workbench, he began crafting wooden frames. 2 planks yield 1 frame. He laid out 5 coarse linen sheets on a plank, realizing that 4 would suffice, so he reserved 1 for covering himself. Although the weather was not cold, it felt odd to sleep without some covering. At this moment, the wooden frames were completed, and he arranged the food inside. Spotting the harvested blueberries, he decided it best to consume them all for dinner, as fruits spoil easily and are not worth the waste. With that thought, he placed the blueberries on his bed and tidied up the remaining items. Time to lie down and scroll through my phone, he chuckled, sending a message to his companions, sharing his latest discovery. Rami cloth, level 1 fibers are pure white and glossy. The fabric exhibits distinct coarse textures and an uneven feel, with a firm and cool touch, prone to wrinkling with notable creases. I've also unlocked trading with the loom. Can I count on you, brother? I'm looking to secure some strong allies. By the way, has anyone spotted large animals? There was no additional information, and I thought I was the only one who hadn't seen it. I only noticed a few small creatures. I remarked to them that it was enough. Even one person sending a few messages could flood the screen, making it impossible to see anything else. Why should I care? Amidst the cacophony of information, I decided to eat some blueberries to calm my nerves, still managing to gather a wealth of information. Just like that earlier message, mine went unnoticed. Were there no larger animals around? There hasn't been much danger these past few days. However, I'm sure others have received books too. Yet I haven't seen anyone share them. Are they all just hoarding? Reflecting on this, I felt a twinge of embarrassment, realizing I wasn't particularly virtuous. Thus, I continued to observe while munching, until drowsiness finally overtook me. The next morning, as dawn broke and the mist in the forest had yet to dissipate, I was awakened by the crisp chirping of birds outside. I rolled out of bed, yawning. How delightful it is not to have to work. A system notification announced that 3 days had passed, the leaf coins were now available, and ecological recovery had commenced. Survival had officially begun. The communication channels were starting to diverge, and trading had commenced, with an increase in resource chests. Upon reading the system prompt, I wondered if this meant there were now subdivisions. It didn't seem likely. They should all still be within the same channel, even if the actual distances were considerable. With the revival of animals, I had to be cautious in my search for resources, as it was beginning to grow perilous. Was trading still an option? Perhaps I should wait. I resolved to search for resources during the day. Today, my primary focus was on gathering stones, preparing to process them into bricks for upgrading my wooden house. Armed with an iron pickaxe, bow, iron sword, and an axe, I set off, retracing my steps along the mining vein I had noted yesterday, where I had deliberately observed a dense concentration of stones, ideal for bulk collection. The morning forest still glistened with dew, and the ground was somewhat slippery. As I treaded through the dewy grass, I remained vigilant, surveying my surroundings. Following the ecological revival, the bird songs in the forest were even livelier than the previous day, and occasionally, I could hear the rustling of unknown small creatures in the distance. Fortunately, there were no signs of larger animals. I quickened my pace and soon arrived near the mining vein. Scanning the area for abundant stones, I noticed a suitable spot not far off and set off toward it. Here, the stones were piled like mountains, varying in size, predominantly in shades of bluish-gray. I sheathed my stone axe and grasped my iron pickaxe, striking down upon a stone the size of a grinding wheel. A dull thud resonated as the pickaxe's tip embedded deeply into the rock, and a notification appeared. Acquired stone 3. With renewed vigor, I swung the pickaxe repeatedly, the sound of shattering stones echoing through the forest as I collected them into my backpack. Before I realized it, the sun had climbed high in the sky, and the mist had completely vanished. My backpack was now filled with stones, registering acquired stone 350. Combined with what I had left from before, it was ample for processing a batch of stone bricks. Looking at the stones filled me with satisfaction. However, since I had not brought any water or food, I now found myself exhausted, hungry, and thirsty. It was time to take a break. With this thought, I sought a high vantage point to sit and observe my surroundings, hoping to discover any resources I could acquire. After gazing intently for a few minutes, Luo He suddenly noticed movement at the site where he had gathered salt crystals the previous day. He quickly rose to his feet and trotted over. Though he was still some distance away from where he had spotted the commotion, with a surge of excitement, he hastened towards the location. Upon arrival, he discerned the source of the movement, a small flock of wild goats. These herbivorous creatures are known for their gregarious nature, typically forming groups of 3 or more. They can be domesticated and provide high-quality protein, goat milk, and meat, while their wool and hide serve as excellent textile materials. Their disposition is characterized by alertness, sensitivity, vigor, and a certain aggressiveness. Upon learning this, Luo He felt a rush of joy and exhilaration. Taking down one of these goats would mean days without the need to hunt again. With this thought, he retrieved his bow and arrow and stealthily approached, crouching low as he closed the distance to about 20 meters from the goats. Suddenly, he dropped to the ground as 2 of the goats began to exhibit signs of alertness, while the other 3 started to descend from the salt crystal gathering area. Left with no options, he found himself in a waiting game. After a few tense minutes, he noticed the goats showing signs of fleeing. Realizing he had no choice, he sprang into action. With a hint of anxiety, he hastily nocked an arrow and aimed at a solitary wild goat, releasing the arrow with a swift motion. It zipped through the air, only to soar past the goat's head. Startled, the herd erupted into chaos, scattering in all directions. Luo He, frantic as a fly on a hot skillet, disregarded his concealment and leapt to his feet in pursuit. He quickly loosed 2 more arrows in rapid succession, both of which missed their mark, and soon the wild goats had vanished from sight. Feeling dejected, he lowered his bow and stowed it in his backpack. He returned to the spot where he had loosed the arrows and retrieved them, reflecting on his earlier actions. He mused that recent successes had made him a bit overconfident. He realized he had not been cautious enough. His first arrow had veered off course, and the subsequent two were hopelessly inaccurate. His lack of skill was evident, and he resolved to practice archery diligently upon his return. Should another opportunity arise in the future, he could not afford to let it slip away again. After some contemplation, he decided to head back, opting not to retrace his steps, but to forge a new path in hopes of discovering different materials. He hoped to find something that would soothe his slightly bruised spirit. Thus, without further ado, Luo He descended, muttering to himself as he ambled down the slope. Chapter 10. The Spring Water Treasure Chest. Luo He leaned against a sun-drenched, heated stone, his throat parched as if filled with dry hay. The sun blazed fiercely overhead, casting dazzling patterns of light on the ground through the sparse foliage above. He raised a hand to wipe the sweat from his brow, recoiling slightly as his fingertips met the hot skin. It had already been 20 minutes since he began his wandering in the mountains. On his descent, he had spotted a wild chicken and aimed to pursue it, but the creature proved too wary, eluding him and leaving him lost. Frustrated, he kicked at the gravel beneath his feet, sending stones rolling into the underbrush and startling a few gray sparrows. The flurry of their wings echoed distinctly in the stillness of the forest. His stomach churned with emptiness. Moments ago, he had stumbled upon a few wild jujube fruits to stave off his hunger, but the trees that bore the fruit had long been stripped bare, leaving only branches. His gaze wandered around until it landed on a cluster of ground-hugging plants on a slope ahead, sprouting delicate white flowers, their leaves edged with fine serrations, and their stems adorned with tiny, soft hairs. Luo He's eyes sparkled at the sight of purslane. He scrambled down the slope with both hands and feet. This plant had been taught to him by his grandmother in his youth. Its tender leaves were edible, tangy, yet slightly slippery. At home, they would often be steamed with cornmeal. He plucked the most tender leaf and popped it into his mouth, and the sour, slightly gritty juice burst forth, carrying a hint of earthy flavor, yet curiously alleviating the burning sensation in his throat. Fortunately, he had not missed this opportunity. He sighed in relief, crouching down to meticulously select the leaves, favoring those close to the ground with thick, fleshy foliage. The soft hairs grazed his fingertips, causing a slight itch, which he disregarded. The fresh fragrance of purslane mingled with the scent of earth, offering a modicum of comfort to his empty stomach. Just as he became engrossed in foraging, a glimmer caught his eye at the foot of the slope. Intrigued, he pushed aside the tall mugwort and descended further. There, nestled among a few slate stones, was a small mountain spring, its source bubbling forth with crystalline clarity, the surface adorned with a delicate layer of green algae, alongside tender water celery that seemed fresh enough to squeeze water from. He exclaimed in delight. Without a moment's thought for cleanliness, he rushed to the spring, cupping his hands to drink deeply. The icy water sent a jolt through him, cascading down his chin and soaking his shirt front, yet it extinguished much of his parching thirst. After several gulps, he paused, staring at the water celery, pondering whether it too was edible. Should he try it raw? Perhaps not. This was the wilderness. Luo He removed his shoes and stepped into the cool water, which reached his ankles, eliciting a shiver. The water celery grew densely, its roots embedded in the soft mud. With a gentle tug, he could easily uproot a handful. He hastily gathered some, while leaving a portion behind to ensure it could continue to flourish. Cautiously avoiding the spring's source, he crouched in the shallow area to continue his harvest, oblivious to the cold water's effect on his fingertips. Just as he had collected a small bunch, he suddenly heard a rustling behind him. He turned sharply to find a gray-brown wild rabbit perched on the slope, its red eyes fixed intently on the water celery in his hands. "Fear not, I shall not harm you," Luo He murmured, casually placing a small bundle of water celery on the bank. The rabbit hesitated, inching forward cautiously, upon realizing he remained still. It seized the water celery and darted into the woods. Luo He chuckled softly. Today's hunt seemed futile, and he dared not waste further time. He resumed his foraging, feeling reassured that the presence of animals indicated the absence of venomous creatures nearby. Once he had gathered both purslane and water celery and stowed them in his backpack, he contemplated the sweat on his body and decided it prudent to wash before finding his way home. He shed his clothes and waded into the spring, the water rising to his thighs. Suddenly, he felt something solid beneath his feet. His foot brushed against a cool, smooth object, not the roughness of stone, but rather akin to a jade artifact immersed in the spring, gleaming with a delicate luster. A shiver ran through him as he bent down and plunged into the water. A striking azure hue suddenly caught his eye. It was a treasure chest half buried in the soft mud, emanating a clarity reminiscent of mountain spring water. It appeared as if the lake waters of Qiangtong had been crushed and solidified, its surface adorned with a faint, almost translucent halo that rippled with delicate blue light at the bottom. The chest was not large, roughly the size of 2 palms, and its material seemed neither wood nor metal, resembling a type of smooth jade. The surface was intricately carved with delicate wave patterns, interspersed with specks of silvery white, akin to starlight dancing upon the water's surface. There were no locks nor elaborate decorations. Only a band of translucent, waterweed-like patterns encircled the edge of the lid. A gentle touch caused the azure body of the chest to emit a soft glow, as if it were merging with the surrounding spring water. Is this truly a treasure chest? Luo He held his breath, carefully lifting the chest from the mud. It felt light, yet substantial in his hands. Still imbued with the coolness of the spring, its texture impossibly smooth. He gently opened the lid, expecting to hear mechanisms click into place, but instead was greeted by a refreshing scent of herbs, mingling with the sweet aroma of the mountain spring. Spring water treasure chest, a special chest hidden beneath the water's surface. Upon sitting by the spring to open it, congratulations. You have obtained a purification water bottle, capable of filtering drinkable water from less contaminated sources. Mint, 15, refreshing and invigorating, anti-inflammatory, and anti-itch. For external use, it can be applied to wounds to prevent infection and repel insects. For internal use, steeped in water, it alleviates wind heat headaches, dry throats, and has anti-inflammatory effects. Rice cake, 5 pieces, a rare and precious food in the survival world. Backpack expansion, 10. Dried leaf coins, 20. Luo He first took a piece of rice cake and popped it into his mouth. The soft and glutinous texture, mingled with a natural sweetness, melted on his tongue, instantly soothing the emptiness in his stomach. The sweet aroma of the rice cake filled his mouth, its soft texture perfectly balancing the sourness of the previous porcelain. He quickly devoured one piece and reached for a second, his fingertips dusted with a hint of rice fragrance. The warmth of the food filled his empty stomach, dissipating much of his fatigue, and even the scorching sun overhead seemed less intense. He placed the remaining pieces into his backpack. Then, he caressed the purification water bottle in his hand. Its body was made of light blue clay, etched with the same wave patterns as the treasure chest. The opening was fitted with a fine mesh filter, giving it a slightly textured feel. Luo He rose and approached the spring, filling the bottle with fresh water. Just as he twisted the cap on, a faint white glow emanated from the bottle. In mere moments, the water poured out appeared remarkably clear and pure, devoid of any impurities, carrying a hint of herbal freshness. This item is incredibly practical, he marveled, tilting his head back to take several sips. The cool spring water glided down his throat, lacking any earthy taste, and was even more soothing than drinking directly from the spring. Next, he grasped the bundle of mint. The leaves were a vibrant green and full, and a mere touch infused his fingers with a refreshing aroma, instantly dispelling his afternoon drowsiness. Luo He carefully took a sprig of mint, dividing it into 2 parts, one half tucked into his backpack, while the other he crushed and applied to his arms and ankles. The woods were rife with mosquitoes, and the mint's cooling scent would serve well to ward them off. Having just applied the balm, a refreshing sensation enveloped his skin. The minor abrasions from the grass blades began to tingle with a gentle coolness, and the stinging pain had notably diminished. With a mere thought, he activated the expansion feature of his backpack. He felt a subtle tremor from the pack on his back, and the previously cramped space instantly expanded, neatly organizing the porcelain, water celery, and supplies from the chest he had just stored, leaving ample room for more items. With satisfaction, he patted the backpack and gazed up at the interplay of light and shadows among the trees. Chapter 11. Homecoming. At this moment, the sun had begun its descent, casting a softer glow through the dappled light filtering through the leaves. He gathered his belongings, donned his shoes, and held the purification water bottle. Feeling a sense of security with food, clean water, and practical tools at hand, bolstering his resolve to find a path down the mountain. Following the stream downhill, he surmised that the water's direction would likely lead him to the base of the mountain. The recent sighting of a wild hare indicated that this route was relatively safe. Taking a deep breath, Luo He oriented himself and set off downstream. The forest breeze carried the fragrant essence of foliage and spring water, the lingering coolness of mint still caressing his skin. As he walked, he remained attentive to his surroundings, searching for an exit from the mountain and any edible plants that might present themselves. As he descended along the stream, the layer of decaying leaves beneath his feet grew thicker, providing a soft cushion that alleviated the discomfort of sharp stones. The gentle babbling of the spring accompanied him like a natural guide, helping him navigate away from diverging paths. Whenever he encountered a branching stream, he followed the main watercourse, confident that it would eventually lead to an open area. The vegetation gradually thinned, and sunlight streamed through the gaps in the branches, casting a mottled pattern on the ground. He no longer actively sought provisions, but casually gathered a few familiar plants into his backpack, several robust dandelions with edible tender leaves, and their roots, once dried, could be steeped for tea. He also collected a few flat slabs of bluestone, contemplating their utility for starting a fire back home. The purification water bottle hung at his waist, and he occasionally unscrewed it for a sip. The crisp spring water, with its subtle herbal sweetness, alleviated the dryness in his throat. The refreshing mint lingered on his skin, and indeed, the mosquitoes had significantly diminished. The minor abrasions from the grass blades, too, had ceased to itch under the soothing effects of the mint juice. After approximately 40 minutes of walking, the light in the forest suddenly brightened. Luo He felt a surge of joy and quickened his pace, emerging from the last thicket of dense bushes. Before him lay an expansive gentle slope, where he could vaguely discern the familiar outline of a wooden fence at its base. At last, he was home. A sigh of relief escaped him, and the tension in his shoulders melted away. The simple wooden fence he had constructed surrounded his small wooden cabin, though modest. It was the only sanctuary he possessed in this post-apocalyptic world. Approaching the fence, Luo He's footsteps disrupted the tranquil silence of the yard. The wooden door of the cabin was ajar, intentionally left that way to facilitate a swift exit in case of unexpected situations. Now, it served as an invitation to return home. Pushing the door open, he was greeted by a wave of dry, wooden aroma. Observing the interior, the bed beneath the window, baskets filled with provisions and water, and several work tables, a wave of contentment washes over him. Luo He closes the wooden door behind him. The rough timber grazes his palm, yet emanates a solid sense of security. He places his backpack on the work table and spills out his bounty: half-dried purslane, freshwater celery, earthy dandelions, rice cakes, a purification kettle glimmering with a cerulean aura, and a few flat slabs of bluestone. He first arranges the bluestone slabs in the corner, contemplating moving the bonfire to rest upon them later. Next, he sorts the wild vegetables, spreading the purslane and dandelions across another windowsill. Utilizing the last rays of daylight to dry them, the water celery finds its place in a corner of the work table, where he carefully twists open the purification kettle and pours a small amount of clean water, gently rinsing the roots to remove the soil. The clear spring water washes away impurities, and the tender stems of the water celery grow increasingly vibrant, exuding freshness. After completing these tasks, he sits on the bed and pulls out a rice cake, savoring it slowly. His gaze sweeps across the room, the heavy wooden door, securely shut against the elements. The window frame, a simple assembly of wood, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun. The coarse burlap sheets on the bed, softened by the sun, and two wooden frames neatly stacked with previously stored water and dried goods, each item bearing the marks of labor, humble yet reassuring. The sweetness of the rice cake envelopes his senses, dispelling the remnants of fatigue. He caresses the purification kettle, its surface shimmering under the sunset. Though this detour was fraught with peril, it yielded practical tools and a full backpack of provisions, transforming the little cabin into a semblance of home. After finishing the rice cake, Luo He considers directly consuming 2 stalks of water celery and all the tender dandelion leaves. The refreshing sweetness of the water celery mingles with the slight bitterness of the dandelions, perfectly balancing the cloying sweetness of the rice cake. He twists open the purification kettle for a couple of sips. The crisp spring water carries a hint of herbal sweetness, enveloping him in comfort. As the sun gradually sinks behind the mountains, the light within the cabin dims. Luo He tidies the remaining provisions. The rice cake is stowed in the backpack for immediate use. The purslane remains on the windowsill to continue drying, and the water celery is covered with clean leaves and placed in a ventilated area. He moves 2 bluestone slabs, positioning one in the center and the other at the doorway. This way, upon returning home, he can rest upon it or use it as a temporary surface for items. He sits by the bed, leaning against the wall, contemplating future arrangements. First, he will seek a sunlit clearing by the wooden fence, then fashion tools for agricultural endeavors, crafting a hoe to plant the wild vegetable seeds. As night descends, the cabin grows increasingly dim. Luo He scoops ashes from the bonfire at the entrance and places them around the saplings he prepared yesterday. He then retrieves the purification kettle to water them. Finally, he ignites the bonfire upon the central stone slab, instantly illuminating the room. Lying on the thatched bed, he feels the softness beneath him, as the fragrance of grass and wood permeates the air, and a wave of weariness gradually envelopes him. This journey home, devoid of peril, has yielded abundant rewards. Yet his path of survival is only just beginning. The bonfire crackles on the bluestone slab, its flickering flames casting a warm glow throughout the wooden cabin. The sound of burning wood mingles with the scent of grass and trees, creating a serene atmosphere in the tranquil night. Luo He reclines on the thatched bed, watching the dancing flames caress the timber, his heart filled with a profound sense of reassurance. He turned to the side, his gaze resting upon the slate stones stacked in the corner. A particular space had been intentionally left bare to lay one in the center of the room, ensuring both safety and improved heat distribution. At this moment, the stone was gently warmed by the flickering flames, dispersing the chill that had enveloped the room, accompanied by a faint aroma of charred firewood wafting through the air. Rolling over, he retrieved the purification kettle, the coolness of its surface transmitting a reminder of the unexpected joys of his meandering journey, revealing that the water within had nearly run dry. The rice cakes nestled in his backpack remained soft beneath him, and thoughts of crafting a hoe and cultivating a vegetable garden the following day stirred a surge of determination within him. The porcelain on the windowsill continued to dry, its leaves gradually curling and releasing moisture under the residual glow of the campfire. The flickering light cast dancing shadows upon the humble window frame. Luo He stifled a yawn. A wave of fatigue washing over him, yet devoid of anxiety, he felt a serene calmness settle within. He understood that with the dawn of a new day, labor awaited him, but with this wooden cabin, ample supplies, and practical tools at his disposal, even the harshest toil now held promise. He closed his eyes, listening to the crackling of the fire and the occasional chirp of insects outside, a gentle smile gracing his lips. This uneventful journey home not only yielded provisions, but also instilled him with newfound confidence in navigating the path of survival in this post-apocalyptic realm. In his dreams, he envisioned the verdant vegetable garden beyond the wooden fence, and the small cabin brimming with bountiful harvests, his own stable happiness. Chapter 12. Carp and White Stripes at Dawn. The sky began to blush with the light of day, and the morning sun filtered through the window, casting a warm glow within the room. Luo He stirred from his slumber, releasing a long yawn as he lazily stretched his limbs, as if to dispel every trace of drowsiness. Satisfied, he unfurled his arms and legs, reveling in the momentary tranquility and comfort. Gradually, he rose from the bed, teetering towards the door. First, he swayed gently, as if loosening his muscles. Then, with renewed vigor, he arched his back in a grand stretch, ensuring each muscle was thoroughly awakened. After completing these rituals, he finally opened his eyes, gazing towards the horizon where the sun had just begun its ascent. The sunlight was gentle and warm, enveloping the earth in a golden veil. Luo He stood there quietly, motionless, resembling a statue. After a while, he slowly settled onto the slate stone he had moved here the previous day, his gaze lingering on the distant skyline, as if wishing to capture all the beauty the world had to offer. Oh, it seems I haven't truly taken the time to observe this world in quite a while, Luo He murmured, a wry smile creeping across his lips. It was rather amusing to find satisfaction in this inexplicable world of survival. Thus, he sat under the dawn's light for a while longer before opening the communication channel. Is anyone trading wooden planks? Private message me. I have level 1 planks. And for the merchants, I have clothing for sale. Who will tend to the business? I'm offering a 10 discount. As the rolling information scrolled across the screen, he couldn't help but marvel at the resilience of human adaptability. Even in the apocalyptic world, one could swiftly acclimatize to the demands of survival. After scanning the surroundings and finding no useful information, Luo He retracted the panel, contemplating his next steps. First, he would craft several wooden barrels, and then forge a hoe and a metal shovel, as both would prove essential for future land clearing and water storage. Approaching the workbench, he followed the crafting requirements. Selecting sequentially on the virtual panel, level 1 cedar barrel, X4, requires 1 wooden plank. Basic hoe, X1, requires 1 wooden plank and 1 iron ingot. Basic iron shovel, X1, requires 1 wooden plank and 1 iron ingot, and added them to the crafting queue. The workbench whirred to life, emitting a soft mechanical hum. And within moments, a series of notification chimes sounded. Congratulations! You have acquired an iron shovel, an iron hoe, and a level 1 cedar barrel, an excellent barrel crafted from level 1 cedar wood, exhibiting slight preservation, durability, and moisture resistance. Luo He gazed at the detailed descriptions on the panel, a flicker of astonishment crossing his eyes. Indeed, tools crafted from superior materials of a certain grade were distinctly superior. The preservation and moisture resistance of this cedar barrel were remarkably practical. He reached to retrieve the items from beside the workbench. The handles of the iron shovel and hoe bore the natural hue of cedar, exuding a faint aromatic scent of wood, while the blades glimmered with a sharp metallic sheen. The 4 cedar barrels were meticulously crafted, their surfaces smooth and free of splinters, perfectly balanced in his hands. He first stowed the 4 level 1 cedar barrels into his backpack, then retrieved his fishing rod, iron sword, axe, and water purifier from the storage compartment, reorganizing any surplus materials and placing the wooden planks at the entrance, ensuring the interior of the small cabin was tidy and orderly. He aimed for clarity when accessing his tools. Go, go, go! With a light pat to dust off his clothes, Luo He stepped out with a buoyant stride. He glanced at his innate talent, super recovery. The panel displayed a passive ability that doubled his recovery of energy and spirit, which explained his endurance during days of strenuous labor without any hint of fatigue, a stark contrast to his previous world, where he would have been utterly exhausted. Stepping into the morning light, Luo He exited the wooden cabin and followed the narrow path leading to the riverside, the dewy grass crunching softly beneath his feet. Now equipped with an iron sword, he could better forge a path. In less than 10 minutes, the river came into view, its crystal-clear waters revealing the pebbled bottom. While the banks shimmered with moisture, the occasional darting of small fish creating delicate ripples upon the surface. He sheathed his iron sword and retrieved the fishing rod from his backpack, surveying the surroundings. After spending a few minutes catching a redworm, he baited the hook and cast the line towards the center of the river. The bobber settled steadily on the water's surface, gently swaying with the current. Sitting atop a relatively flat boulder, he fixed his gaze on the bobber, occasionally adjusting the tension of the fishing line with his fingertips. During the wait, he recalled that his fishing bait was running low, prompting him to rise and search along the riverbank. The damp grassland was abundant with aquatic plants. Bending down to part the clumps of grass, he discovered several wriggling red worms, high-quality fishing bait. Luo He took out a level 1 cedar barrel, placed the worms inside, then reconsidered, retrieving them to ensure they remained alive, finding a suitable spot to store them. He retrieved 2 additional buckets, filling a total of 3 from the river before placing them back into his backpack, and then filled his clean water kettle. Once organized, he returned to the stone by the riverbank. As he settled down, he noticed the float suddenly plunge beneath the surface. There was a fish. Luo He swiftly raised his rod, only to find it empty. Clearly, he had been too late. With a sigh, he rebaited the hook and resumed his quiet vigil. Suddenly, a distinct tug pulled at the line from beneath the water. Following the fish's lead, he gently reeled it in. After several tense moments, a palm-sized crucian carp emerged, flopping onto the grassy bank. Consulting his system, he noted, red crucian carp, a common small red fish, entirely orange-red or crimson, exceptionally adaptable. Its flesh is tender and devoid of any fishy taste, making it suitable for soups or frying, a prime source of protein for survival in the wild. The catch was satisfactory, prompting him to continue. Over the next half hour, using fresh red worms as bait, Luo He successfully hooked 3 crucian carps and 2 white breams. White bream, found in nearly every river, with a silvery body and a faint bluish sheen, they are swift swimmers, often schooling together and biting frequently. Their flesh is tender, with fine yet plentiful bones. They can be grilled or used in fish soup, providing a quick replenishment of hunger, a beginner-esque fish species in river fishing. White bream are well known among anglers, who often favor them, though Luo He's catches were notably larger. After retrieving the last cedar bucket, he filled it halfway with the small white bream and crucian carps, setting it aside. He then strolled downstream along the riverbank, seeking additional resources. Upon reaching a shallower area with gentler currents, he suddenly spotted familiar plants growing in the crevices of the stones. Their feathery, serrated leaves revealed them to be duckweed. Fortune smiled upon him. With renewed excitement, Luo He took out his trowel and carefully excavated the roots of the duckweed, ensuring not to damage the plants. He unearthed 5 in total, placing them into his backpack alongside the provisions at home, enough to last several days. Chapter 13. A dangerous encounter with a snake after harvesting the duckweed. He scoured the wet mud near the riverbank and soon discovered several unique herbs by a cluster of reeds. Their thick, dark green leaves and stems tinged with a faint purplish hue indicated that they thrived in the river's moist environment. These were calamus. He gently dug around the roots with his trowel, successfully extracting 3 complete specimens. The system prompted, acquired, Calamus X3, a medicinal plant, usable in remedies for external wounds, anti-inflammatory, and antipyretic properties, requires processing in a food workshop to eliminate mild toxicity. The roots are medicinal, and the leaves can be woven. Continuing his search, he hoped to find more. The sun had risen higher, and Luo He's backpack was now filled with fish, bait, duckweed, and calamus. While the fish in the cedar bucket still swam energetically, he stowed away his fishing rod, donned his gear, and prepared to return to the wooden cabin to process his bounty, contemplating a delicious fish soup for lunch, sautéed wild greens with the duckweed, and storing the remaining fish and herbs for future use. Just then, he spotted flax on the opposite bank and, seizing the opportunity, decided to wade across the water to gather it. The sun had ascended past its zenith, casting shimmering reflections upon the river's surface. Luo He glanced down at the water, which barely reached his knees, the smooth pebbles at the bottom clearly visible, devoid of any treacherous currents. He adjusted his backpack to the front, clutching it tightly, and stepped into the cool water, making his way toward the opposite bank, droplets splashing against his pant legs. Upon reaching the river's midpoint, He raised his gaze to the flax bushes on the other side, contemplating the order of his harvest, when suddenly his attention was drawn to the underbrush by the bank. There lay a snake, approximately half a meter in length, coiled beside the roots of the flax, its body adorned with a mottled pattern of gray and brown. Its head slightly raised, obscuring its precise shape. Luo He froze, a chill of trepidation washing over him. Was it venomous? Having never encountered serpents in his former world, he was unable to discern its species or its potential aggression, aware only that in the apocalypse, any unknown danger could prove fatal. The snake seemed to sense his presence, its head pivoting slightly toward the water's edge. Luo He's heart raced, paralyzed by fear of startling it. He quickly scanned his surroundings, his gaze landing on the smooth pebbles beneath his feet, perfectly sized for grasping. Holding his breath, he bent slowly, retrieving a fist-sized stone from the riverbed. Feeling its cold and weighty presence, he gripped the stone tightly, aiming for the snake's midsection, and with a surge of strength, he hurled it forward. The stone landed with a thud in the damp earth beside the snake, splattering mud, which startled the creature into a tight coil, seemingly alert to its surroundings. Not daring to pause, Luo He swiftly grabbed 2 more stones from the riverbed, seizing the moment while the snake had yet to strike. He cast them one after another, though both flew wide, landing with dull thuds on the ground, further agitating the snake as it began to inch toward the water. Panic surged within Luo He as he tightened his grip on the 3rd stone, his eyes fixed intently on the snake's head. After steadying his breath, he launched it with all his might. This time, his aim was true. The stone struck the snake's neck with a resounding crack, causing its body to contort in struggle, though its movements became noticeably sluggish. Determined not to relent, Luo He immediately retrieved a larger stone from the riverbed, hastening toward the bank. He aimed once more at the snake's head and struck down with ferocity. The stone drove the snake's head into the wet earth, and after a few spasmodic twitches, it lay motionless. Luo He lingered in the water for a moment, ensuring the snake had ceased its struggle, before exhaling a sigh of relief and wiping the cold sweat from his brow. Thank goodness that is taken care of. That was quite a fright, he murmured to himself. Turning his attention back to the flax bushes on the opposite shore, he quelled his earlier anxiety, bending down once more to grasp a hefty pebble from the riverbed, and hurriedly waded through the remaining water to reach the bank. Upon arriving beside the snake's lifeless body, unease crept back in. For the perils of the apocalypse were rife with uncertainties. What if the snake was merely feigning death, poised to strike? Luo He raised the stone in his hand, aiming once again at the snake's head, and brought it down with a decisive force, resulting in a dull thud as the snake's head was crushed into the mud, sending a spray of wet earth into the air. He stared at the lifeless serpent for a couple of seconds, confirming it remained motionless, before loosening his grip on the stone. Nevertheless, a cautious instinct prompted him to continue his actions. He deftly withdrew an iron sword from his backpack, its blade gleaming with a cold luster. Luo He crouched down, pressing his left hand against the serpent's body while gripping the hilt of the sword tightly with his right hand. With a fierce strike aimed at the junction of the serpent's neck and body, a sharp crack resounded as the serpent's head was cleanly severed, rolling into the damp earth beside it. He then used the sword to nudge the head aside, ensuring it was utterly devoid of life before finally allowing himself to relax. Rising to his feet, he brushed the dirt from his hands. His gaze returned to the nearby patch of flax as he stepped cautiously on the muddy bank, his heart still racing. The image of the serpent coiled menacingly lingered in his mind, a chill of perspiration trickling down his spine, mingling with the coolness of the river water that soaked the cuffs of his trousers. His grip on the sword remained slightly tense, anxiety pounding in his chest. In this apocalyptic world, danger lurks at every turn. Had he been a moment slower, he might have faced a venomous bite. The more he pondered, the more dread filled him. His eyes scanned the dense thickets of hoarse grass along the bank, recalling that the serpent had emerged from within. Who knew what other perils lay hidden there? Luo He, unwilling to take any chances, bent down to gather several stones of varying sizes. He hurled one forcefully towards the edge of the hoarse grass, a resounding thud echoing as the stone struck the muddy ground, startling a few insects into flight. He paused, fixating on the thicket for several seconds, yet no movement was detected. Grabbing another stone, he cast it deeper into the foliage, the sound of rustling leaves accompanying its flight. But still no sign of the serpent. Resolutely, he continued to throw 5 or 6 more stones, disturbing the entire patch of grass, until he was reassured by the mere sound of the wind stirring the leaves, with no creatures scurrying forth. Letting out a long sigh, the tension in his shoulders gradually eased. It should be gone. That serpent was likely a solitary inhabitant. He murmured a self-reassuring mantra, wiping the cold sweat from his brow and patting his chest to steady his heartbeat. Once his nerves had settled somewhat, Luo He picked up the iron spade again and briskly approached the flax patch. Before him, The flax stalks stood tall, their verdant leaves adorned with dewdrops. He cautiously skirted the adjacent horse grass, gently digging into the moist earth at the base of the flax roots, mindful not to damage the delicate stems. After excavating 3 or 4 plants, a sudden realization struck him, and he slapped his forehead. Goodness, I believe I possess gathering technique. Chapter 14. Flax fleece. He quickly straightened up. With a focused thought, a translucent light blue prompt materialized in his mind, clearly stating, gathering technique, a divine skill for resource collection, consuming mental energy to reduce resource damage rate. In the flurry of his previous endeavors, he had completely forgotten about this awakened foundational skill. Cursing himself for his oversight, he concentrated, directing his intent towards the cluster of flax before him. He placed his right hand gently atop the flax's apex, a faint glimmer of white light emanating from his fingertips. Remarkably, the flax that would typically require forceful pulling gently detached from the soil under his guidance, the earth falling away effortlessly from its roots, with even the dewdrops on its leaves barely disturbed. In the heart of Luo He, a surge of joy welled up as he hastened his actions, guided by the skill prompt. With deft hands alternating, he efficiently harvested flax plants, their roots intact and stems unharmed, achieving an efficiency that far surpassed his earlier efforts with a spade. By midday, the clouds had entirely dispersed, and the sun hung overhead, casting down its searing warmth and finally dispelling the chill of the morning. Beads of perspiration formed at his temples, and his coarse linen shirt, dampened by sweat, clung uncomfortably to his skin. He lifted a hand to wipe his brow, securing the last flax plant into his embrace. Gazing at his backpack brimming with flax and flax seeds, a profound sense of satisfaction enveloped him. Flax, 260, flax seeds, 60, a faint smile graced Luo He's lips. Now, as he lay down to rest, he would no longer suffer the discomfort of a mere thin burlap covering, which provided little warmth and comfort. With this ample supply of flax, he could weave a thicker linen, and once he found suitable filling materials, a warm and cozy bedding set would soon be within his reach. Turning his gaze to the nearby cold stream, its surface shimmered under the sunlight, with the central waterway wider than in the morning, crystal clear and revealing the smooth pebbles beneath. After a busy morning, covered in sweat and dirt, Luo He decided to retrieve a rice cake and his water purification flask from his system backpack. He quickly devoured a piece of rice cake and took a few sips of purified water to replenish his energy before stepping into the stream. The water was cool, but not frigid, just enough to soothe his overheated body. He bent down to splash water on his face, letting it trickle down his neck, washing away the perspiration and grime, and the refreshing sensation invigorated him greatly. After swimming about 100 meters, Luo He was preparing to turn back when his attention was captured by a dense patch of bulrushes along the shore. The bulrushes thrived on the shallow banks where the stream curved, their long, verdant leaves crowned with fluffy, grayish-brown flower spikes that swayed gently in the breeze, resembling tufts of soft cotton. Bulrush fluff. A spark of realization ignited within him, and he abruptly halted his movements, walking through the muddy streambed towards the shallows. He reached out to pluck a flower spike, and with a gentle twist of his fingers, the grayish-brown fluff cascaded down. Soft and delicate to the touch, an exquisite filling material for bedding. Bulrush fluff, level 1, a rare natural filling material with practical benefits. Acquisition scene, grows only in wetlands, shallow riverbanks, or marshes. After an arduous search, fortune had favored him unexpectedly. Suppressing the exuberance in his heart, Luo He swiftly approached the bulrush cluster, marveling at the lushness of the plants, their flower spikes plump and abundant with fluff. He immediately set to work collecting, the fluff light and voluminous. Filling his arms with handfuls, he casually removed his jacket, laying it on the ground to pile the gathered fluff upon. With the sun still shining perfectly and the stream babbling nearby, Luo He could not help but smile broadly while he harvested the bulrush fluff. The flax would serve for weaving fabric, and with the fluff as filling, the dream of cozy bedding was finally within reach. He looked down at the bulrush fluff in his backpack, envisioning the soft sensation of the bedding beneath him, and much of his fatigue dissipated. Just then, another surprise awaited him, a stone treasure chest hidden nearby, adding to his delight. Hastily he opened the door. Congratulations on acquiring the alchemical furnace, requiring a recipe. 3 cans of luncheon meat, a liter of drinking water, and a blueprint. He reached out to retrieve each item. The furnace, crafted from bronze, was compact and portable, its surface etched with intricate patterns. The 3 cans of luncheon meat remained sealed, their labels still faintly bearing the production date. The 1-liter bottle of drinking water was securely encased in a plastic vessel, heavy in his grasp. The blueprint, once unfurled, revealed the design for a bed, with clear lines and annotations detailing the necessary materials. Bed, a furniture design created with increasing levels of wood, Luo He clutched the blueprint, unable to suppress the smile that danced at the corners of his mouth. With the addition of flax and down, and now the bed design, the creation of bedding was no longer hindered. The luncheon meat and drinking water replenished his scarce supplies, and the furnace might even allow for the concoction of herbal remedies in the future. He carefully stowed all his possessions into his backpack and hastily gathered enough down before setting off, laden with his bountiful harvest, treading through the stream on his return journey. The sunlight enveloped him, making his steps feel lighter. This small blessing in a post-apocalyptic world was enough to bolster his resolve against the impending unknown challenges. He decided to return directly from the down, for it was not far, and he felt confident he wouldn't lose his way this time. With this thought, Luo He drew his iron sword and forged ahead towards home. My fish still remain at the spot where I was fishing earlier. It would be unthinkable to kill it and stow it away. A living fish would last longer. The stream barely reached his thighs, the cool sensation dispelling the lingering heat. While sunlight danced upon the water's surface in shimmering ripples, he quickly grabbed the wooden bucket. Luo He began to swing his iron sword with one hand, deftly slicing through the waist-high weeds and low shrubs. The crisp sound of the blade cutting through the stalks was invigorating. He maintained a brisk pace, yet remained vigilant, his gaze scanning the surroundings. Luck in this desolate world never persists without caution, and vigilance is the foundation of survival. Just minutes into his journey, a faint rustling sound emanated from the right side thicket. Luo He instinctively halted, sword raised in defense, and upon closer inspection, he discovered a wooden treasure chest partially concealed by the underbrush, palm-sized and somewhat decayed, yet still securely closed. Another treasure chest. His heart surged with joy as he crouched down to clear the foliage and pried open the chest. A pale blue prompt appeared. Congratulations on acquiring 2 loaves of bread, 1 liter of drinking water. He carefully stowed the provisions in the side pocket of his backpack, his smile widening as he continued on his path. The iron sword carved a swift route, and after traversing more than 30 meters, he was nearing the rocks where he had previously left his backpack when his foot unexpectedly struck something solid. Looking down, he saw a tin treasure chest, partially obscured by fallen leaves and a light dusting of snow, revealing only a corner. Luo He bent down, using his iron sword to pry open the clasp, and the contents were promptly revealed. Congratulations on acquiring 3 loaves of bread, 2 liters of drinking water. The consecutive finds from 2 basic treasure chests made his backpack increasingly heavy, yet it also instilled a sense of security within Luo He. He quickened his pace, walking for about 5 or 6 minutes before spotting the familiar path. No longer lingering, he followed the well-known route towards his temporary shelter. The sunlight bathed him, making his steps feel buoyant, and this fruitful outing granted him the confidence to face the uncertainties that lay ahead. Chapter 15. Waiting upon reaching home. Luo He pushed open the wooden door of the cabin, greeted by the gentle breeze carrying the warmth of the afternoon. The wooden door is constructed from 2 robust planks of cedar, minimizing the frictional sounds when opened or closed, yet still exuding a certain weightiness in the enclosed space. He swung the door shut behind him, effectively isolating the chirping of insects and swirling dust outside, shaking off the dirt from his coarse burlap clothes. Fine grains of sand fell to the ground, seeping through the gaps in the wooden walls, leaving faint traces. He took a deep breath, the familiar aroma of cedar enveloping his senses. In his hand, he carried a heavy wooden bucket, its walls adorned with damp watermarks, containing lively fish whose gill covers opened and closed, splattering tiny droplets of water. This bucket of living creatures could not be stored in his system backpack, compelling him to carry it with utmost care. He steadied the bucket against the wall, then with a thought, the transparent interface of his system backpack flickered before him, and he retrieved 3 buckets filled with fresh water, placing them sequentially beside the bucket of live fish, the collision of the containers resonating with a dull thud. He commenced the processing by converting stones into stone bricks. 1 stone yields 2 stone bricks. It would require a considerable amount of time to produce the 700 stone bricks. In the furnace, orange flames flickered, licking at the stones, and soon the walls of the furnace emanated intense heat. Next, he placed 150 units of fluff into the food workshop for preparation. He inserted the fluffy material and pressed the start button on the side. The machine immediately emitted a low hum, its internal shafts spinning at high speed, and before long, processed fluff began to seep from the discharge slot next to the feed inlet, its hue becoming more lustrous, accompanied by a faint scent of herbs. This was an excellent material for filling bedding. Subsequently, Luo He retrieved 260 portions of linen from the system backpack, activated the machine, and the pristine white linen fibers arranged themselves neatly within the loom. The shuttle of the textile machine darted swiftly with the fibers, producing a rhythmic clicking sound, and gradually, the delicate form of linen fabric began to materialize on the machine. The roar of the furnace, the hum of the food workshop, and the clicking of the textile machine harmonized, creating a laborious melody within the small wooden cabin. Observing the bustling machines, Luo He exhaled in relief. These tasks would keep them occupied for the better part of the day, allowing him a moment to rest. Let them process for now. At that moment, Luo He contemplated removing his still damp clothing. He glanced around. He was alone in the wooden cabin, after all, and there was no one to witness his actions. Without hesitation, he swiftly peeled off the wet burlap shirt, casually tossing it aside as he strode, bare-chested, to the spot where he had discarded his clothes a couple of days prior, the garments he had worn upon his arrival in this world. It was a modern outfit, starkly incongruous with the post-apocalyptic setting, impeccably clean and imbued with the scent of sunshine. He quickly donned the t-shirt and pants, the soft and comfortable fabric enveloping his body, momentarily causing him to feel disoriented, as if he had been transported back to the peaceful days before his journey. He tossed the discarded burlap shirt onto the front lawn, intending for the sun to dry it. Turning back into the cabin, he tapped his finger on the system backpack, and a segment of a snake, over a meter in length, was extracted and thudded heavily onto the ground. After a tremendous effort, he finally dispatched the creature, its flesh firm and a rare delicacy. However, as he gazed upon the scaly body of the serpent, Luo He found himself at a loss. How was he to consume this beast? Where should he begin to slice? How could he clean it properly? In his lifetime, he had hardly encountered a live snake, let alone killed one. Crouching before the cold, scaled form, he furrowed his brow and poked at the slick surface, feeling a wave of trepidation wash over him. This was indeed a cumbersome task, he muttered to himself, when suddenly a light of inspiration flickered in his eyes. He slapped his thigh and exclaimed, "Oh, I nearly forgot. I possess the skill of gathering." Luo He remembered that this ability had awakened upon his arrival in this world, enabling him to automatically extract usable materials from his prey while perfectly removing impurities, requiring no effort on his part. If it worked for plants, surely it would work for animals as well. Without further hesitation, he pointed his fingertips at the serpent's body and silently intoned "gather." A delicate blue light instantly emanated from his fingertips, flowing over the meter-long serpent. The scales trembled and rustled in the soft glow, and then, at a visible speed, they began to lift and fall away, revealing the pale, firm flesh beneath, interspersed with threads of dark, crimson blood. Wherever the blue light passed, the bones, suitable for crafting medicinal materials such as pain relief and natural fertilizer, along with the internal organs, were precisely separated and neatly gathered to one side, while the snake meat was cut into chunks. To Luo He's delight, the residual blood that remained within the flesh was also drawn together by the light, pooling into a vibrant, glistening mass of snake blood on the ground, devoid of any impurities. As the glow of the gathering skill gradually faded, Luo He surveyed the neatly organized snake meat, bones, and the puddle of blood before him. Unable to suppress a grin, he rose and retrieved an empty bottle from the corner, carefully transferring the snake blood into it. He then stored the chunks of meat in his system backpack, while the bones were stacked beside the furnace, intending to grind them into powder later for fertilizing saplings. He placed the items prepared on the workstations into his backpack, continuing with his crafting. After completing these tasks, Luo He clapped his hands together and looked out the window, where the afternoon sun bathed him in its warm glow. His stomach roared in hunger, and he swallowed hard, his gaze fixated on the tender pieces of snake meat. He quickly turned and dashed back to the wooden cabin. Rather than immediately touching the meat, he crouched by the fire pit in the corner of the room, adding a few dry cedar branches. The sparks crackled and soon ignited a robust flame, casting an orange glow across half the cabin. Next, he rummaged through the corner and found an empty tin can, left over from a previous meal, which he had cleaned thoroughly, now serving as a makeshift pan. He placed the tin over the fire and poured a thin layer of flaxseed oil into it. The oil sizzled as it heated, gleaming invitingly. Luo He wasted no time. He seized the snake meat and placed it into the tin. With a crisp crackle, the surface of the snake meat transformed into a golden hue. The tantalizing aroma mingling with the scent of rendered fat wafted irresistibly towards him, intensifying the growl of his stomach. He deftly manipulated the meat with a sharpened twig, ensuring both sides were seared to a perfect golden brown before sprinkling a pinch of salt with utmost care. As the salt granules made contact with the sizzling snake meat, they dissolved instantly, releasing a savory fragrance that permeated his nostrils, causing his mouth to water profusely. The salt seeped into the fibrous texture of the meat, instantly awakening a richer, more robust aroma that filled the small wooden cabin. Luo He swallowed hard, his grip on the twig tightening as he hastened the flipping of the meat, fearing that he might overcook this rare delicacy in a world ravaged by calamity. The bottom of the tin can glowed a fiery red from the campfire, the fat sizzling against the metal, sending up tiny oil droplets that danced into the flames. igniting brief flickers of fire. The exterior of the snake meat gradually became crisp and golden, while the interior retained a delicate blush, a testament to its perfect tenderness. Leaning closer to the edge of the tin, Luo He inhaled deeply, the fragrant blend of meat and sizzling fat filling his senses, igniting an even fiercer hunger within him. Suddenly, he recalled two delightful ingredients he had unearthed from a treasure chest days prior: mint, with its lush green leaves, and the tender stalks of duckweed, imbued with a unique, invigorating fragrance. Both were excellent for cutting through the richness of the meat, and he swiftly procured a sprig of mint alongside 3 stalks of duckweed, crushing them delicately in his palm. The fresh herbal aroma burst forth, intertwining with the meat's scent to create an unexpectedly enticing flavor. He tossed the crushed mint and duckweed into the tin, the vibrant green flecks adorning the golden snake meat, a sight that was enough to whet anyone's appetite. The moment the leaves touched the scorching bottom of the tin, a faint sizzling sound erupted, their distinctive fragrance released by the heat, swiftly subduing the oily richness and rendering the entire dish refreshingly aromatic, yet richly satisfying. He continued to attend to the meat by the campfire, the flames flickering and casting a warm glow upon his cheeks. The snake meat crackled enticingly, its crispy exterior intensifying in fragrance, enveloped in a delicate hint of herbal freshness. Unable to wait for it to cool completely, he picked up the crispiest piece with his twig, blowing on it gently before eagerly placing it into his mouth. The crunchy exterior crunched delightfully, revealing tender, juicy meat within, infused with the richness of fat and a subtle saltiness. The coolness of the mint and the freshness of the duckweed danced on his palate, instantly dispelling any heaviness associated with consuming meat. Luo He squinted in satisfaction, letting out a contented sigh. This flavor surpassed any delicacies he had indulged in before his journey through time. After all, in this apocalyptic world, relishing a warm, flavorful morsel of meat was an unparalleled luxury. He devoured it ravenously, grease smudging the corners of his mouth, yet he remained blissfully unconcerned. The warmth of the campfire radiated against his back, the aroma of the meal filled his nostrils, and the scent of the cedar wood mingled with that of the meat, providing him with a fleeting sense of tranquility. Before long, he had decimated more than half of the snake meat in the tin. Luo He patted his now round belly, finally experiencing a long-awaited sense of fullness. He lingered on the taste of the last morsel, licking the corner of his mouth before picking up a twig to extract the remaining snake meat from the iron box, savoring it leisurely. Afterwards, he retrieved his water flask and drank heartily. Once he felt satiated, Luo He lazily rose to his feet and ambled to the wooden door, pushing it open. The afternoon sun bathed him in warmth, while the distant mountains echoed with the melodious chirping of birds. A gentle breeze rustled through the treetops, carrying the refreshing scent of flora. Leaning against the doorframe, he surveyed the scene before him and suddenly thought that perhaps such days were not so dreadful after all. At the very least, he was alive, able to enjoy warm food, and sheltered by a wooden abode. With a smile, he turned back inside to tidy up. He first reduced the flames of the campfire to embers, then took the makeshift iron pot, walked over to the water bucket against the wall, and scooped some clear water to cleanse the greasy remnants from the pot. After meticulously stowing the cleaned pot into his system backpack, an essential tool for his future culinary endeavors, he exhaled a sigh of relief. Approaching the whirring textile machine, he observed the gradually forming linen, then moved to the furnace to check the wall's temperature, confirming that all machinery was functioning properly. The down in the food workshop should be nearly ready as well, soon to be used for bedding. The thought of a soft bed to sleep on filled Luo He with delight. He stretched and surveyed his surroundings. This modest wooden cabin, though simplistic, was his sole sanctuary in this apocalyptic world. He resolved to maintain and improve it, gathering enough beast cores and blood to reinforce the cabin further, ensuring his survival in this perilous realm. He turned towards the food workshop, preparing to retrieve the prepared down to commence crafting the long-anticipated bed. Within the cabin, the machines continued their humming, and the embers of the campfire rose gently, infusing the air with the rare warmth of life amidst the apocalypse. At that moment, the other 2 machines halted, having completed their tasks, and he placed everything into his backpack. He began the process of constructing the bed, 5 wooden planks, and 10 cedar oil, placing the snake bones into the furnace, and soon both were successfully processed. He first took the ashes outside, approaching the sapling next to the tree, and poured the ashes into the prepared circle before using the water flask to sprinkle water over it. Checking the status, treehouse sapling, growth average, fertilizer is being absorbed. It seemed there was no shortage of water, yet energy was lacking. Luo He pondered, his gaze growing resolute. To upgrade the treehouse seeds, he must first locate a level 1 beast, for only such creatures would yield beast cores. Clenching his fist, he etched this thought firmly in his mind, and turned back into the cabin. As he stepped through the door, his eyes fell upon the makeshift bed in the corner of the cabin. It was constructed from 2 ordinary wooden planks, covered with 5 somewhat frayed burlap sheets, his previous makeshift sleeping arrangement. As the river bends, Luo He meticulously folds the coarse hemp cloth, aligning 2 wooden planks side by side. With a mere thought, these items are seamlessly transferred into his system backpack, though they may not be rare treasures. Each item holds significant value in this survival realm and should not be carelessly discarded. At this moment, the bed has been mended and returned to its rightful place. The loom begins its work, crafting a quilt, 10 linen, 50 fluff, a mattress, 10 linen, 50 fluff, and a pillow, 2 linen, 5 fluff. The shuttle of the loom darts swiftly among the linen, firmly embedding the fluffy down within the fabric. Luo He stands nearby, observing as the mysterious forces expedite the formation of these finished products. At last, the creations are complete. Luo He hastily retrieves the bedding and pillow, laying them upon the bed, admiring the pristine set with great satisfaction. After all, the bed is constructed from high-grade wood, which provides additional benefits. Cypress bed, level 1 grants a calming effect from the aromatic cypress, reducing the duration of fatigue. The solid wood is resistant to decay, naturally repelling pests, and immune to moisture and insect infestations, requiring no additional maintenance. Remaining materials include 2 linen, 69 linen cloth, 45 fluff, 700 stone bricks, 2 wooden planks, 35 cypress planks, and 15 iron ore. Level 1 cabin upgrade requires 100 wooden planks, 500 stone bricks, and 200 stone tiles. 1 stone brick yields 2 stone tiles. Chapter 17. The slaughter in the cypress forest. Luo He glanced out the window, where the blinding daylight had long vanished, sinking below the horizon. The sky was painted in deep hues of ink, sparsely dotted with starlight, resembling a delicate veil gently draping over the desolate wilderness. He withdrew his gaze, surveying the materials in his backpack, a frown creasing his brow as he noted that only stone tiles and wooden planks remained. It seems I have enough stone bricks to process into tiles now, Luo He murmured to himself, turning towards the furnace in the corner. He opened the furnace and added 100 stone bricks, then waited. Having completed his tasks, Luo He wiped the sweat from his brow, watching as the stone tiles slowly took shape within the furnace, feeling a modicum of relief. Regarding the wooden planks, he calculated that he would need to chop down more trees in the cypress forest come morning. It seemed that tomorrow he would finally possess a level 2 cabin. With a sigh of relief, Luo He reclined on the cypress bed and casually opened the district communication channel. The messages in the group scrolled at a leisurely pace, predominantly consisting of trivial chatter, reflecting the confusion and helplessness typical of the early stages of the game. Does anyone know what else to do besides chopping trees? I'm on the verge of starvation. My treehouse leaks, and it shakes with the slightest breeze. Can anyone actually live in this wreck? The sky to the east seems a bit red. Can you see it from your side? Luo He's fingertips glided slowly across the screen as he scrolled for quite some time, until, amidst the cacophony of mundane remarks, he spotted 2 rare messages concerning level 1 materials, akin to pebbles sinking in water, a rare find. I'll trade 3 times the amount of ordinary wood for level 1 wood. This stuff is too difficult to obtain. My stone axe can barely handle it. It breaks after chopping down just a few trees. Exercise caution in the woods. Encountering a sharp-toothed rodent that damaged my axe, I was fortunate to escape quickly. Can one truly reside here? After a day of relentless tree felling, my hands have developed calluses, and my arms ache so severely that I can barely lift them. The fruits of my labor yielded but a few pieces of worthless wood. When will this arduous existence come to an end? The remainder of the conversation devolved into a litany of grievances about the fragility of tree houses and the inability to locate a water source. Luo He scrutinized these 2 messages, gazing at the screen and reflecting that had he not initially crafted a stone axe, he likely would not have upgraded his wooden shelter so swiftly. Of course, talent plays a significant role as well. As I perused the survival updates, a new message suddenly emerged, momentarily drowned in the flood of complaints. Yet Luo He adeptly captured it. On my first day, I braved over 50 kilometers. I traversed 2 mountains and astonishingly encountered another survivor. Now we have teamed up and constructed a level 1 wooden house, enhanced with some level 1 planks. At last, I am not alone. Luo He raised an eyebrow, privately acknowledging the audacity of this individual. Although the game had just commenced and no formidable monsters had yet appeared, the dangers lurking in the wilderness were undeniably intimidating. It was remarkable that this person dared to venture forth, covering such a distance amidst unknown risks. Most would scarcely tread even 100 meters from their treehouse. Brother, impressive indeed. How did you manage that? Weren't you afraid at the start? Thanks. So, does this mean every survivor is situated 50 kilometers apart? A distance of 50 kilometers effectively isolates all survivors within their respective treehouses, making mutual assistance or even mere encounters exceedingly challenging. Luo He switched off the screen and cast his gaze out into the dim night. Tomorrow, as he ventured into the cypress forest to fell trees, he would need to be especially cautious of monsters capable of producing level 1 materials, which might be lurking deep within the woods, waiting to pounce on unsuspecting prey. Since 3 days ago, the world had grown perilously dangerous. Today, the snakes were relatively benign, not at level 1. Observing the information regarding level 1 monsters, Luo He felt a headache coming on, as they seemed daunting to confront, and he had yet to receive any extraordinary updates. Tomorrow would still require wood gathering. He would take it one step at a time. Presently, he lacked information on the monsters. Only recognizing that a snake is merely a snake and a wolf is simply a wolf, unable to distinguish further. Resigned, he decided to rest. The starlight outside remained sparse, and Luo He succumbed to slumber. As dawn broke, Luo He awoke. The starlight outside had not yet entirely faded, and the air was imbued with the unique chill of the wilderness at dawn. He retrieved his iron axe, noting that the blade had chipped slightly during his recent labors. He took it to the doorstep of the stone-paved entry and began to sharpen it, spending roughly 10 minutes on the task. At this moment, it appeared sufficiently sharp. After consuming a few walnuts and quenching his thirst with some water, Luo He secured the wooden door of his treehouse and set forth towards the cypress forest that lingered in his memory. With nearly 2 kilometers to cover, the distance was manageable, and he arrived at the forest's edge in about 10 minutes. This cypress grove flourished, with robust trunks reaching skyward, while sunlight filtered through the gaps in the leaves, casting dappled shadows upon the ground. Luo He selected several straight-trunked cypress trees, brandishing his stone axe, and began to chop. The thud of the axe striking the wood echoed through the forest, and soon beads of sweat began to form on his brow. Just as he was becoming engrossed in his task, a sudden chorus of howls pierced the stillness from deep within the woods. The sound was not overly loud, but from a distance, it was discernible that several wolves were howling with a menacing ferocity. Luo He's movements halted abruptly, his grip on the axe tightening. The source of the sound was not far. It lay within a safe observational range, allowing him to approach and ascertain the situation. He dared not make a sound. Crouching low as he stealthily advanced, his footsteps as light as a whisper, taking careful strides forward. This cautious approach lasted for several minutes. Upon traversing a dense thicket, the scene that unfolded before Luo, he took his breath away. In a clearing, a jet-black wild boar was fiercely engaged in battle with 3 ordinary gray wolves. The boar's tusks were nearly half a foot long, its hide as tough as iron, and a faint sheen glimmered on its neck, setting it apart from ordinary beasts. The 3 gray wolves, emaciated yet brimming with ruthlessness, were evidently fixated on the 3 lifeless piglets at the edge of the clearing. Taking turns to attack the boar's vulnerable spots, Luo He concealed himself behind a tree, his heart racing. He observed intently as the 3 gray wolves displayed remarkable teamwork. One feigned an attack to draw the boar's attention, while the others circled behind to bite. The boar bore several deep wounds, blood staining its fur, and the most fatal blow came when one wolf seized an opportunity and viciously lunged for the boar's abdomen. The boar emitted a deafening roar, a final cry of desperation. In the next instant, its fury ignited, disregarding the blood and flesh spilling from its belly. It lowered its head and drove its sharp tusks deep into the neck of the wolf that had attacked. Warm blood gushed forth, and the wolf fell lifelessly without uttering a sound. The remaining 2 wolves were momentarily stunned by this ferocity, but they steeled themselves and charged forward regardless. Chapter 18. Fortune favors the bold. The primal rage of the wild boar was fully unleashed. It swung its bloodied tusks, rampaging through the fray. Its hefty body was surprisingly agile, first crashing into one wolf and shattering its spine, then tossing the last wolf aside with its tusks. In mere moments, all 3 wolves lay in a pool of blood, lifeless. The wild boar, however, was nearing its end, its strength waning. It shook its heavy head, dragging its battered body to the side of the 3 piglets. Lowering its head, it gently nudged the cold bodies of the piglets with its rough snout, emitting a whimpering sound that resembled a mournful cry. Luo He remained hidden behind the tree, scarcely daring to breathe. After a few more moments, as if expending its last ounce of strength, the boar cast one final glance at the lifeless piglets, slowly turned, and staggered back into the depths of the forest, vanishing into the thick foliage shortly thereafter. On the barren ground lay the lifeless bodies of 3 gray wolves and a wild boar piglet that had long since succumbed to death. Luo He's gaze lingered on the carcasses of the wolves before sweeping in the direction the boar had fled, his heart pounding with anticipation. He crouched low, inching toward a blood-spattered patch of parched earth, resembling a shadow that flitted across the battlefield. His eyes were fixated on the foremost wolf, whose belly had been torn open by fangs, innards mingling with the soil. The second wolf lay with its hind leg mangled and its neck twisted at an unnatural angle, devoid of life, while the last had its throat brutally ripped apart, dark crimson blood pooling beneath it. He nearly lunged at the nearest wolf carcass, disregarding the sticky blood that coated its fur, and pressed his palm firmly against the wolf's neck. In an instant, the glimmer of the gathering skill illuminated, followed by the cold notification echoing in his mind. Congratulations, you have acquired Wolf Hide X1, Wolf Fong X2, Wolf Meat 15 pounds, Wolf Bone X1, Beast Blood X3. He rapidly activated the gathering skill on the other two wolves, reveling in the abundant bounty. As for the boar piglet, Luo He decided against collecting it, opting instead to observe if any other carnivorous beasts might be drawn to the scene. Once he retreated to a safe distance, he hastily opened his inventory for a quick glance, and a spark of delight erupted in his eyes. Wolf Hide X3, Wolf Fong X6, Wolf Meat 45 pounds, Wolf Bone X3, Beast Blood X8. What a windfall! Luo He muttered a low curse, though a smile crept onto his lips. This venture had certainly proven worthwhile. Suddenly, a pang of anxiety struck him as he cursed himself for not considering the lingering scent of his presence, akin to hanging a fresh kill sign in a post-apocalyptic world, potentially attracting fiercer predators. He immediately crouched down, his gaze sweeping frantically around until it locked onto several clusters of glossy-leaved vines clinging to the rocks. As his fingertips brushed against the leaves, a pale green skill prompt flashed across his retina. Herb identification triggered. Detected. Mountain pepper, also known as pepper vine. A temperate climbing vine of the pepper family, with a pungent aroma released when the leaves are crushed. It effectively masks the scent of blood, dispels wind and dampness, and promotes blood circulation and meridian opening, with no external application restrictions. This was it. Luo He's eyes brightened as he swiftly plucked a generous handful of vine leaves, stems included, into his palm, vigorously crushing them until their juices burst forth. The sharp, dominant fragrance immediately filled the air as he frantically smeared it all over himself, leaving no part untouched, from the tips of his hair to the soles of his shoes, even the nooks behind his ears and under his arms, where scents could linger. Once finished, he held his breath and delicately sniffed himself, relieved to confirm that only the plant's pungent aroma and the earthy scent remained. With a sigh of relief, he crouched once more, recalling the mortally wounded boar that had stumbled away with a wolf's claw embedded in its shoulder. Clenching his jaw, a flicker of determination sparked in his eyes as he cautiously parted the underbrush, following the boar's trail. Luo He was acutely aware of his own limitations. He currently lacked the ability to hunt a primary-level beast alone, but this opportunity was too precious to let slip away. He understood himself all too well. Do not underestimate the dangers of confronting even the most benign herbivores. One must always assess their own circumstances. However, this wild boar is different. It is nearing its end. Once it collapses completely, an immense opportunity will present itself, an opportunity to upgrade saplings, a hope for a better survival. He could not bear to let it slip away. Luo He followed the dark red blood trail left by the boar, cautiously moving forward. With each few steps, he crouched down, using his foot to push the blood-stained soil aside, then covered it with handfuls of mountain vine leaves. He was wary of the scent attracting other predators and of leaving traces that might be discovered by passing survivors. The blood trail intermittently led to the entrance of a cave, partially obscured by vines, from which heavy, labored breaths could be faintly heard. Luo He felt his heart leap into his throat. He tightened his grip on his backpack and, crouching low against the rock wall, inched forward toward the cave's edge like a furtive rat seeking scraps. Daring not to stand upright, he lay flat on the ground, stretching his neck to peer inside. In the dim light, the boar lay crumpled atop a mound of hay, blood still oozing from its shoulder wound, its short, stout limbs hanging limply, and its head tilted to one side, breathing weakly, a clear sign it was nearing its end. Luo He's heart raced, his fingertips trembling. This was an extraordinary opportunity. Gritting his teeth, he cautiously drew his bow, refusing to entertain any thought of carelessness. He pulled the bowstring taut, aiming for the boar's vital chest area, held his breath, and abruptly released the arrow. The first arrow, steady now? Just a little more steadiness. If this arrow finds its mark, it would eliminate all subsequent troubles, securing the saplings, armor, and weapons for the camp. He could not afford to falter. With a whoosh, the wolf-tooth arrow shot through the air, yet due to his overwhelming anxiety, his wrist trembled slightly, causing the arrowhead to graze the boar's ribcage and embed itself in the cave wall. The agonizing sound of the arrow's flight startled the mortally wounded boar awake. It jerked its head up, its murky eyes igniting with ferocity, emitting a low, guttural growl as it struggled to lift its body. However, the movement tugged at its shoulder wound, sending waves of pain coursing through it, causing its limbs to flail uselessly atop the hay, unable to move an inch. Luo He cursed himself for his ineptitude. Cold sweat instantly drenched his back. Yet he dared not hesitate. In a flurry, he withdrew a second arrow and knocked it to the bowstring, taking aim once more. The second arrow's thought, damn it, why panic? It's on the brink of death. It can't possibly charge. Aim for the head. Finish it off. This time, I must not miss. With determination, he steadied his wrist, yet the arrow unexpectedly struck the boar's foreleg. Luo He, refusing to relent, drew a third arrow, pulling the bow to its utmost limit, aiming for the boar's neck. The third arrow's thought, now is the moment. The final shot. End it. As long as this arrow hits its target, all risks will dissipate, and this wild boar will be mine. The wolf-tooth arrow penetrated the boar's body with deadly precision. It stiffened abruptly, its pupils dilating, and the last flicker of life slowly ebbed away, leaving it utterly still. At that moment, Luo He seemed completely drained of strength, his legs buckling as he collapsed to the ground. His chest heaved violently, cold sweat trickling down his forehead into his collar, leaving him too weak even to raise a hand. He remained sprawled there for several minutes, gradually gathering the willpower to support himself against the rocky wall. Rising slowly and unsteadily, hesitant to rush in directly, he sidled into the shadows at the cave's entrance, peering cautiously inside. In the dim light, the lifeless body of a wild boar lay quietly atop a mound of hay, its shoulder wound oozing dark crimson droplets, its long tusks glinting with a cold, hard sheen. Luo He's breath quickened, and he took 2 steps forward, dropping to his knees and crawling towards the boar's carcass, his eyes gleaming with unabashed greed. This was a complete first-level beast, with its core, skin, bones, tusks, and internal organs all treasures that could secure his footing in this post-apocalyptic world. Luo He trembled with excitement, his fingertips hovering just above the boar's warm fur, taking several deep breaths to steady his racing heart. Suddenly, he pressed his palm against the creature's flesh, and in the next instant, a chilling system notification echoed in his mind. Congratulations, you have acquired Beast Core. 1. Beast Skin. 1. Wild Boar Meat. 25 Gene. Beast Blood. 5. Beast Bones. 1. Beast Tusk. 2. All first level. A soft golden light enveloped the materials of the boar, flowing ceaselessly into the virtual space of his system backpack. Luo He stared at the items list slowly refreshing on his retina, his throat constricting with elation. This venture had proven immensely rewarding. Suppressing his exhilaration, Luo He cast his gaze around the cave. He understood that powerful beast lairs were never devoid of treasures. The fiercer the creature, the more likely it was that unexpected riches lay hidden nearby, perhaps overlooked supplies, remnants of other prey, or even artifacts capable of enhancing his abilities. Kneeling on the cold earth, he pressed his palm against the chilling soil, inching forward. He first used his fingers to sift through the decaying leaves piled in a corner of the cave, uncovering a few curled-up beetles, and then picked up several smooth stones, discarding them upon confirming their lack of value. Next, he leaned closer to the hay where the boar had rested, probing with his fingertips through the gaps in the straw until he felt something hard. His heart raced as he quickly uprooted the thick layer of grasses. A palm-sized chest, emanating a faint red glow, emerged prominently. Luo He swallowed hard, trembling as he reached out, his fingertips barely brushing the chest's cold surface when a line of icy system notification popped up. Congratulations. You have obtained a special beast chest. Description: formed by the prolonged presence of a first-level ferocious beast. Seeing the notification, Luo He realized that this daring pursuit had yielded substantial rewards. He extended his hand to open the chest. Congratulations, you have obtained Tusk Dagger, Basic Beast Secret Tome. Storage box, 20 slots, blueprint. With his fingers still slightly quivering, he gently grasped the edge of the chest and lifted it. With a soft click, the treasure chest opened, revealing 4 items: a short dagger glimmering with a cold light, a small booklet with yellowed covers, a palm-sized wooden box, and a rolled-up beast hide blueprint. In the next moment, a chilling system notification resonated in his mind. Congratulations! You have obtained Fong Dagger, Level 1 Basic Beast Secret Tome, Storage Box, 20 slots, Blueprint. Luo He's eyes sparkled with astonishment as he nearly lunged forward, his fingertips brushing against the hilt of the Fong Dagger before seizing the tome, his breath quickening in excitement. The value of these items was immediately apparent. He first examined the blueprint. Healing Powder Level 1. Effect: topically applied. It can rapidly stop bleeding and alleviate pain from first-degree injuries, cuts, scrapes, beast scratches, slightly accelerating wound healing, with no side effects. Usage: take an appropriate amount of powder. Mix it with a small amount of clean water to form a paste, apply directly to the wound, and bandage with a clean cloth. Luo He felt a rush of exhilaration. This was a remarkable find. A healing potion of such rarity. He promptly integrated the beast's secret tome. Unlocking Steadfast Technique allows direct scanning and identification of techniques below level 1, an exceptional skill for early survival. He then gazed at the Fong dagger, quietly resting in his backpack. Meticulously crafted from 2 pristine boar fangs. The base of the fangs had been smoothed and embedded into a segment of dark beast bone, while the wooden hilt bore shallow, anti-slip engravings, fitting perfectly in his palm. The tips of the fangs had been sharpened to an extraordinary edge, glistening with a faint ivory sheen under the sunlight. The blade exuding a chilling aura, and a subtle scent of beast lingering nearby. Most intriguing was the natural curvature of the fangs, which, when wielded, embodied both a rugged wildness and a lethal precision, clearly an exceptional weapon. Fong dagger level 1. A precious weapon fashioned from the fangs of a level 1 wild boar, retaining the natural curvature of the beast's teeth, with a sharp edge that inflicts damage to ethereal entities, making it an ideal melee tool for early survival. The prospect of inflicting damage upon ethereal beings filled Luo He with joy. It was well known that such spectral creatures were notoriously troublesome. With this formidable weapon at his disposal, he had a reliable safeguard. He finally retrieved the storage box, a common tool in games, yet in this context, it was invaluable. He quickly secured it. Suppressing the overwhelming joy within, Luo He repeatedly caressed the rough bone hilt of the Fong dagger, the cold, hard texture of the fangs sending delightful shivers through his fingers, prompting a grin to spread across his face. Damage to ethereal beings. This artifact was truly a lifesaver in the apocalypse. Those elusive spectral monsters were no longer an insurmountable nightmare. He carefully grasped the dagger, stowed the storage box and blueprint into his system backpack, and let out a long, relieved sigh. An intense wave of fatigue washed over him, his limbs feeling heavy and sore, yet his spirit soared with exhilaration, as if he might float away. Luo He casually summoned his personal panel. A soft blue luminescence unfurling before his eyes. Luo He. Common, Strength, 6, Constitution, 5, Agility, 5, Spirit, 99, Excited, Thrilled, Extraordinary, none. He gazed intently at the figures on the panel, a deeper smile gracing his lips. It seemed that the relentless days and nights spent fortifying the camp and gathering resources had not been in vain. His constitution had indeed seen a notable increase. Rubbing his sore shoulders, he contemplated. Upon returning, he would concoct the healing blood ointment, bolstering his confidence further in survival. Chapter 20. The long-toothed boar. Luo He exited the wild boar cave, intending to return to the cedar grove to continue his tree-felling endeavors. However, he felt compelled to revisit the boar piglets, wishing to ascertain their presence. It was crucial to determine whether any other carnivorous beasts lurked nearby, to assess the danger of this area and decide if it warranted avoidance in the future. Gripping the newly acquired tusked dagger, its blade glinting coldly, he tread lightly towards the former battlefield of the wild boars and wolves. His fingertips traced the rough tusk handle, a wave of novelty washing over him. Unable to resist, he lifted the dagger and gently scraped the tip against a nearby cedar branch. With a soft hiss, the dark brown bark was neatly sliced open. Luo He's eyes sparkled with delight as he made several more incisions on the adjacent dry branch, watching the wood shavings tumble down, a smile unconsciously curling at the corners of his mouth. This dagger was far more agile than his iron axe, its cutting feel remarkably crisp. Stepping carefully over the dark brown bloodstains concealed by mountain vines, Luo He advanced with utmost caution, the pungent scent in the air intensifying. Evidently, the tactic of camouflaging his tracks with vine leaves had proven effective. After a while, he arrived at the site of the earlier skirmish between the boars and wolves. Relieved to find the piglets still present, he surmised that no particularly dangerous creatures were lurking nearby. Otherwise, they would have already come to investigate the recent commotion. Upon closer inspection, he suddenly spotted 2 wild boar piglets. Swiftly, he employed his identification skill, long-toothed boar piglet, a level 1 piglet yet to mature. The adult long-toothed boar ranks among the elite of level 1 creatures. Characteristics: length of only 25 centimeters, with a sickly pale pink hue, slender yet powerful limbs, and a pair of sharp, elongated milk teeth, 3 times longer than those of ordinary piglets. Luo He's gaze fixated on the identification panel. Beside the designation of elite level 1 creatures, the small corpse had already begun to grow cold. In an instant, a thought crystallized in his mind. This violent encounter was no mere coincidence. He crouched down, his fingers deftly avoiding the congealed dark brown blood on the ground as he touched the piglet's stiff limbs. Those 3 famished wolves had either calculated the moment when the adult long-toothed boar ventured out to seek food, stealthily infiltrating the den to prey upon these piglets, and had indeed succeeded, or they had long been targeting the sow in labor, striking when she was most vulnerable, aiming to eradicate both the piglets and the exhausted mother. As Luo He cast his gaze over the panel of deceased hidden marks, his attention fell upon the scattered corpses of the younglings on the battlefield. The thoughts in his mind grew increasingly vivid. Regardless of whether the wolves had taken advantage of the sow's absence to ambush or if they had enacted a more sinister plan, they had successfully slaughtered all the offspring. He leaned towards the latter hypothesis. Wolves are quintessential opportunists. They would never engage recklessly without assurance of victory, especially when faced with the formidable wild boar. Had the sow not been in a weakened state postpartum, the trio of wolves would not have dared to strike so boldly. Clearly, they had overestimated their prowess while underestimating a mother's ferocity in protecting her young. Luo He could vividly imagine the scene of carnage, the sharp cries of the piglets piercing through the forest, the exhausted mother returning in a frenzy upon witnessing the lifeless bodies of her young, her bristles standing on end and her eyes aflame with rage. The deep wound on her side, exposing bone, must have been inflicted during the wolves' initial assault, yet she did not retreat. Fueled by brute strength and instinct, she fought back with her sharp milk teeth, using her sturdy head to strike, inflicting grievous injuries upon the wolves, leaving behind fatal puncture wounds on their necks and abdomens, clearly the work of the sow. The wind carried the pungent scent of blood mixed with the bitter fragrance of mountain chrysanthemum, brushing past the smallest of the piglet corpses, whose mouth still clutched a dark gray wolf hair, as if it had resisted until the very end. Luo He glanced towards the nearby wolf carcasses, then cast his eyes upon the disordered footprints of the wild boars at the edge of the battlefield, following the trail deep into the thicket. It was evident that the sow had lingered over the bodies of her young after vanquishing the wolves. However, the overwhelming scent would easily attract other predators, and with her grievous injuries, she could not carry her offspring away, retreating only to her nest in anguish, a scene that Luo He had witnessed upon his arrival. He chuckled softly, tightening his grip on the tusked dagger. He had not anticipated that this brutal clash would ultimately present him with an unexpected opportunity. The wolves were like praying mantises, seeking to prey on the vulnerable younglings. The sow, a fierce guardian, had fought valiantly, vanquishing her adversaries despite her injuries, and he, the hidden yellow bird, arrived just in time to reap the benefits of their struggle. Observing the fierce conflict, Luo He resolved to be vigilant in the future, ensuring he would not find himself in a position where others would benefit from his efforts as he had today. Looking again at the lifeless bodies of the piglets, which had long succumbed to death, their blood nearly congealed and dried, he noted the numerous bite marks left by the wolves, deep and large, creating a stark contrast against the fragile forms of the younglings, as though they had been violently torn apart. Shaking his head, he recognized that while the piglets' milk teeth held value, the rapid decay of their bodies, compounded by the extent of their injuries, rendered any collection unnecessary. Luo He retrieved a shovel from his backpack and swiftly dug a shallow grave at the edge of the battlefield, bending down to place the bodies of the younglings within. As the earth covered their shattered forms, a wave of inexplicable sorrow washed over him, his fingers tightening around the wooden handle of the shovel, knuckles whitening. After brushing the dirt from his hands, Luo He hoisted the shovel upon his shoulder and turned towards the cypress forest. The wind rustled through the forest, stirring the withered leaves and producing a soft whisper, as if revealing the unyielding laws of this world. Today's events forced Luo He to confront the stark harshness of survival, devoid of compassion or warmth, governed solely by the primal law of the jungle, where the weak are devoured by the strong. The wolves, in their relentless quest for sustenance, would seize upon the vulnerability of a mother pig to prey upon her young. The mother pig, in turn, would fight fiercely to her last breath for the sake of her offspring. Meanwhile, he stood as a mere bystander to this brutal spectacle, scavenging the remnants of the carnage. Luo He tightened his grip on the fong dagger at his waist and felt the reassuring weight of the iron axe on his back, his steps growing ever more resolute. He understood clearly that at no moment could he afford to show the slightest hint of weakness. In this unforgiving realm, any lapse of diligence, any display of fragility, could become a fatal flaw, much like the vulnerable mother pig, whose carelessness could lead to her utter destruction. The shadows of the cypress trees deepened, their robust trunks and intertwined branches shrouding the sky in a thick canopy. Luo He slowed his pace, scanning the surroundings with vigilance, his ears attuned to the faintest sounds, the brittle snap of dry twigs, the stirring of birds and beasts, and even the subtle changes in the rhythm of the wind brushing through the leaves. Chapter 21. The frightened bird of the cypress forest. Luo He stepped onto the carpet of withered branches and leaves, the crunch beneath his feet merging with the distant whispers of the wind. He paused for a moment, wiping the dirt from his forehead, and cast a swift glance around at the towering cypress trees stretching towards the heavens, their interwoven branches filtering the afternoon sunlight into a mosaic of dappled shadows. The air was laced not only with the distinctive crisp aroma of cypress, but also retained a faint metallic tang of blood, a reminder of the brutal reality that surrounded him. He stowed the iron shovel back into his backpack and retrieved the iron axe, ready to resume his labor. The previously felled cypress grove lay before him. Time to continue. Taking a deep breath, the scent of cypress slightly eased the tension in his nerves, yet his gaze remained sharp as an eagle's. He selected a mature cypress with a diameter of approximately 25 centimeters, its trunk straight and free of excessive branches, perfect for his task. Positioning himself with his feet shoulder-width apart, he steadied himself beside the trunk, evading the potential direction of splintering wood. His left hand gripped the trunk while his right hand held the axe handle firmly, his arm muscles taut as he raised the axe above his head. With a powerful swing, he brought the axe down with a whoosh, the blade striking the resilient wood with a resounding thud that reverberated through his hands. The blade sank about an inch deep into the cypress, splintered wood flying and landing on his shoulders and hair. Without hesitation, Luo He extracted the axe, adjusted his stance, and swung once more. This time, he aimed precisely at the previous incision, concentrating his force as the blade penetrated deeper. Thud, thud, thud. The rhythmic sound of his chopping echoed through the forest, shattering the cypress grove's tranquility and startling a few hidden birds that flitted away into the sky. His movements were steady and fluid, each swing of the axe precise and efficient, conserving energy while maximizing his cutting effectiveness. This instinct had been honed over the past few days of tree felling, where every ounce of strength was precious, and every action sought practicality. Crack! A crisp sound of fracture pierced the air, far sharper than the previous dull thud. Seizing the opportunity, Luo He swung his axe with renewed vigor, hastening his chopping rhythm as wood shavings cascaded down like delicate snowflakes, accumulating at his feet. Occasionally, he would lift a hand to brush away the wood dust from his face, yet his gaze remained fixed on his surroundings. The bushes to his left rustled slightly, perhaps stirred by the wind, or maybe concealing some small creature. In the shadowy distance to his right, something appeared to be moving among the trees. But it was too far to discern clearly. He dared not let his guard down, the brutal clash between the wild boar and the wolves still vivid in his mind. Wolves are opportunists, and in this world, there are beasts far greedier and more perilous than wolves. The lingering scent of blood served as an invisible signal, likely to attract more predators. He needed to gather sufficient materials before becoming the focus of attention, hastily erecting a camp and establishing basic defenses. After a dozen more strikes, the cedar finally succumbed, emitting a long creak as it slowly toppled in the intended direction, crashing down upon several low shrubs and raising a cloud of dust and fallen leaves. Luo He exhaled, his chest rising and falling gently, beads of sweat forming on his forehead and trickling down his cheeks. He wiped his brow, retrieving the last rice cake from his backpack and consuming it, followed by a hearty gulp from his water bottle. The day had passed considerably, and upon inspecting the 700 wooden blocks in his backpack, he deemed his task complete. Sufficient for the days ahead. Replenished with energy, Luo He felt invigorated once more. At that moment, he detected an unusual sound, a faint rustling, as if something were dragging itself through the underbrush about 10 meters to his left. Instantly, his body tensed, his grip on the iron axe tightening as he aimed the blade towards the source of the noise. Holding his breath, he crouched down, using the cedar trunk as cover, cautiously peering towards the sound. The thicket was dense, branches intertwined, obscuring his view of whatever lay concealed within. Yet the noise persisted, seemingly drawing nearer. Luo He's heart rate quickened involuntarily, his mind racing. What could it be? A low-tier beast attracted by the scent of blood, perhaps a harmless hare or squirrel, or something more perilous, like an injured wolf or another predator with keen senses. He refrained from making a hasty move, stowing the iron axe back in his backpack, retrieving a fong dagger with his left hand and an iron sword with his right. Concealed behind the tree, he cautiously tilted his head to glance in the direction of the sound, crouching low and ready to spring into action. The rustling grew increasingly close, and finally, a small, gray-brown creature emerged from the underbrush. Its size was modest, roughly that of an adult cat, with a pointed snout, upright ears, and a bushy tail trailing behind. It was simply an ordinary gray squirrel. The squirrel seemed to have noticed Luo He as well, halting in its tracks, watching him warily, its little head swiveling from side to side, assessing whether this human posed any threat. In its mouth, it clutched a pine cone, while its claws grasped several cypress leaves. Appearing to be merely foraging, Luo He, whose tense body relaxed, let his hands fall. It was merely a squirrel, a false alarm. He paid no heed to the gray squirrel, turning to make his way back. Seeing that he bore no intent to attack, the squirrel also breathed a sigh of relief, clutching the pine cone as it swiftly scaled a nearby cypress, disappearing among the foliage. After this minor incident, Luo He's vigilance heightened. He realized that even in the seemingly tranquil cypress forest, unknown dangers could lurk. He looked up at the sky. The distant horizon was already tinged with the orange hues of twilight, and the shadows among the trees lengthened. In just an hour, darkness would descend. At that moment, Luo He felt a pang of nostalgia. He recalled his days in the city, where his greatest worries revolved around missing the subway for work, forgetting to eat dinner while staying late, the soap easily accessible while washing his hands, the warm water that flowed freely during his showers, and even the survival tales and fierce confrontations with beasts depicted in the films he watched before bed, mere exaggerations of the screenwriters, easily forgotten. He never imagined that one day he would find himself entwined in such a narrative. Yet, in a mere fortnight, the world had turned upside down. The once easily obtainable comforts of daily life had transformed into extravagant desires. Food that could fill his stomach now required desperate hunting. And the experiences of today surpassed any adventure film he had ever viewed. Witnessing the brutal battlefield where wild wolves ambushed piglets. Observing a mother sow's resolute sacrifice to protect her young against the wolves. Personally burying the deceased piglets. All while remaining alert to lurking beasts and tirelessly chopping wood in the cypress grove. Luo He wiped the dust from his face, his fingertips grazing the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, suddenly feeling a sense of disorientation. In the past, even the act of killing a fish would have caused him to frown, yet now, gripping the fong knife, he no longer trembled. When faced with the movements of beasts, he could swiftly tense his nerves, and even upon seeing pools of blood and bite marks, he would pause briefly before calmly assessing the pros and cons and gathering supplies. This transformation was so rapid that it left him feeling unfamiliar with himself, yet he had no choice but to embrace it. Chapter 22. The final upgrade. The instinct for survival overshadowed all sentiments. The trivialities he once dismissed, a bar of soap, a warm shower, had now become the very bedrock of his existence. Luo He ceased to dwell on these thoughts, quickening his pace through the sparse underbrush, until the familiar outline of the shelter finally appeared in his sight. Upon returning to the shelter, Luo He hastened directly to the treehouse seedlings. He crouched down, opened his backpack, and with his mental strength, evenly poured the beast's blood onto the roots of the seedlings. The dark red liquid seeped into the soil, instantly absorbed by the tender green roots. Next, he pressed the beast's core against the stem of the sapling, and as his fingertips made contact, the core transformed into a streak of luminous energy, merging into the sapling's body. In the next moment, a mysterious radiance erupted from the sapling, enveloping the entire plant in a brilliant glow. The radiance grew increasingly brilliant, even casting a soft glow upon Luo He's cheeks. He could distinctly observe the seedling's stem thickening at a visible rate, its tender green leaves fervently unfurling, while the roots rapidly spread through the soil, producing a faint rustling sound. In a mere 5 seconds, the light suddenly converged. The once diminutive seedling, now transformed into a nearly 2-meter-tall sapling, boasted a straight trunk approximately 10 centimeters in diameter, its bark a delicate azure hue, exuding a gentle luster. Its foliage flourished, layers of leaves forming a natural canopy, with droplets of glistening dew adorning the edges of several leaves. Midway up the trunk, a vague outline of a semi-open platform emerged, seemingly the initial structure of a treehouse. System prompt: Treehouse seed upgraded successfully. Current level: LV1, juvenile tree form. Unlocked features: 1. Automatic water absorption. Extracts moisture from the air, producing 2,500 milliliters of pure water daily. 2. Basic shelter. Repels level 1 beasts within a 50-meter radius. Disperses level 1 spiritual entities. 3. Growth reserve. The treehouse's root system is deeply bonded with the soil. Subsequent feeding of beast cores and special minerals will unlock additional functionalities, such as defensive spikes, storage space. Upgrade requirements: Level 2 beast core, 1. Level 2 minerals, 50. Level 2 wood, 50. Level 2 beast blood. Special evolution: Incorporate advanced precious species and extraordinary items. Luo He reached out to touch the trunk, feeling its smooth warmth. Devoid of the usual roughness of ordinary trees, he gazed upward at the branches overhead, as a few droplets of dew fell, landing on the back of his hand. Refreshing and cool. The beast blood and beast cores consumed during the upgrade had bestowed this tree with such miraculous abilities. The capacity to autonomously produce pure water was akin to a lifeline in a world ravaged by water scarcity. Indeed, the survival realm is profoundly mysterious, Luo He murmured, filled with reflection. In the past, while living in the city, tap water was readily available, and he never imagined that one day a glass of clean water could bring him such joy, and this seemingly ordinary tree could upgrade through beast blood and cores to unlock survival functionalities. This concept, once confined to games, had now become his tangible reliance. No sooner had he spoken than a gentle yet penetrating pale golden light suddenly erupted from the treehouse's trunk, shooting toward his chest like a meteor. Luo He had no time to react. He felt a warm current surge into his body, coursing through his blood and spreading to every limb. The fatigue and soreness from chopping cedar vanished in an instant, and even his breathing became remarkably smooth. A pang of apprehension gripped his heart, prompting him to instinctively open his personal panel. His fingertips glided across the virtual screen, and upon glimpsing the attribute values, his pupils constricted sharply, his face etched with disbelief. Personal profile: Luo He level, none. Strength, 12, originally 6, speed, 10, originally 5, agility, 10, originally 5, mental power, 100, remained unchanged, extraordinary, none. Status: attribute enhancement, treehouse resonance bonus. Permanent duration: has it doubled? Luo He exclaimed in astonishment, instinctively clenching his fists. Previously, his strength was a mere 6, making it arduous to lift even a cedar log. Yet now, the undeniable sensation of robust power coursing through his palms felt inexhaustible, with the muscular outlines of his arms becoming distinctly pronounced. He attempted to swiftly sidestep a few paces, his body's agility far surpassing that of the past. What once required a build-up of energy for a sharp turn now felt as light as a breeze. His hearing had also sharpened, allowing him to clearly discern the rustling of dry leaves 100 meters away, even distinguishing the frequency of insects' wings in the distance. System notification: Treehouse Level 1 unlocks Benefit Life Resonance, granting the host permanent attribute enhancement, strength, speed, agility doubled, and solidifying the base value of mental power at 100, immunity to Level 1 mental interference. Luo He was simultaneously astonished and elated, repeatedly refreshing the panel to verify the values, his fingertips trembling with excitement. After half a month of survival in the apocalypse, he had exerted every effort to hunt beasts and gather supplies, with his physical fitness barely improving at the edge of life and death. To his surprise, upgrading the treehouse could yield such extraordinary benefits. He raised his hand to caress the trunk of the treehouse, the warm texture spreading through his fingertips, as if he could distinctly sense the faint pulsation beneath the bark, as though this tree possessed life, subtly resonating with his own breath. This mysterious tree not only provided him with shelter from the elements and a safe, pure water source, but at a critical moment, it reshaped his physique, directly doubling his strength, speed, and agility. In this brutal world of survival, such an enhancement was akin to gaining an additional life, becoming his most steadfast support. Suddenly, he recalled the cold and enigmatic voice that echoed in his mind upon first crossing into this world. The treehouse is fundamental. At that time, he had been half convinced, dismissing it as a mere post-transmigration hallucination. Now, it seemed that voice had indeed spoken the truth. The treehouse was the cornerstone of this survival realm. Only by continuously upgrading the treehouse, unlocking more functionalities, and obtaining greater enhancements could one endure in an increasingly perilous environment. This was the sole glimmer of hope. The opportunity to upgrade the treehouse this time was purely a stroke of luck, having stumbled upon a beast core, an item rarely dropped by ordinary beasts. Had he not fortuitously encountered a wolf ambushing a wild boar's young, resulting in mutual destruction, he would never have had the chance to seize this opportunity. Without this unexpected turn of events, who could tell how long he would have to wait to gather the necessary materials for an upgrade? Perhaps by the time he finally found another beast core, he would have already become prey for some ferocious creature. Relying on serendipity was ultimately not a sustainable strategy. Luo He murmured to himself, his gaze gradually solidifying with determination. He understood that future upgrades of the treehouse might require beast cores or even other rare materials. He could not perpetually depend on such fortuitous encounters. Subsequently, he must take the initiative to seek out those creatures of varying levels, even if the risks are heightened, in order to upgrade his treehouse and fight for his survival. Chapter 23. The Fanged Rabbit. Luo He pondered for a moment, his fingertips unconsciously rubbing against the iron sword at his waist. This weapon, devoid of any level, along with the iron bow on his back, constituted his only equipment. When confronted with leveled wild beasts, his damage output was indeed limited. He understood that only by combining the available first-level materials with other unknown-grade materials could he forge first-level equipment, thereby truly acquiring the capability to hunt first-level wild beasts. As his thoughts flowed, memories of the past few days spent searching for materials gradually became clearer. A vein had been discovered on the hillside, but thus far only iron ore had been found. To uncover more suitable materials, the search area for the vein must be expanded. Only a small section of the riverbank had been explored, and whether to extend the search there required further consideration. He had visited the cypress forest to the south a few times, but the northern area had remained untouched for days, possibly concealing new clues that warranted a personal visit. Luo He focused intently on the current situation. The panel clearly displaying that his only first-level equipment was the fang dagger. The ungraded iron sword and iron bow were not considered first-level gear. While the first-level materials included wild boar tusks, long-tusked wild boar tusks, long-tusked wild boar hides, and beast bones. He traced the hilt of the fang dagger. Calculating in his mind, the boar hide was essential for crafting first-level leather armor and must be prioritized. Beast bones could be fashioned into bone arrows or blades, which when combined with iron could enhance weaponry. As for the redundant wild boar tusks, they could either be crafted into piercing arrowheads to augment the iron bow's potency or retained for future trades with other survivors. As relying solely on a fang dagger against first-level wild beasts was somewhat challenging, he needed to swiftly forge several pieces of first-level equipment with the materials at hand. Resolutely, Luo He established a clear hierarchy in his mind. While he barely managed with a single first-level fang dagger, he possessed no armor, which rendered him too passive in the perilous wilderness. He promptly resolved to prioritize fortifying his defense by first heading to the hillside vein to expand the search for higher-quality iron ore, and then using the long-tusked wild boar hide to forge a piece of first-level armor. Only by safeguarding himself first could he gain the confidence to subsequently refine his offensive gear and hunt first-level wild beasts. Luo He gazed at the dimming twilight on the horizon, a glimmer of determination flashing in his eyes. The night had fallen, and danger lurked in the wilderness. Thus, the journey to the vein would have to wait until the morrow. He bent down to retrieve a tin of luncheon meat from the basket, remnants of a prior meal. Now suitable for holding his processed game. He casually collected some dry twigs to add to the campfire, the flames crackling and leaping high, casting a warm glow upon his cheeks. He then took a piece of wolf meat from the tin and skewered it on a branch by the fire to roast. The fat dripped along the meat's fibers, sizzling and releasing a rich aroma that gradually filled the night air. First, he would satisfy his hunger and replenish his energy. For tomorrow he would need to pursue high-quality iron or with full vigor. Luo He murmured to himself, his gaze fixed on the dancing flames. As his mind already sketched the route for the following day, extending outward from the existing range of the hillside vein. Determined to find materials compatible with the wild boar hide to craft armor and swiftly close the gap in his defenses. Luo He gazed intently at the flickering flames of the bonfire, the enticing aroma of grilled meat suddenly reminding him of the various seasoning ingredients he possessed. His eyes sparkled with inspiration. Tonight, he decided to indulge himself. He promptly bent down to retrieve 2 palm-sized white fish from the cedar barrel, swiftly cleaning them before extracting a pouch of salt from his basket. With great care, he sprinkled a modest amount of salt over the fish. Following his initial plan, he chopped 3 portions of mint and 5 portions of duckweed, evenly distributing them within the fish's belly and atop its surface. Additionally, he produced a pound of wild boar meat from his backpack, cutting it into small chunks before skewering it on a stick alongside the fish, positioning them by the fire. As the flames caressed the fish, the fat began to render, mingling with the savory saltiness, the refreshing essence of mint, and the aromatic duckweed. While he placed a layer of washed purslane beneath the wolf meat to soak up the flavorful broth, what was once a monotonous survival dinner transformed into a sumptuous feast. At last, he could enjoy a meal worthy of his efforts. Luo He swallowed hard, his gaze fixed upon the sizzling white fish and wild boar, his heart brimming with anticipation for this luxurious dinner, which would not only satiate his hunger but also replenish his strength for the following day's quest to locate high-quality iron ore and forge leather armor. As he savored the crispy yet tender white fish, the sweetness of the fish blended with the coolness of the mint, melting on his tongue. He then took a hearty swig from his water flask, as though indulging in fine wine. This extravagant dinner, a rarity in the survival world, momentarily allowed him to forget his dire circumstances. His fingertips grazed over the system panel on his wrist, and he opened the chat channel, where most discussions revolved around complaints of material shortages and inquiries about safe zones. Until a few highlighted messages caught his attention. A player showcased their spoils from trapping and hunting a level 1 beast, alongside an image of the slain creature and their robust figures. In the close-up of their avatars, some displayed muscular arms, while others bore eyes as sharp as eagles, exuding a fierce determination honed through countless battles. As Luo He observed these vivid images, the taste of the fish in his mouth suddenly lost its appeal. He recalled that he possessed only unranked iron weapons, a sword and a bow, while his sole level 1 equipment was a fang dagger. His survival thus far relied solely on the salt obtained from treasure chests and the occasional fish caught, rendering him a rather laughable fortunate soul in comparison to those actively setting traps to hunt level 1 beasts. While he was lost in thought, a pinned message abruptly appeared in the chat, the sender's avatar depicting a resolute man with neatly cropped hair. his expression imbued with the sharpness and steadiness characteristic of a soldier, the edges of his camouflage uniform faintly visible. He shared detailed information marked Level 1 Beast, Sharp-Toothed Rabbit. Name, Sharp-Toothed Rabbit, Level 1. Weakness, soft armor on the neck. Habitat, edge of the cedar forest. Attack method, high-speed pounce and bite. Loot, rabbit teeth, Level 1. Rabbit skin, Level 1. At the end, he added a note. I am a retired veteran who has hunted 3 sharp-toothed rabbits and understand the importance of information sharing. Friends capable of hunting beasts, please share the names and weaknesses of the animals. Those whose abilities are insufficient may share the distribution of surrounding plants and the effects of herbs. Consolidating this information can aid more people in surviving. Instantly, several responses followed beneath the message, with individuals sharing information about purslane, edible, and wild mugwort for hemostasis, found along the riverbank. Luo He gazed at the screen, a warmth unexpectedly enveloping the roasted fish in his mouth. In this world of survival, he discovered that there were not only ruthless individuals engaged in solitary combat, but also those willing to unite and assist one another. He silently noted the details of the sharp-toothed rabbit and pondered. When he eventually located high-quality iron ore and crafted his leather armor, he too would share a few. Testing the waters. At that time, he would also disclose the characteristics of the ore vein and the habits of wild boars, thus honoring the kindness he had received. Chapter 24. The Chaos of Humanity. Luo He paused mid-bite, his attention drawn to the comments in the chat channel below, his brow furrowing with increasing concern. Those who had taken advantage of the soldier's shared information on the sharp-toothed rabbit, lacking even a word of gratitude, instead resorted to sarcastic remarks. What pretense of nobility? Instead of sharing worthless information, why not just give away some equipment? You're merely hoping for others to pave the way for you. Some even echoed these sentiments, ridiculing those willing to share information as overly sentimental. The warmth ignited by the soldier's goodwill was instantly extinguished by these cutting remarks. Luo He found himself both amused and helpless at the glaring words on the screen, realizing the inherent chaos of humanity, where kindness and camaraderie coexisted with selfishness and moral inversion. He touched the Feng dagger at his waist, gradually arriving at a resolution. His heart was too small to accommodate the distrust and disputes that alliances required, and he had no desire to be entangled in such controversies. Henceforth, he preferred to struggle alone in this apocalyptic world, neither harming others nor wishing to be harmed. Content to safeguard his own small haven, his fingers hovered over the system panel for a moment, but ultimately, he gritted his teeth and retrieved the sharp-toothed rabbit information shared by the retired soldier. The nagging feeling of indebtedness compelled him to act, and he couldn't resist typing out 2 messages. Basic herbs, purslane, edible, and used externally to stop bleeding. Commonly found in wetland areas by rivers, duckweed removes fishy odors and serves as a mild anti-inflammatory, commonly seen near riverbanks and ponds. After sending the messages, he swiftly exited the chat channel, as if lingering any longer would subject him to the harshness of those cruel remarks. As he gazed at the flickering campfire, he reflected, his sharing was merely a return of goodwill, not an attempt to assist anyone. This world was fraught with entangled grievances, rather than grappling with human nature. It was wiser to uphold his own principles, causing no harm and incurring no debts. Beyond that, living well for oneself was sufficient. Having satisfied his hunger, as his fingertips left the warmth of the fire, he suddenly recalled that the upgrade of the wooden cabin was merely a matter of acquiring cedar planks. Instantly invigorated, he hurried towards the processing table. He opened his backpack panel and withdrew the 700 cedar blocks he had accumulated from today's logging, placing them all into the raw materials slot of the processing table. With a soft hum, the processing table sprang to life, shavings cascading down as the cedar blocks were swiftly cut, polished, and assembled within. A notification from the system panel appeared. Processing 700 cedar blocks into cedar planks. Estimated time, 10 minutes. Luo He focused on the progress bar, calculating that the upgrade of the cabin would significantly enhance its defenses, allowing him to leave his campsite here with greater peace of mind while he searched the ore vein the following day. Luo He returned to sit by the bed. In the camp, only the faint hum of the processing table and the crackling of the campfire could be heard. As night deepened, distant, unknown beasts occasionally roared, accentuating the tranquility of the shelter. He glanced towards the processing table, where the progress bar on the system panel moved slowly. The 10-minute wait was not particularly long, yet it provided him ample time to meticulously review the plans for the following day. First, to expand the search in the mine in hopes of discovering high-quality iron ore. Upon returning, to forge a level 1 leather armor using wild boar hides and ore, after completing the upgrade of the wooden house. To reinforce the perimeter fence of the camp. Each step was vividly etched in his mind, enabling him to advance steadily through this apocalyptic world. Suddenly, The hum of the processing table ceased, and a crisp prompt appeared on the system panel. Processing complete. 700 cedar wood blocks. 140 cedar wood planks. 5 cedar wood blocks yield 1 cedar wood plank. Luo He immediately rose and approached the processing table, stowing away the freshly crafted 140 cedar wood planks into his backpack. The panel updated instantaneously. Cedar wood planks, 35, remaining, 140, newly crafted, 175 pieces. He lowered his gaze to verify the upgrade list for the level 2 wooden house. 100 planks, 500 stone bricks, and 200 stone tiles. Now he possessed all 3 materials, with the stone bricks and tiles patiently awaiting this moment in his backpack. Without a moment's hesitation, he turned and approached the upgrade control panel at the center of the wooden house, decisively tapping the upgrade button. The system promptly presented a confirmation prompt. Do you wish to consume 100 cedar wood planks, 500 stone bricks, and 200 stone tiles to upgrade the level 1 wooden house to a level 2 wooden house? Confirm. Luo He responded with a firm voice. The materials in his backpack were instantly depleted, and the wooden house emitted a steady tremor. The wooden foundation beneath him was compacted with layers of stone bricks, imparting a solid and weighty sensation. The formerly rudimentary walls were tightly stitched with cedar wood planks, further reinforced with stone strips, feeling both smooth and sturdy to the touch. The stone tiles on the roof were laid seamlessly, effectively isolating the night and the elements outside. Once the tremors subsided, Luo He pushed open the newly replaced cedar wood door, which was a solid 5 centimeters thick and 22 meters high, with dense and hard grain. The reinforced iron hinges produced a dull thud when the door closed, instantly amplifying his sense of security. A subtle fragrance of cedar wafted towards him, gently easing the tension that had accumulated throughout the day. The system panel simultaneously refreshed with an attribute prompt. Effect of mental serenity has been activated. During rest, a slight sense of mental tranquility is attained, and stamina recovery speed is increased by 5. He paced around, surveying the expanded space of over 90 square meters, which was simply yet practically arranged. At the back was the main bedroom with a smooth cedar wood floor, the central area reserved for a rudimentary workbench, and a solitary wooden storage chest from the treasure chest occupying a corner, capable of holding 20 items, with cedar's insect repellent and moisture-resistant properties ensuring items would not spoil. The walls featured 3 newly added reinforced cedar wood window frames, embedded with polished translucent beast bone sheets, allowing for easy opening and closure of defenses. Most delightfully, there was now a simple latrine, enclosed with cedar wood panels, positioned against the exterior wall of the wooden house. Though rudimentary, it was sufficiently practical, thoroughly addressing the basic needs of survival. What brings him greater reassurance is the core attributes of the panel. Crafted from resilient cypress wood with a stone-like structure, it can withstand the frontal assault of a level 1 beast, coupled with its anti-insect and moisture-resistant properties, which reduce material decay by 70. The frequency of maintenance is halved. The cypress hue blends harmoniously with the forest surroundings, diminishing the likelihood of detection from a distance by 30. As Luo He approached the window and closed the sliding wooden panel, the fragrant aroma of cypress lingered at his nostrils. Gazing at this wooden cabin, fortified with a sturdy door and a private latrine, he felt an overwhelming sense of security. This truly was a sanctuary amidst the apocalypse. His resolve to seek high-quality iron ore in the mine tomorrow was now bolstered. Every upgrade was a vital asset for survival. Having surveyed the interior layout, his steps instinctively halted before the cypress door. He extended his palm to press against the panel, its 5-centimeter thickness imparting a solid heft. The dense grains of the cypress wood pressed against his palm, allowing him to distinctly perceive its inherent strength. Grasping the wooden handle, he gently pulled. The hinges turned smoothly without a hint of obstruction, emitting a low, reassuring creak that spoke of undeniable reliability. He then closed the door, and a dull thud resonated within the cabin as the panel met the frame seamlessly, preventing even the slightest chill from seeping inside. Bending down to inspect the bottom of the door, he noted the tight fit between the stone foundation and the panel, making it nearly impossible for even fine dust to intrude. He pushed against the door once more, applying a measure of force, yet it remained steadfast. Finally, he withdrew the wooden bolt from beside the frame, the robust pin clicking securely into the door's slot, locking it firmly in place. The end of the bolt was further equipped with a simple latch to prevent any accidental loosening. As he turned, his gaze fell upon the 3 cypress windows adorning the wall. The frames fit snugly against the walls, allowing faint glimmers of outside light to filter in, ensuring the interior did not succumb to total darkness. Luo He grasped the sliding wooden panel at the window's edge, and as he gently nudged it, a soft rustling sound emerged. The panel slid smoothly within the frame, and once fully closed, it effectively concealed the fragments of beast bone, leaving no gaps. Testing the connection between the panel and the frame with his fingers, he found it tightly secured, robust enough to withstand the scrapes of small beasts and to insulate against the cold night winds. This door and these windows were undeniably sturdy. Luo He straightened up, tracing his fingertips along the reinforced patterns on the door, then sweeping over the tightly shut windows, feeling a profound sense of reassurance. The 5-centimeter thick cypress door kept level 1 beasts at bay, while the sealed windows blocked potential threats. Coupled with the subtle tranquility brought by the faint scent of cypress within, this wooden cabin had truly become a haven for respite in this desolate world. He turned toward the master bedroom, his steps now lighter than before, infused with newfound certainty for tomorrow's expedition to the mine. Chapter 25. Great disappointment. As dawn broke and the morning mist lingered, Luo He rose from his soft bed, seizing the empty water bottle and hastening toward the treehouse where the seeds were kept. Upon reaching the tree, it seemed to possess a will of its own. As water swiftly flowed from its leaves, filling 2 bottles, he could feel the refreshing coolness at his fingertips. Taking a sip, the sweet nectar cascaded down his throat, filling him with a delightful warmth, invigorating both body and spirit. Luo He, unwilling to delay, swiftly organized his gear, the tusked dagger gripped firmly in his hand, its icy bone handle pressed against his palm, instilling a profound sense of security. Within his backpack, he meticulously arranged an iron sword, an iron pickaxe, and an iron shovel, also stuffing in some compressed biscuits and a water bottle filled with clean water. With a satisfied pat on his equipment, he felt assured and ready. Raising his gaze to the sky, he noted the dawn breaking in the east, an opportune moment to embark on his journey. Clenching the dagger tightly, he oriented himself towards the direction of the mineral vein etched in his memory, stepping lightly into the morning's dense forest, setting forth towards his objective. Morning dew trickled down the blades of grass, dampening the cuffs of Luo He's trousers and bringing a slight chill, yet his enhanced physical constitution rendered him impervious to fatigue. His pace was nearly doubled compared to before, each footfall light and soundless, his breathing steady and untroubled. In a mere moment, the mineral vein from his recollection materialized before him, a slope of bare gray-brown rocks, with resilient low shrubs sprouting from the crevices, and a faint mineral scent wafting through the air. As the morning dew soaked into his pant legs, the cool dampness seeping into the fabric, Luo He crouched down, his fingertips brushing over the rocky layers of the ground, his eyes keenly comparing the surrounding geology. His foundational knowledge of mineral veins compelled him to scrutinize the textures and patterns of the rocks, while his understanding of basic ores aided him in discerning whether the stones bore signs of mineralization. Additionally, his knowledge of accompanying flora guided him to observe the sparse vegetation nearby. The common maidenhair ferns and rock milkvetch typically found near mineral veins were remarkably few here. With his iron pickaxe, he began to excavate in the suspicious areas, the head of the pick striking the rock with a dull thud, sending fragments rolling down the slope. After digging 3 pits, he found only ordinary stubborn stones. Sweat trickled down his brow, soaking his shirt from the back. Undeterred, he gritted his teeth, hoisted his backpack, and traversed the slope ahead, crossing a patch of low shrubs to ascend another gentle incline. After several tentative excavations, he once again encountered nothing of value. Descending the slope, he paused at its midpoint, captivated by a rocky crevice entwined with vines, cleverly concealed between 2 ancient pines, nearly impossible to detect without close inspection. Clearing the vines, he was astonished to discover a stone treasure chest embedded in the rock, its surface cloaked in moss, with signs of weathering along its edges. Using his iron sword, he pried open the chest lid, revealing 3 items resting quietly within: a yellowed, thread-bound booklet with fitness technique inscribed on the cover, accompanied by a system prompt that materialized. Skill book, fitness technique. By practicing daily, one can gradually enhance physical attributes: strength 0, 1, agility 0, 1, constitution 0, 1. With no prerequisites for training, a palm-sized bronze clock, its face etched with minute markings to accurately display the time, and a silver thermometer, its glass tube containing liquid that fluctuated with the ambient temperature, allowing real-time monitoring of the weather. Holding these 3 items, Luo He concentrated, attempting to integrate them into the system space, just as he had with his foundational mineral knowledge. As a faint wave of system energy stirred at his fingertips, a crisp prompt echoed in his ears. Detected items available for loading. Do you confirm loading? Confirm. As the words hung in the air, the fitness technique transformed into a stream of delicate golden light, surging into his brow. The system panel displayed the fitness technique. Basic fitness technique of common grade. 8 sets of basic exercises, 48 beats each, lasting a total of 4 minutes. 1. Stretching exercise, alternately raising arms while extending the torso, physical fitness 0022. Chest expansion, crossing arms in front and expanding the chest, strength 0023. Leg kicking, alternating front and side kicks, agility 0024. Body rotation, hands on hips while alternating torso twists, physical fitness 0025. Deep squats, wide stance squats, thighs parallel to the ground, strength 0036. Lunge exercise, alternating lunges, agility 0037. Full body jumps, jumping jacks in place, physical fitness 0038. Breathing regulation, slow walking with deep breaths and relaxed arms, no enhancements. It resembled a health exercise, and Luo He found it somewhat intriguing. The bronze clock and silver thermometer transformed into two silver-white points of light, suspended in the corner of the system panel. Displaying in real time, current time, 7 in the morning, environmental temperature, 18 degrees. The data fluctuated synchronously with the environment. Luo He paused momentarily, then broke into a smile. Pleasantly surprised that tools and skill books could be loaded in such a manner, the system's convenience surpassed his expectations. He lifted his hand to glance at the real-time data on the panel, then tightened his grip on the pickaxe. Redirecting his gaze toward the depths of the hillside, the ore vein had yet to be discovered, but this unexpected system loading had bolstered his confidence. Continuing forward along the base of the slope, he noticed a depression concealed by a thicket on the opposite hillside. Armed with his fundamental knowledge of ore veins, he scrutinized the rock strata and identified several scattered maidenhair ferns, following the clues until he finally cleared the underbrush, uncovering the edge of a mineral layer that shimmered with a dark silver hue. Luo He raised his hand to activate the identification technique. A pale blue system light enveloping the mineral layer. A prompt appeared instantly. Common iron ore with the same composition as basic iron ore, or purity increased by 15. Can be smelted into superior iron ingots, no special additional attributes. He furrowed his brow at the light screen, a wave of disappointment washing over him. After traversing 2 hills and searching for a considerable time, he had stumbled upon merely a slightly purer common iron ore, far from the rare minerals he had anticipated. Luo He set down the pickaxe and tapped the cold mineral wall with his fingertips, a hint of resignation in his tone. All this effort for nothing. He sighed, his fingers caressing the chill of the mineral wall, feeling disheartened, yet resolute to lift the pickaxe once more, since he had come this far. He could not return with an empty backpack. Firming his stance, he grasped the pickaxe tightly and aimed it at the iron rich or layer, striking down with force. The clang of the pickaxe against the ore resonated sharply, and a dark silver mineral block broke free. Wiping the sweat from his brow, Luo He mechanically repeated the motions of swinging the pickaxe and collecting the ore, the block steadily accumulating in his backpack, while the collection count on the system panel gradually increased. Yet, with each impact, it felt as though he were being reminded. This was merely a slightly better piece of common iron ore. Supplement. Upgrade the secondary wooden cabin to level 3. Materials required: 200 secondary wooden planks, 1,000 stone bricks, and 500 tiles. Items imbued with extraordinary powers may be added, although their inclusion is optional. Chapter 26. Iron Rock Mouse. Luo He wiped the sweat from his brow, his palms sticky with a mixture of mining dust and perspiration, mechanically swinging his pickaxe and collecting ore. The clanging sound of the pick striking the rock echoed throughout the valley as chunks of dark gray ore continually fell into his backpack. The system panel displayed rich iron ore, 150, the number slowly fluctuating before coming to a halt. Yet, with each collision of the pickaxe against the stone, he was reminded mercilessly that it was merely a slightly better quality of ordinary iron, far from the coveted first grade ore he sought. Never mind, I shall continue my search, he mused, patting his bulging backpack. He stowed away the pickaxe and cast his gaze toward the south. The mountains there rose steeper, with sparser vegetation. Perhaps they concealed a different vein of ore. Following the faint trail, he ventured southward, the gravel underfoot jabbing painfully at his soles. After 5 or 6 minutes, a sudden, sharp squeaking sound shattered the tranquility of the forest. Luo He's heart raced. He immediately slowed his pace, crouching low and peering forward through the cover of the bushes. Not far away, at the base of the mountain, a half-human-high outcrop of exposed iron ore gleamed with a faint metallic luster. A few palm-sized creatures, their bodies cloaked in short, gray-black fur, were energetically gnawing at the ore, their large incisors shining coldly as they bit, scattering white mineral flakes from the corners of their mouths. System panel, Monster Encyclopedia pop-up name, Iron Rock Mouse, LV1, traits, or eating habit, constantly gnaws on iron ore, their teeth and claws accumulate mineral layers. Granting attacks a minor armor-piercing effect. Weakness, fire element. Their fur is flammable, and they fear high temperatures. Behavior, they congregate near iron ore veins, feeding on mineral scraps. Highly alert, and will collectively attack intruders. Luo He held his breath, fixated on the iron rock mice. The sound of their gnawing was sharp and incessant. The once smooth surface of the ore was marred by uneven bite marks, fine mineral debris cascading down the edges of the rock. Remembering the note about their gregarious nature in the monster encyclopedia, a flicker of apprehension stirred within him. Alone, clad only in basic protective gear, it was unwise to confront a group of these fearless little creatures over a mere ore. It would be prudent to avoid injury. Just as he quietly began to rise, intending to retreat slowly behind the bushes, he caught a glimpse of one iron rock mouse suddenly raising its head. In that instant, its small, dark eyes sparkled with alertness, locking onto his gaze as he attempted to withdraw. Oh no! Luo He's heart sank, his mind racing. Instinctively, he drew his fong dagger from his backpack. Tightening his grip on the dagger, he slowed his movements to an agonizing crawl, inching backward. Squeak! Squeak! The discovered iron rock mouse suddenly shrieked, its voice piercing and shrill. The remaining iron rock mice immediately ceased their gnawing, turning in unison to fix 6 pairs of small eyes intently upon Luo He. Their bodies crouched slightly, claws scraping against the rocks, producing a subtle rustling sound, clearly having entered a state of alert. Luo He halted his steps, paralyzed by fear of retreat. The aggressiveness of social creatures often erupts when their prey attempts to flee. At that moment, should he dare to quicken his pace, these diminutive beings would undoubtedly swarm him. Gripping his fong dagger tightly, his arm remained rigid, the blade's tip slightly lowered, aimed at the front. His gaze swept across the movements of each iron rock mouse, noting that they refrained from immediate attack. Instead, they circled a nearby iron ore, emitting low, ominous growls, as if both intimidating and assessing their adversary. The air felt palpable, thick with tension, punctuated only by the screeches of the mice and the slightly labored breaths of Luo He. He could distinctly see the metallic sheen of their sharp teeth. Recalling the description of their slight armor-piercing effect from the illustrated guide, causing a cold sweat to bead upon his back. After approximately half a minute of the standoff, Luo He cautiously attempted to move again. This time, he deliberately angled the dagger's blade to reflect a glimmer of sunlight, simultaneously slowing his breathing. Unexpectedly, as he raised the fong dagger alongside the group of mice, the foremost iron rock mouse recoiled slightly, its shrill cry diminishing in intensity. The others seemed to sense a shift, their previously taut bodies gradually relaxing, their gazes toward Luo He now tinged with hesitation. Seizing the opportunity, Luo He maintained his defensive posture, steadily retreating step by step. With each backward step, he keenly observed the mice's reactions, until he had distanced himself by nearly 10 meters. The little creatures continued to circle the ore, showing no inclination to pursue him. Only then did he exhale a sigh of relief and turn to quicken his pace into the thicket behind him. In the instant he pivoted, he nearly threw himself into the bushes, branches and leaves scratching at his cheeks and arms, leaving faint red marks that he paid no heed to. He gripped the fong dagger tightly, its blade slicing through the air with a whisper, his footsteps echoing sharply on the gravel path as he sprinted back the way he had come. The tension in his chest tightened, the sharp squeaks of the iron rock mice still reverberating in his ears, fearful of the sudden sound of pursuing footsteps behind him. Please don't follow. Luo He silently implored himself, glancing back every few paces, his gaze sweeping over the empty mountain path before daring to push forward once more. His hurried breaths intertwined, heightening the anxiety coursing through his veins. The rugged mountain trail threatened to trip him on the loose gravel, and Luo He instinctively reached for a nearby tree trunk. His palms scraped raw by the coarse bark, yet he gritted his teeth and quickened his pace. It was not until the familiar sight of the rich iron ore vein came into view, the dark gray rock exposed, with remnants of his previous labor still visible, that Luo He felt the tension in his throat gradually ease. He hurried to the ore pile, leaning against the cool rock, sliding down to sit, his chest heaving violently as he gasped for air. As his gaze swept across the mountain path behind him, confirming the absence of any iron rock rats and hearing no unusual sounds, Luo He let out a sigh of relief. The tension in his shoulders dissipated entirely. He raised a hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead, the moisture mingling with the mineral dust, leaving streaks of black on his face. With his other hand still tightly gripping the fong-shaped dagger, he gradually relaxed his hold after a considerable while, his fingertips turning pale from exertion. Leaning against the rocky outcrop, he took a moment to rest, recalling the image of the iron rock rats gnawing at the ore. He couldn't help but murmur, "It's fortunate I didn't engage. These little creatures are indeed quite vigilant." He retrieved a water bottle from his backpack, unscrewed the cap, and took a few sips. The cool water flowed down his throat, slightly alleviating the heat and anxiety he had just experienced. He then took out a pack of compressed biscuits to accompany the water, aiming to replenish his energy. Chapter 27. Wild carrots. After finishing the last sip of water, The feeling of fullness dispelled much of his fatigue. Leaning against the rock for about 10 minutes. The tension from his earlier standoff with the iron rock rats gradually faded, and the sweat in his palms dried. He brushed off the dust from his clothes, stood up, and stretched his stiff limbs. I should head back and explore that blocked path, he muttered, casting his gaze towards the southwest where the water pool lay, a location where he had serendipitously discovered a spring treasure previously. Reflecting on it now, he found it rather fortuitous. The small pool was shallow yet crystal clear. On that hot day, he had jumped in for a swim, only to step on something hard beneath his feet. Upon diving down, he discovered it was a treasure chest embedded in the sandy bottom. However, as dusk approached, he had refrained from venturing further along the path surrounding the pool. Now, just past 11 o'clock, with the sun shining brightly, it seemed the perfect opportunity to familiarize himself with the surrounding terrain. He tightened his grip on the Fong dagger, securing it at his waist, and adjusted the straps of his backpack to ensure his gear was stable before setting off towards the water pool. The midday sun filtered through the gaps in the leaves, casting dappled shadows on the ground. The temperature in the forest was warmer than in the morning, and the air was filled with the fragrant scent of grass and moist earth, far more pleasant than the sulfuric odor near the iron mine. After walking for approximately 20 minutes, the clear sound of flowing water reached his ears, invigorating Luo He. Upon passing through a thicket of low shrubs, he was greeted by a breathtaking sight. The crystalline water pool shimmered with dancing reflections, the grass along the banks grew increasingly lush, and the sandy bottom was faintly visible. Approaching the edge of the pool, Luo He cupped his hands to wash his face. The cool sensation sharpened his senses. He hurriedly filled his water bottle. Gazing at the familiar landscape by the water's edge, a somewhat disheveled memory surged forth. His last visit had ended in failure while hunting wild goats, followed by a long pursuit of wild chickens that had led him astray in the woods. Ultimately, he had stumbled into the vicinity of this pool, drenched in sweat and covered in grime, resembling a pitiful stray dog. Even more absurd was that he had been clutching freshly picked clusters of duckweed, intending to save them as wild vegetables for cooking, only to encounter a scruffy wild rabbit by the pool. Perhaps in a moment of folly or confusion from being lost, he had unwittingly offered a handful to the little creature. Reflecting on it now, Luo He found it hard to believe, scratching his head in disbelief. What had he been thinking at that moment? Yet, who could have anticipated that from despair would come fortune? After feeding the wild rabbits, he sought to cleanse his body of the perspiration. Thus he entered the waterhole to cool down. However, his foot unexpectedly encountered a hard object beneath the surface. Diving down to investigate, he discovered a spring water treasure chest embedded in the gravel. Ultimately, he retrieved a water purification vessel. Luo He smiled at the water's reflection. This vessel had proven immensely useful. Since its acquisition, he could drink directly from wild streams and ponds after filtration, no longer risking the perils of consuming untreated water, and saving considerable time and fuel that would have otherwise been spent boiling water. Truly an essential artifact for survival in a post-apocalyptic world. Casting aside his memories, he surveyed the thick forest and waist-high underbrush surrounding him. The sun shone brilliantly, and the view within the woods was unobstructed. Seizing the moment, he decided to forge a new path toward home, both exploring and providing additional options for future travels. Gripping the tusked dagger at his waist, its blade keen, he deftly hacked through the obstructing branches. The sharp thorns fell away, and dew-laden leaves brushed against his arm, leaving a cool sensation in their wake. After approximately 15 minutes of travel, the underbrush ahead unexpectedly thinned. Luo He felt his foot lift lightly as he stepped into a small clearing of about 10 square meters. The sunlight poured down unimpeded, warming the ground, and in the center of the clearing, several vibrant green plants flourished. Their leaves were finely divided, and their roots slightly bulged, nestled in the soft earth, appearing somewhat familiar. Luo He squinted and quickly approached, crouching down for a closer inspection. The shape of the leaves and the outline of the stems increasingly resembled the radishes he had seen at the market. However, these plants exhibited thicker leaves than ordinary radishes, with faint serrations along the edges, and their stems appeared sturdier, with hints of a pale red skin visible beneath the soil. Narrowing his eyes, Luo He hastened toward the clearing, kneeling down as his knees brushed against the soft earth. His fingertips first made contact with the plant's thick, icy, yet somewhat resilient leaves. The serrated edges grazed his skin without causing pain. He immediately raised his hand to activate the appraisal technique, and a light blue system panel materialized before him. System appraisal results: name, wild radish, common edible plant, level, none, does not meet level 1 resource standards, traits, strong resilience, adapts to various soil conditions, matures within 7 days of sowing, good storage, fresh state lasts 15 days, in a cool cellar. This can extend to 60 days. Consumption effects: raw consumption provides a slight hydration boost, cooked, It enhances flavor, with no special benefits. Remarks: a wild, unaltered variety. Large proportion of leaves, with small, fleshy roots. The edible portion constitutes approximately 30 of the total plant weight. Resilient and good for storage. Luo He softly repeated the traits, his mind already formulating plans for when he returned to the shelter. He envisioned digging a shallow cellar at the entrance to store the harvested wild radishes, requiring no special care. He could merely unearth them when he desired to eat, thereby enriching his food variety and ensuring fresher produce through personal cultivation. The more he pondered, the more he found it worthwhile. He tightened his grip on the fong-shaped dagger and meticulously sliced a circle around the base of the radish, then used his hands to excavate the loose soil. As his fingertips brushed against the cool, fleshy root, a sense of anticipation filled his heart. However, as the soil was gradually cleared away, the full extent of the radish came into view. The leaves flourished, sprawling out to a length of 20 to 30 centimeters. Yet the fleshy root buried beneath the earth was only the size of a child's fist, its surface pockmarked and coated with fine sand. Luo He pulled the radish from the ground, its weight still clinging to the soil, and after weighing it in his hand, he plucked away several excess leaves. Gazing at the small remaining portion of the fleshy root, his earlier excitement diminished significantly, replaced by a flicker of disappointment. This wild radish was indeed a native variety, utterly incomparable to the plump, cultivated radishes he used to see at the market. The leaves dominated, leaving a pitifully small portion for consumption. His eyes fell upon the broad, vibrant green leaves of the radish, and suddenly a thought illuminated his mind. Ah, these leaves are edible as well. In his childhood home, his grandmother often harvested radish leaves to pickle, their crispness accompanied by a hint of saltiness, perfect for mixing with noodles. Now, in this apocalyptic world marked by scarcity, if he could pickle this abundant batch of leaves, it could yield several meals, far more worthwhile than merely consuming the root. As Luo He contemplated this, his gaze inadvertently swept across the moist earth at the edge of the flat ground, and he suddenly spotted a few delicate three-toed paw prints imprinted lightly upon the damp surface, tracks of a wild hare. They were similar in size to the one he had encountered by the pond, confirming that there were indeed hares in the vicinity. Chapter 28. Continuing the adventure by the riverbank, he recalled the time he whimsically fed the wild hare some duckweed, and couldn't help but chuckle. An idea forming in his mind. He would gather a dozen radishes to taste, pickle the leaves, and leave the remainder here as provisions for the rabbits. This way, nothing would go to waste, and he could provide a foraging ground for the local hares, perhaps even encountering them again in the future. Without hesitation, Luo He grasped his dagger firmly and carefully selected robust wild radishes, harvesting only 15. He shook off the excess soil and debris before placing them into his backpack. After completing this task, he stood up, brushing the dirt from his hands, glancing at the remaining wild radishes in the clearing, and then at the direction in which the hare's tracks extended. He thought, when the pickled leaves were consumed, he would return to see if he could transplant a few back home. If they thrived, he would no longer have to worry about a lack of vegetables. Having organized his finds, he gripped the dagger once more and continued to forge a path back home. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the leaves, warming him, and the newly acquired food in his backpack lightened his step. The sound of the blade slicing through the brush echoed in the forest as he followed a general path toward home. When confronted with dense thorns, he bent low to cut through. At forks in the road, he stacked stones to mark his way, breaking branches as markers. The lesson from his previous misdirection lingered in his mind, and he could not afford to be careless this time. Indeed, he lost his way twice more along the route, once stumbling upon a dry creek bed and once encountering a steep earthen slope. Fortunately, his markers were sufficiently clear, allowing him to retrace his steps and regain his bearings, and he ultimately did not stray too far. As the sun gradually slants to the west, the shadows in the forest stretch long. When the hour hand points to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Luo He parts a clump of grass that reaches half his height. Suddenly, he catches sight of a cross mark he had etched into a nearby tree trunk. It is a remnant from when he first began to fell trees. A marker left to confirm his position. At last, he has arrived. A sense of relief washes over Luo He, his taut shoulders sagging instantly, and even the hand that clutches his dagger feels lighter. He strides through the thicket, and the trees ahead begin to thin out. A familiar clearing comes into view, revealing the sanctuary at its center, its roof adorned with sturdy stone tiles, his only home in this apocalyptic world. The air is filled with a subtle scent of cedar, the fragrance of the wood itself, far more reassuring than the damp, earthy aroma of the forest. His tense nerves instantly relax. Upon pushing open the door and stepping inside the wooden cabin, he finds the interior simply yet neatly arranged. A flat stone slab serves as both table and stove. Luo He opens his backpack and neatly stacks 150 pieces of iron ore into the storage box, followed by 15 wild carrots. Brushing the dust from his hands, He sits on the edge of the bed, his gaze falling upon the carrot leaves in the storage box. He recalls only having seen his grandmother pickle carrot leaves during his childhood, remembering the process of drying, salting, and sealing them, though the exact steps and proportions have long since faded from memory. In this world of chaos, there is no room for error. Any mistake could mean wasting precious food. Perhaps he can inquire in the chat channel later if anyone possesses the knowledge. Luo He muses, contemplating his options. If all else fails, he could trade for the information. Surely, no one would demand an exorbitant price for a simple recipe. If necessary, he could compare several methods to ensure success. As he gazes at the slanting sunlight outside, his communicator displays the current time, 16:02. The air still retains the warmth of the afternoon, and the scent of sweat mingles uncomfortably with the earthy aroma of minerals and foliage. Seizing the opportunity while daylight remains, he decides to wash himself in the river and perhaps tempt fate. He sets off along a familiar path, the red fabric markers he had previously placed on the bushes serving to prevent him from losing his way again. After approximately 10 minutes, the gentle sound of flowing water reaches his ears, and the air becomes cool and refreshing. A few minutes later, a narrow river, about 4 to 5 meters wide, appears before him. The water is crystal clear, revealing the pebbles at the bottom and lush green water plants lining the banks. Without a second thought, Luo He strides into the river, fully immersing his clothes, shoes, and socks in the icy water. The cold envelopes him instantly, the refreshing scent of the foliage infiltrating through his collar and cuffs, causing him to shiver, but simultaneously dispelling the discomfort of heat and stickiness. He revels in the sensation, allowing himself to splash about, his arms slicing through the water as his body sways gently with the waves. The river washes away the sweat and dust clinging to his clothes, dispersing it in a faint cloud of murkiness, while the acrid odor of perspiration is gradually replaced by the river's crisp clarity. What a relief! Luo He let out a joyful shout and plunged into the water, allowing the river to envelop him completely. As he emerged, droplets cascaded down his hair and cheeks, his clothes clinging heavily to his body. Yet, he felt no discomfort. Rather, a sense of lightness washed over him as if he had shed a burdensome weight. He leisurely swam in the river, sometimes floating on his back, admiring the dappled sunlight filtering through the leaves above. At other times, he would dive beneath the surface, his fingertips gliding over the smooth pebbles at the riverbed. The icy sensation spreading throughout his body, as the fatigue from his earlier journey seemed to dissolve in the current. After splashing about for a while, until the scent of sweat had completely dissipated and his clothes were thoroughly rinsed clean, he swam slowly back to the shore. As he stepped onto the bank, his drenched garments clung to him, cool against his skin. A sudden gust of wind made him shiver. Yet he still savored the refreshing sensation of being rid of the grime. He wrung out the hem of his shirt to expel some water and cast his gaze upstream. Having only explored the downstream area last time, he intended to take advantage of the daylight to investigate the upper reaches of the river. He bent down to gather a few palm-sized stones from the riverbank, placing them in his pocket, and tightened his grip on his dagger as he strode along the riverbank. With every few steps, he would produce a stone from his pocket and toss it towards the water's edge, where the reeds grew thick. Each splash startled the little insects hiding within, sending them scattering in all directions. Snakes, insects, mice, and ants were known to seek refuge in the shade, and this method would surely scare away a good number of them, he mused, continuing his pace. Whenever he encountered obstructive bushes, he would wield his dagger to chop them down, the sound of the blade slicing through branches intertwining with the murmuring of the water. After approximately 10 minutes, the river widened ahead, with two tributaries merging into the main river. The left tributary was lined with vibrant green algae, the current swirling languidly, while the right tributary revealed fine grains of sand beneath its surface, similarly broad and flowing at a gentle pace. The two rivers appeared like emerald ribbons, converging just ahead into the main river beneath his feet. Standing by the riverbank, Luo He's gaze fell upon a small island situated between the two tributaries, adorned with a few unknown saplings and a dense thicket of grass, looking untouched by human presence. Curiosity piqued. He thought it might yield unexpected treasures, and without hesitation, he stepped back into the water. The river still reached only to his knees, the current slower than that of the main river, and the soft mud beneath his feet felt pleasant rather than sticky, the cool water brushing against his pant legs, infused with the fragrance of aquatic vegetation. As he advanced towards the small island, water splashed around his ankles, and he remained vigilant, gripping his dagger tightly, wary of any sudden movement beneath the surface. Chapter 29. Thunderstruck would in just a few minutes. Luo He's soles touched the soft earth, the ground damp, yet not muddy, with a subtle texture of fine sand beneath his feet. He lifted his gaze and scanned the small island, roughly the size of half a basketball court, easily seen in its entirety. Apart from a few crooked little trees and knee-high grass, the only company was the buzzing of small insects. Not even a shadow of a wild hare was in sight. This could be considered a miniature island in the heart of the river. Luo He chuckled softly. Yet he remained vigilant. In a world teetering on the brink of annihilation, the seemingly safest places often concealed unexpected dangers. He bent down to gather a handful of thumb-sized stones from the riverbank, clenching them in his fist before hurling them into the dense thicket. The sound of the stones striking the ground shattered the tranquility of the small islet, startling several flying insects that buzzed away. Yet the underbrush remained undisturbed. No slithering serpents nor the low growl of startled beasts could be heard. After holding his breath for half a minute to ascertain that no threat lurked nearby, he finally felt secure enough to draw his iron sword from his system backpack. Gripping his fong dagger tightly in his left hand and hoisting the iron sword in his right, he swept the blade close to the ground, edge facing downward. The sword's sharpness far surpassed that of the dagger. A glint of cold light flashed as the underbrush before him was effortlessly severed, with clean cuts that even brought down the shallow-rooted shrubs. No blade of grass could stand upright before him. The crisp sounds of his path carving through the foliage resonated as Luo He moved with steady steps, his eyes scanning the surroundings with caution, his stamina gradually waning with each motion. Upon reaching the far side of the islet, where two tributaries diverged, a charred tree half buried in the soil suddenly caught his eye. The tree, roughly the thickness of an arm, was marked by deep brown scorch marks and fine cracks on its surface, as if it had been ravaged by fire and smoothed by the flowing waters, evidently washed to this riverine island by the flood following a torrential downpour. Curious, he furrowed his brow and approached to examine it closely. He detected no scent of smoke nor remnants of ash, but rather it appeared as though it had been seared by some unseen force. Instinctively, he raised his hand to activate his identification skill, and a pale blue system panel promptly materialized before him. System identification result: name, Thunderstrike wood, special grade material, level, LV1 raw material, common peach tree wood properties. Exorcism, passive effect, inflicts additional damage to spiritual entities. Wearing it reduces the accuracy of spiritual attacks. Energy conduction, after deep processing, can serve as a core material for magical weaponry, significantly enhancing damage to spiritual entities. Remarks: the peach tree traditionally symbolizes the warding off of evil, struck by heavenly lightning. It absorbs the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, forming a unique wood structure, making it a rare resource against spiritual entities. Wow! Luo He couldn't help but exclaim, his eyes brightening instantaneously, his heartbeat quickening in excitement. In this survival realm, not only did wild beasts and mutated creatures roam, but one also occasionally encountered spine-chilling spiritual monstrosities, against which physical attacks were often futile. To his astonishment, he had stumbled upon Thunderstrike wood. This remarkable material not only possessed exorcising properties, but also dealt additional damage to spiritual entities. The lingering hardness of Thunderstrike wood beneath his fingertips sent waves of exhilaration through him. Not only could it ward off evil, but once fashioned into weaponry, it would be pivotal in combating spiritual foes. He instinctively touched the fong dagger at his waist, which had sufficed against beasts. Yet he knew that when faced with spiritual entities, its damage would merely be a futile scratch. Now, with Thunderstrike wood, after processing, it could at least inflict additional spiritual damage. The peach wood was pure spiritual damage, leagues beyond the capabilities of the fong dagger. Indeed, preparation is the key to success. As Luo He murmured to himself, although he had yet to encounter any spectral entities, the apocalyptic realm could potentially unleash all manner of demons and monsters. It would be unwise to wait until he was caught off guard. Thus, it was prudent to prepare anti-ghost weaponry in advance. Should he ever find himself face-to-face with such beings, he would possess an additional layer of security, rather than merely being reactive like a headless fly. Gazing at the virtual image of the lightning-struck wood within his system backpack, he estimated its dimensions to be approximately 3 meters in length and 20 centimeters in width. While its form was not perfectly straight, its dense wooden texture was commendable, with the charred exterior barely concealing the original hue of the peach wood beneath. He pondered, this material should not be carelessly chopped into fragments like ordinary timber. That would be a waste. Instead, he could return to the stone slab at his doorstep and meticulously shave it with a dagger, preserving the core timber. Perhaps he could even retain a portion to craft a rudimentary talisman. Suddenly, the thought of the treehouse crossed his mind, which required the absorption of special materials to unlock hidden attributes. What if he fed the shavings, or even a whole piece of the lightning wood to it? Would that activate an exorcism effect? Luo He's eyes sparkled with excitement. The treehouse itself served as a sanctuary for survival. If it could be endowed with properties that resist spectral entities, it would provide additional security against such monsters, rendering it far more practical than merely crafting a weapon. Moreover, the development of the treehouse was fundamental to thriving in this world. Furthermore, the slight anti-ghost effect of his Fong dagger would suffice for the time being. In the event of genuine peril, he could manage with it. Rather than rushing to forge a weapon from the lightning wood, it would be wise to first attempt cultivating the treehouse sapling, as special materials were rare. Unlocking the hidden skills of the treehouse would be a far more sustainable strategy. Even if it didn't succeed, he could always process the lightning wood into a weapon later. With these thoughts swirling in his mind, Luo He placed the peach wood from the lightning strike into his backpack. Gripping his iron sword tightly, he felt an urge to hasten home and prepare the lightning wood, eager to see if the treehouse sapling would yield any surprises. Upon reaching the shore, as he pushed aside the obstructing thicket with both hands, his mind was solely focused on returning home to attend to the lightning wood, his strides large and hurried. Yet, at that moment, a sharp pain suddenly shot through his calf, as if something had fiercely scraped him. His heart raced, and instinctively, he sidestepped behind a nearby rock. Swiftly retrieving his iron sword and Fong dagger from his backpack, scanning his surroundings with intense scrutiny. What could it be? Lowering his body and softening his breath, he activated his identification skill to survey the area, as the system panel instantaneously enveloped his vision. System identification result: name, cauliflower snake, scientific name, Wang Jin snake, level, no level traits, non-venomous, causes no toxic damage, but pain lingers for a while. Constriction may trigger a binding effect during close-range attacks, reducing target's movement speed by 30. Habitat: prefers moist environments, feeding on small rodents and amphibians, generally docile. It flees when threatened, but will attack if startled or provoked. Drops: snake skin, can be used to craft simple protective gear. Snake meat. Snake gallbladder, can be used in medicine, slightly enhancing poison resistance. Following the panel's guidance, Luo He observed that in the very grass where he had just stepped, a half-meter-long, wrist-thick cauliflower snake lay coiled, adorned with alternating yellow and black patterns. Its head was slightly elevated, flicking its forked tongue, yet it showed no intention of attacking, instead exuding an air of caution. Chapter 30. The Exorcism Realm. It turned out to be a non-venomous king rat snake, commonly known as a cauliflower snake. Luo He exhaled a sigh of relief, yet the residual sting in his legs surged back, igniting the tension that had been coiled within him during the apocalypse. A wave of anger shot up his spine to the crown of his head. Damn it, he muttered under his breath, gripping his iron sword with renewed vigor. Enhanced by his recent upgrade, his physical prowess surged, and with a swift motion, the sword sliced through the air with a sharp whistle, striking down upon the snake's head with ferocity. With a sickening thud, the blade found its mark, cleaving the serpent's head in two. Its yellow and black patterns instantly saturated with blood. Yet, Luo He's fury remained unabated. The fright he had just experienced transformed into a fierce drive for release. He swung the iron sword again and again, relentlessly, each strike infused with raw power, the sound of the blade severing the snake's body reverberating through the woods. In no time, the half-meter-long creature lay in disarray, its flesh and blood splattered across the grass and earth, its original form now unrecognizable. Panting heavily, Luo He's hand, still clutching the sword, began to tingle. He continued until his arm ached, finally halting his assault. He gazed down at the mangled remains of the snake, his chest heaving violently, the earlier anger and tension gradually dissipating, replaced by a sense of bewilderment. Shaking his head, he wiped the blood from his face, muttering to himself, was that reaction really necessary? But upon reflection, in a world where survival was paramount, who did not live with a heightened sense of vigilance? The sudden pain had instinctively stirred his primal fear of the unknown. Anger was merely another manifestation of that fear. Luo He tightened his grip on the iron sword, casting a glance at the disfigured snake remnants strewn across the ground, shaking his head in resignation. There was nothing left worth collecting. Yet, his thoughts would not relent. What if it had been a highly venomous snake? Or perhaps a mutated serpent of a higher level, more aggressive in nature? Just moments ago, he had been preoccupied with thoughts of thunderwood and treehouse seedlings, hurrying along without a care, allowing his guard to slip significantly, thus granting the snake the opportunity to approach. Had today's fortunate finds clouded his judgment? Luo He mused silently, unconsciously rubbing the hilt of his sword. The string of good luck with thunderwood and wild carrots had lulled him into a false sense of security, causing him to forget the cardinal sin of complacency in this post-apocalyptic realm. There was no such thing as eternal safety, only the ever-present necessity of caution. A moment's neglect could lead to irrevocable consequences. Drawing a deep breath, Luo He quelled the tumult in his mind, resolutely gripping his iron sword and Fong dagger. He lifted his gaze to survey his surroundings. The wind rustled through the leaves, and the sound seemed to echo a latent alarm. This time, he would not rush forward. Instead, he slowed his pace, testing the grass with stones every few steps, his eyes warily scanning every shadow, determined not to let his guard down again. The journey home remained long, and the dangers of the apocalypse were ever looming. Only by embedding caution deep within his very being could he hope to traverse this ruthless world further. He steadied his breath and began to stride purposefully toward the shelter. His silhouette elongated in the setting sun, exuding a calm that stemmed from profound reflection. The setting sun elongated the shadows amidst the trees, and Luo He, enduring the sharp stings of the faint scars on his legs, cautiously stepped back into the sanctuary. He did not retreat to the wooden cabin for respite, but instead approached the sturdy tree beside the treehouse, its trunk standing tall, its bark tinged with a delicate azure, and its sparse leaves exuding resilience. Luo He raised his hand and retrieved the lightning-struck wood from his system backpack, its charred surface heavy and textured with faint traces of electrical currents. He then seized an iron axe, gripping its handle firmly, and bolstered by his upgraded physical prowess, struck down forcefully upon the lightning wood. With a crack, the brittle wood splintered, and a segment approximately 1 meter long was cleaved off, precisely 1/3 of the total. Luo He picked up the severed piece and gently leaned it against the trunk of the treehouse tree. In that very moment of contact, a wondrous spectacle unfolded. A soft glow emanated from the bark of the treehouse tree, and the once smooth surface of the trunk seemed to sprout myriad tiny pores. An invisible force radiated from the tree, and the charred markings on the wood began to flake away, transforming into flecks of golden energy particles that slowly seeped into the trunk, without the entanglement of vines or the embrace of roots. The lightning wood was absorbed by the treehouse tree as seamlessly as water is absorbed by a sponge, its darkened essence gradually becoming transparent until it completely vanished within the trunk. The branches of the treehouse tree quivered gently, and within the pale azure of its bark, hints of golden veins began to emerge. As Luo He watched in astonishment, an inexplicable thirst surged from within him, not a hunger of his own, but rather a yearning that seemed to echo the treehouse tree's desires, transmitted through some mysterious connection to his senses. It was akin to feeling nearly satiated after a meal, with the last bite just out of reach. That urgent craving was strikingly vivid. Not yet satisfied? Luo He instantly grasped the situation and hurriedly seized the remaining lightning wood. The iron axe descended once more, cleaving off another segment, bringing the total to 12, which he arranged closely beside the treehouse tree. Golden energy particles surged again, this time more densely than before. The golden veins on the treehouse tree spiraled upward along the trunk, and the amplitude of the branch's movement increased, with several new tender buds stealthily emerging. The golden veins raced up the trunk like living lightning, enveloping the branches, which now swayed with growing vigor, rustling as countless tender green shoots burst forth, unfurling into vibrant new leaves in mere minutes, transforming the entire tree into a vibrant spectacle of life. Even more astonishingly, at a height of 1/2 meter from the roots, intricate lightning-like patterns manifested, glowing with a rich golden hue, as though adorned with a layer of electric insignia, exuding a majestic aura that seemed to purify the surrounding air, rendering it refreshingly crisp. The system notification indicated that the treehouse had successfully absorbed a sufficient amount of thunderstruck wood, unlocking the active skill Evil Repelling Domain, Level 1. The skill's effects were as follows. 1. Spirits of Level 1 and below that entered the domain, within a 30-meter radius of the treehouse, would be forcibly eradicated. 2. Level 1 spirits would be unable to approach, while those of higher levels would experience slight interference upon nearing. 3. The treehouse itself would gain immunity to damage from spirits. Luo He fixed his gaze on the system panel that had popped up, reading each word with intense concentration. His eyes suddenly sparkled like blazing torches, and he erupted with a triumphant shout. I've struck gold. This is absolutely phenomenal. Overcome by exhilaration, he jumped on the spot. The pain in his legs completely overshadowed by his elation. He didn't even furrow his brow. He clapped his hands forcefully against his thighs and hurried to the side of the treehouse tree, reaching out to touch the icy thunder patterns on the trunk. His fingertips could feel a potent surge of electricity, as an invisible barrier emanated from the treehouse, extending outward for 30 meters. This was the aura of the Evil Repelling Domain, causing even the small insects in the forest to instinctively avoid the area. 30 meters. No spirits of level 1 or below could enter. Luo He repeated this in disbelief, his voice brimming with excitement. This 30-meter radius was a sanctuary against spirits. From now on, while residing in the refuge, there would be no fear of low-level spirit ambushes, and even higher-level entities would be interfered with. His sense of security soared to unprecedented heights. He circled the treehouse twice, gazing at the lush, vibrant foliage, and the shimmering thunder patterns of the plant, feeling an overwhelming sense of reassurance. Previously anxious about the threat posed by spirit monsters, he now found that the evil-repelling domain effectively added an impenetrable shield of safety to his refuge. Looking up, Luo He laughed heartily, as the fears and oppression of the apocalypse dissipated like smoke in the face of this unexpected joy.